Welcome back to another story on Goofy Harry. This time, we're bringing you If Batman Found Harry Living in the Sewers and Trained Him as Gotham's First Wizard Vigilante. Your likes fuel our creativity. Subscribe and stay tuned. Here's the story. Chapter 1. The Boy Beneath Gotham. The sensors had been glitching for 3 weeks. Bruce Wayne leaned back in the chair before the Batcomputer's primary array, scrolling through another cascade of anomalous readings from the Wayne Enterprise's geological monitoring network. The system had been installed 2 years ago, officially to track seismic activity and groundwater shifts beneath Gotham's aging infrastructure, unofficially to give Batman an early warning system for any subterranean activity from Killer Croc, Bane's supply tunnels, or the Court of Owls labyrinth. It was sensitive enough to detect a subway car passing 3 miles away. It was hardened against electromagnetic interference, shielded from Gotham's perpetually leaking power grid, and triple redundant in its data processing. And for 3 weeks it had been losing its mind. "The pattern is consistent, sir," Alfred said from behind him, setting a cup of coffee on the console. "Black, no sugar." 3 in the morning, Sector 7, grid references 9 through 14. The interference is strongest between 2 and 5 a.m., diminishes at dawn, and returns sporadically throughout the day. Bruce tapped the screen, pulling up a heat map of the affected area. The old Gotham subway tunnels, abandoned since the earthquake, sealed off by the city, and supposedly empty. The interference pattern bloomed across the map in angry reds and oranges, energy signatures that didn't match anything in his database. Not electrical, not seismic, not chemical, not radiation. "It's not Croc," Bruce said. "He's in Arkham, confirmed yesterday." "And Mr. Freeze's equipment produces a distinctly different signature," Alfred agreed. "I've cross-referenced the readings against every known metahuman, rogue, and anomalous entity in your files. There is no match." Bruce took the coffee without looking away from the screen. He drank. It was perfect because Alfred's coffee was always perfect. "The energy spikes correlate with temperature fluctuations," Bruce said, highlighting a secondary data stream. "Look. Every time we get a sensor disruption, the ambient temperature in the surrounding tunnels jumps between 15 and 30 degrees, sometimes up, sometimes down. Thermal manipulation. Maybe," Bruce stood, pushing the chair back, "or maybe just a byproduct of whatever's actually happening down there." He walked to the suit vault and the glass case hissed open at his approach. The suit waited inside, dark, angular, familiar as his own skin. He'd already decided he was going down there tonight. He decided an hour ago, really. The analysis had just been the responsible prelude. "I could simply call in a drone survey," Alfred offered, with the particular tone he used when he knew Bruce had already made up his mind and wanted it on the record that alternatives existed. "Drones can be hacked, jammed, or destroyed. I need eyes on this. Your eyes, specifically." "My eyes, specifically," Alfred sighed with the dignified resignation of a man who'd been having this exact conversation in various forms for 15 years. "Shall I prepare the medical bay as well, or would that be too presumptuous?" "Always prepare the medical bay, Alfred. As ever, sir, do be careful." Bruce pulled the cowl on and Batman walked to the vehicle platform where the Batmobile sat waiting. He bypassed it, moving instead to the smaller, quieter bike. The tunnels would be tight. He needed maneuverability, not firepower. The cave's waterfall exit roared around him as he rode out into Gotham's night. The city looked the way it always looked at 3 a.m. in March, wet, orange-lit, breathing steam from 100 grates and vents like some vast sleeping animal. Batman cut through the Narrows on surface streets, heading east toward the old Gotham district. Traffic was dead. A few cabs. A police cruiser rolling slow past a row of shuttered businesses on Finger Avenue. The officer inside didn't even glance at the black shape that blew past doing 60. Batman reached the access point in 12 minutes. An old maintenance entrance on the side of a condemned parking structure, sealed with a rusted steel door that the city had welded shut after the quake. His thermal lance cut through the welds in 30 seconds. The door groaned open on dead hinges, revealing a concrete stairwell descending into black. He left the bike and went in on foot. The stairs went down 4 flights before opening into a service corridor that connected to the old West Side subway line. Gotham had 3 decommissioned subway networks layered beneath its active one. A geological and architectural palimpsest that made the underground a labyrinth even with detailed maps. Batman's heads-up display overlaid a 3-dimensional schematic as he moved, tagging his position against the sensor anomalies. He was close. Grid reference 11, 200 meters northeast and 30 meters down. The corridor was filthy, standing water in places, ankle-deep, covered in a film of oil and urban runoff. The walls were tagged with old graffiti gang signs from crews that hadn't existed in a decade. He passed a collapsed section where the ceiling had partially caved in, forcing him to crouch and squeeze through a gap between fallen concrete slabs. On the other side, the tunnel opened up into what had once been a station platform, West Side Line, Station 7. He recognized it from the old city plans. It had been a minor stop, never heavily trafficked even when the line was active. The platform was wide, the ceiling vaulted in a style that suggested 1940s construction. Two sets of tracks ran through the center, clogged with debris. Emergency lighting had long since died, and the darkness was absolute beyond the reach of his night vision filters. Batman paused, listened, water dripping, the distant groan of the city's weight settling on old bones, and something else. A faint sound, rhythmic and almost musical, a low humming that resonated in his chest more than his ears. His sensors were going haywire. The HUD flickered, static crawling across the data overlays. Temperature readings jumped 62 degrees, then 41, then 78, cycling wildly with no discernible pattern. The electromagnetic spectrum was a mess of interference. He switched off the electronic systems and relied on his eyes. The darkness resolved slowly as his natural night vision adjusted. The platform stretched ahead of him, and at the far end, near what would have been the station manager's office, he saw light, not electric light, not fire exactly. It was a soft, shifting luminescence, warm gold bleeding into pale blue and back again, emanating from behind a makeshift barrier of plywood, old blankets, and stacked cinder blocks. Someone had built a shelter. A small one tucked into the corner of the platform where the wall met the old office structure. The light pulsed gently, like breathing. Batman moved forward, silent, controlled, keeping to the shadows along the platform's edge. As he got closer, he saw more details. The area around the shelter was cleaner than the rest of the station. The standing water had been pushed back somehow, forming a dry perimeter of about 20 feet in every direction. The concrete within that perimeter was warm under his boots. He could feel it through the suit's soles. Scorch marks. He knelt, running a gloved finger along a blackened streak on the platform floor. It wasn't chemical burning. The concrete itself had been superheated, fused, almost vitrified in a pattern that radiated outward from the shelter like the spokes of a wheel. Some of the marks were old, faded, others were fresh. He noticed the rats, or rather the absence of them. Gotham's subway tunnels were infested. You couldn't walk 10 feet without hearing them scurrying in the walls, but this station was silent. No rats, no roaches, nothing living except whatever was behind that barrier. And then a sound. Small, unmistakable, completely unexpected. A cough, high-pitched. A child's cough, wet and ragged, followed by a sniffle and a small, miserable groan. Batman stopped. He reassessed. The shelter, the scorch marks, the anomalous energy readings. He'd been preparing for a threat. A metahuman, a rogue experiment, an alien artifact. He hadn't been preparing for a kid. He adjusted his approach, slower, less tactical, more cautious in a different way. He stepped deliberately on a piece of loose gravel, letting it crunch under his boot, announcing himself. If there was a frightened child behind that barrier, the last thing he needed was to materialize out of the darkness like a nightmare. The effect was immediate and not what he expected. The light behind the barrier flared, gold to white in an instant, and the plywood wall exploded outward. Not fell, not toppled. Exploded as if hit by a concussive blast from inside. Pieces of wood and cinder block flew across the platform, and Batman twisted sideways, letting a chunk of masonry sail past his head. His cape caught a piece of plywood and deflected it. The light blazed, and in its center stood a child, a boy, small, too small for whatever age he actually was. Thin to the point of painful, with jutting collarbones visible above the collar of a shirt 3 sizes too large, and so filthy its original color was anyone's guess. Dark hair, wild and matted, and eyes. Even in the blinding light, Batman could see the eyes. Bright green, wide, terrified, and furious in equal measure. The boy had his hands up, palms out, and the light was coming from him. From his skin, his hands, the air around him. It crackled and spat like electrical discharge, but moved like liquid, pooling in his palms and arcing between his fingers. The temperature in the station had jumped 30 degrees in 2 seconds. Batman's suit registered it even with the sensors malfunctioning. "Stay back," the boy screamed. His voice was raw, scratchy, a voice that hadn't been used for conversation in a long time. British accent unmistakable even through the panic. "I'll do it. I'll bring it all down. I swear I will." Batman believed him. The concrete under the boy's bare feet was cracking, hairline fractures spreading outward in a web. The vaulted ceiling groaned, dust cascaded from joints that had held for 80 years. "I'm not here to hurt you," Batman said. His voice was calm, measured, pitched low, not the growl he used on criminals, but the tone he'd learned for situations like this. Hostage negotiations, suicide interventions, frightened people with the power to do terrible things. I said stay back. The light flared again and a wave of force rippled across the platform. Batman braced, leaning into it. It hit him like a wall of hot wind, strong enough to slide him back 6 inches on the concrete, strong enough to send the remaining debris tumbling into the tracks. The boy's eyes went wider as if he was surprised it hadn't worked. That's not going to move me, Batman said, honest, not threatening, and I don't think you actually want to bring this ceiling down. You'd be buried too. Maybe I don't care. You care. You built a shelter. You've been surviving down here, keeping yourself warm, keeping the rats away. That's someone who cares about staying alive. The boy's hands trembled, the light flickered, stuttered. His breathing was too fast, hyperventilating, or close to it. Up close, even through the glare, Batman could see more. Bruises on the boy's arms, old and layered, yellow-green over purple-black. A scar on his forehead, oddly shaped, geometric, almost deliberate, bare feet cut and dirty. And thin, God, so thin, ribs visible through the oversized shirt when the light shifted. Batman made a decision. He reached up and pulled back the cowl. The boy blinked. The light dimmed just slightly, but enough. Confusion replaced some of the fear in those green eyes. My name is Bruce, he said, just Bruce. No last name, no title, a person, not a symbol. What's yours? The boy stared at him. Seconds ticked by. The light continued to dim, pulling back toward the boy's body like a tide going out. The cracks in the concrete stopped spreading. The ceiling settled with a final groan and went quiet. Harry, the boy said, barely a whisper, almost lost in the drip of water from somewhere behind them. Harry, how long have you been down here? The boy Harry didn't answer. His hands slowly lowered, and with them the light faded to a faint glow around his fingers like embers. His legs were shaking. Not from cold, not from fear, from exhaustion. Whatever he'd just done had cost him. Are you alone? Bruce asked. A nod, small, tight. How old are you? A hesitation. Then 11, I think, maybe 12. I don't always know what day it is down here. Bruce felt something tighten in his chest. He was very good at controlling his emotions. He'd had decades of practice, but certain things got past the walls. A child 11 or 12, alone in the sewers beneath Gotham, not knowing what day it was, that got past the walls. Are you hungry, Harry? The boy's jaw clenched. Pride fighting need. Bruce recognized that war. He'd seen it in the mirror often enough, though his own battles with pride had never included hunger. The boy's stomach answered for him, growling audibly in the quiet station. There's food where I'm going, Bruce said. Warm food, a bed. No one's going to hurt you there. People always say that. Harry's voice was flat, ancient in a way no child's voice should be. Then they do. I know, I'm not going to ask you to trust me because you have no reason to. But I'm going to tell you that I know what you can do. He gestured at the scorch marks, the cracked concrete, the still faintly glowing hands, and I'm not afraid of it. And I'm not going to try to use it. I just think you need a meal and a place to sleep that isn't a subway platform. Harry looked at him for a long time. Those green eyes were unsettling, not because of the power behind them, but because of the calculation. This was a child who learned to evaluate every human interaction as a potential threat. Every offered hand was a potential fist. Every open door was a potential trap. Bruce knew that calculus. He'd learned it in different circumstances, but he knew it. You're Batman, Harry said, not a question. He'd seen the cowl, the suit, the cape. Even a half-starved child living in a sewer could recognize the most famous vigilante on the planet. Yes, you fight criminals, the bad ones. Joker and the others. Yes, Harry looked at the scorch marks on the floor, at his own hands, at the cracked concrete. Are you here to fight me? No, Harry. I'm here because my sensors picked up something unusual and I came to investigate. I found you. Now I'm asking if you want to come somewhere warm and eat something. The silence stretched, water dripped, the city groaned distantly above them, the weight of a million lives pressing down on old stone and steel. Okay, Harry said, and then very quietly, almost to himself, if you try anything, I'll melt your car. Bruce didn't smile, but he wanted to. Noted. Getting out of the tunnels was harder than getting in. Harry was weak, far weaker than his initial explosive display had suggested. Whatever energy he'd thrown at Batman had drained reserves that were already critically low. He made it up 2 flights of stairs on his own before his legs buckled, and Bruce caught him without comment, without fuss, and carried him up the last 2 flights. The boy weighed nothing. That was the thing that hit Bruce hardest, not the power, not the light, not the impossible energy readings. The boy weighed nothing. He was a bundle of bones and dirty cloth and matted hair, and he was so light that Bruce barely felt the additional weight as he climbed. Harry didn't fight being carried. He went rigid at first, every muscle locked, braced for pain, but when none came, he slowly, incrementally relaxed. By the time they reached the surface, his head was resting against Bruce's shoulder and his eyes were half closed. Not sleeping, just running out of fuel. The night air hit them cold and damp. Harry shivered violently and Bruce shifted his grip, wrapping the cape around the boy. The material was insulated, temperature regulating, designed for Gotham's brutal winters. Harry made a small sound when the warmth hit him, not a word, just a sound, animal and grateful. Bruce reached the bike and paused. This was going to be awkward. The bike was built for one, and he had an unconscious adjacent child to transport. He triggered his comm. "Alfred, sir, I need the car." Southeast corner of the Miller Street parking structure. A pause, precisely the right length to convey mild surprise without being impolite. "The car, sir, I thought you took the— I have a passenger." Another pause. This one conveyed a great deal more. "I see, ETA 22 minutes. Make it 15, and Alfred, have the guest room on the second floor made up, not the one near my study, the quiet one at the end of the East Hall. The one with the garden view, sir, that one." "And might I inquire as to the nature of our guest?" Bruce looked down at Harry, who had gone fully limp against his chest, finally losing the battle against exhaustion. In sleep, without the tension and the fear and the crackling light, he just looked like what he was, a very small, very sick, very tired kid. "He's about 11 years old," Bruce said, "possibly 12. He's malnourished, dehydrated, and living alone in the old West Side tunnels. He's also the source of our sensor anomalies." The longest pause yet. "A child. Yes, I shall prepare soup as well," Alfred said, and the line clicked off. Bruce stood in the cold Gotham night with a sleeping child in his arms and waited for the car. He'd come down here expecting a threat, a rogue meta, an alien artifact, a new weapon. Instead, he'd found something far more complicated. He'd found himself. Or close enough to it that the parallel made his teeth ache. Alfred arrived in 16 minutes, which for Alfred was practically reckless driving. The car, not the Batmobile but the armored black sedan Bruce used for less conspicuous transport, pulled up with its headlights off, and Alfred stepped out wearing a coat over what Bruce suspected were pajamas, though Alfred would go to his grave before admitting he owned anything so pedestrian. Alfred saw the boy and went very still. Bruce recognized the expression. He'd seen it once before, years ago, when a young acrobat's parents had fallen from the trapeze and Bruce had brought the screaming child home. Alfred's face did something complicated, grief and compassion and fury all compressed into a single micro-expression that lasted half a second before the professional mask clicked back into place. "Good Lord," Alfred murmured, "he's skin and bone. I know, those bruises aren't recent, someone's been—" Alfred stopped himself, took a breath. "Let's get him home, sir." Bruce settled into the back seat with Harry still held against his chest. He'd tried to set the boy down on the seat beside him, but Harry's fingers had locked into the fabric of the suit with surprising strength, even unconscious. Some survival instinct clinging to the first source of warmth and safety he'd found in God knew how long. So Bruce held him and Alfred drove, and they rode through Gotham in silence. Wayne Manor was lit with the particular golden glow that Alfred maintained regardless of the hour. "A dark house is a dead house, sir, and I refuse to live in a mausoleum." They entered through the East Wing service entrance, avoiding the main halls. Harry was still asleep, or whatever passed for sleep in a body that exhausted. His breathing was shallow but steady, and the faint glow around his hands had completely faded. The guest room was ready. Alfred had called ahead to no one. The man simply existed in a state of perpetual preparedness, and the bed was turned down, the radiator humming warm, a set of clothes that looked approximately the right size folded on the nightstand. Bruce didn't ask where Alfred had produced child-sized clothing at 3 in the morning. Some of Alfred's capabilities defied rational inquiry. Bruce laid Harry on the bed. The boy's fingers released their grip on the suit, and he curled immediately onto his side, pulling his knees to his chest, making himself as small as possible, defensive positioning, even in sleep. Bruce had done the same thing for years after his parents died. "I'll sit with him," Alfred said. It wasn't a suggestion. "The soup is on the stove and perfectly capable of simmering without supervision, unlike certain young masters I might name." Alfred pulled a chair to the bedside and sat. "Go, change out of the suit, eat something yourself, and then you can tell me what in heaven's name is going on." Bruce looked at the boy. At the scar on his forehead, the bruises on his arms, the bare feet cut and bleeding. He looked at Alfred, steady and immovable in the bedside chair. "He has powers, Alfred, not metahuman, not anything I've seen before. Energy projection, telekinesis, temperature manipulation, possibly more. He nearly collapsed a subway tunnel on me with a wave of his hand." Alfred absorbed this without visible reaction. "And he's 11, maybe 12. Well," Alfred said, adjusting the blanket over Harry's shivering form with hands that were impossibly gentle for a man who could field strip a rifle blindfolded. "That is certainly something." Bruce went downstairs. He changed out of the suit, showered, and ate a bowl of Alfred's soup standing at the kitchen counter because he couldn't sit still. His mind was racing, running through databases, cross-referencing energy signatures, pulling at threads. The boy's power didn't match any known metahuman profile. It wasn't the speed force, wasn't Kryptonian energy, wasn't the green or the red or any other elemental spectrum he'd cataloged. It wasn't technology. It wasn't divine. He'd been in the presence of literal gods, and this felt different. The energy had been warm, organic, almost alive. It had responded to the boy's emotions, flaring with fear, dimming with exhaustion. It was woven into him, not grafted on or inherited from an external source. Bruce sat at the back computer in the cave, still eating soup, and began a different kind of search. Not metahuman databases, historical records, mythology, folklore. Accounts of unexplained phenomena associated with individuals rather than artifacts or locations. He searched for 3 hours. He found fragments, scattered references across centuries and cultures, individuals who could manipulate energy without technology, who could move objects with thought, who could alter the physical world through willpower alone. Most of the accounts were dismissed as superstition, hallucination, or fraud, but there were patterns, too many patterns to ignore. A word kept appearing across cultures, across centuries: magic. Bruce Wayne was a man who had fought alongside an Amazon princess who drew power from Greek gods, who had stood next to a man who could fly because of yellow sunlight, who had watched a teenager run so fast he could vibrate through solid matter. He had seen things that should have been impossible, and he'd found explanations for all of them: alien biology, extra-dimensional energy, quantum mechanics pushed to absurd extremes. But magic, actual magic, that was different. That was a word for things that didn't have explanations, and Bruce Wayne was a man who needed explanations the way other people needed oxygen. He pushed back from the computer and rubbed his eyes. Dawn was coming. Pale gray light seeped through the cave's concealed skylights. He went upstairs to check on the boy. Alfred was still in the chair, reading. Harry was still curled on the bed, but he'd shifted in his sleep, one hand extended from under the blanket. The fingers twitched occasionally, and each twitch produced a tiny spark, a miniature flash of gold light that flickered and died like a firefly. Alfred had clearly been watching this, because his book was open but his eyes were on the boy's hand. "He's been doing that for about 2 hours, Alfred said quietly. "The sparks, they seem to correlate with dreaming. Rapid eye movement, spark, it's quite regular. Has he woken up? Once, briefly. He saw me and I told him he was safe and that there was soup when he was ready. He looked at me as though I'd spoken Mandarin and then went back to sleep." Alfred paused. He called out a few times in his sleep. "No" and "please" and "stop," mostly. The words hung in the warm room. Bruce said nothing. He also said "Uncle Vernon" twice. Alfred continued, his voice carefully neutral in the way it got when he was controlling significant anger. "And once very clearly, 'I'll be good, I promise.'" Bruce's hand closed into a fist at his side, slowly, then opened. "I'll be in the study," he said. "Call me when he wakes up." "Of course, sir." Harry woke at noon. Bruce heard it from the study, not an alarm, not Alfred's voice on the intercom, but a crash. A shattering, tinkling, concussive crash followed by a yelp and then silence. He was out of the study and down the hall in 6 seconds. Alfred met him at the guest room door, unruffled. He woke disoriented, Alfred reported. Saw unfamiliar surroundings and reacted. "The window is broken, I'm afraid, along with the mirror and the water glass on the nightstand. I believe the dresser may also be a loss." They entered the room. Harry was backed into the corner farthest from the bed, hands up, palms out, the same defensive posture as in the tunnel. The window was indeed broken, not just cracked, but blown outward, glass scattered across the garden below. The mirror above the dresser had shattered. The dresser itself had a crack running down its center as if something had struck it with enormous force. Harry's eyes were wild, darting between Bruce and Alfred. The green glow was back around his hands, but weaker than last night, flickering. "You're in Wayne Manor," Bruce said, calm, clear, factual. "In Gotham City. You came with me last night from the subway tunnels. You're safe. No one in this house is going to hurt you." Harry's breathing was ragged. His eyes locked on Bruce, and recognition slowly filtered through the panic. "Atman," he said. "Bruce, here, I'm just Bruce." Harry looked at Alfred. "Alfred Pennyworth," Alfred said with a small, precise bow. "I am the butler. I also made the soup I mentioned earlier, which is still available should you be interested. Tomato basil from scratch, not a tin." Harry stared at him. The green glow around his hands dimmed. His breathing began to slow. "I broke your window," Harry said. "You did," Alfred agreed. "It was, in fairness, not a particularly attractive window. I've been meaning to replace it. I broke your mirror and that furniture thing. The dresser, yes, also not irreplaceable. Are you hurt?" Harry blinked. The question seemed to confuse him. "Am I what? Hurt, injured? There was glass involved, and I want to be sure you haven't cut yourself." Harry looked down at his hands, his arms, as if checking. He hadn't been concerned about his own well-being. The concept that someone else might be seen to short-circuit something in his head. No, he said, I'm fine. Excellent. Then might I suggest breakfast, or lunch rather, given the hour. I have soup, sandwiches, and I can do eggs in virtually any style. Do you have a preference? Harry's stomach growled again, brutally loud in the quiet room. The boy flushed red under the grime. Anything, he whispered. I'll eat anything. Alfred nodded once and left the room with the particular measured stride that meant he was going to cook aggressively. Bruce stayed. Can I sit down? Bruce asked, gesturing at the chair Alfred had vacated. Harry nodded warily. Bruce sat. He didn't lean forward, didn't crowd the space. He settled back, kept his hands visible, his posture open, non-threatening, approachable, the same body language he used when interviewing traumatized witnesses. You don't have to tell me anything, Bruce said. Not now, not ever, unless you want to, but I want to tell you what I know so we're on the same page. Is that all right? Harry's chin dipped in a tiny nod. I know you're about 11 or 12. I know you've been living in those tunnels for a while, at least a few months, based on the condition of your shelter. I know you're from England, based on your accent. I know someone hurt you, based on the bruises. And I know you can do things that most people can't. You can create light, generate heat, move objects, project force. You did all of those things last night and again just now. Harry's face had gone very still, guarded, waiting for the verdict. I also know, Bruce continued, that you're not dangerous, not in the way you think. What you have, whatever it is, it's powerful, but you're not a weapon. You're a kid who's been surviving with tools nobody taught him how to use. You don't know what I am, Harry said. Number I don't, do you? The question landed somewhere soft. Harry's guard flickered, not down, but momentarily transparent. Behind it was confusion, fear, and a desperate, starving need for someone to tell him what was happening to him. I don't know, Harry said, and his voice cracked. I've been able to do things since always, since before I can remember. Things would happen when I was upset or scared. At the Dursleys, that's where at their house. Things would break or move or change color. My hair grew back overnight once after my aunt shaved it off. I ended up on the school roof once and I don't know how. And then after I left, after I ran, it got bigger, stronger, like it knew I needed it to survive. He looked at his hands. The glow was gone now, but his fingers trembled. In the tunnels there were men, bad ones. They came through a few weeks after I found the station. They were grabbing people, street people, kids, I don't know what for. They found me and he stopped, swallowed. I didn't mean to. I just was so scared and everything went white, and when it stopped, the tunnel behind them was collapsed and they were gone. I don't know if they got out. I don't know if Harry, the boy looked up. Whatever happened to those men, you were defending yourself. A child alone against adults trying to harm you. Whatever you did was survival. You don't know what I did. I don't even know what I did. Then we'll figure it out together if you want. Harry stared at him. The calculation was back in those green eyes, measuring, weighing, probing for the lie, the catch, the hidden cost. Bruce sat quietly and let himself be measured. He had nothing to hide, not from this. Why? Harry asked. Why do you care? You're Batman. There's a whole city out there. Why does one kid in a sewer matter? Bruce was quiet for a moment. Not because he didn't have an answer, but because the honest answer required something he didn't give easily. Because I was 8 years old when my parents were murdered in front of me, he said, in an alley 6 blocks from here, and afterward I was angry and I was scared and I was alone in ways that a house full of people couldn't fix. The only reason I survived it was because someone, he glanced toward the door Alfred had left through, refused to let me drown. Someone decided I mattered even when I didn't believe it myself. He looked at Harry. You matter, Harry. I don't need a reason beyond that. The silence that followed was fragile, a glass thing full of light. Harry's eyes were bright, not with power, with tears he was savagely refusing to let fall. His throat worked. His fists clenched at his sides, and for a moment the air in the room hummed with energy, the broken glass on the floor vibrating faintly. Then it stopped. Harry unclenched his fists. The glass went still. Okay, he said, rough, barely held together. Okay, Alfred returned with a tray, tomato basil soup, thick and steaming. A grilled cheese sandwich cut into triangles, a glass of milk, a second glass of water, a cloth napkin because Alfred would sooner die than serve a meal with a paper one. Harry looked at the tray with an expression Bruce had seen on the faces of refugees, disaster survivors, people who'd forgotten that food could be warm and plentiful and freely given. Eat slowly, Alfred advised, setting the tray on the bedside table. Your stomach will need time to readjust to regular meals, small bites, and stop if you feel ill. Harry picked up the sandwich with shaking hands. He bit into it, chewed, swallowed. His eyes closed. A sound escaped him, tiny, involuntary, something between a sigh and a whimper. Bruce stood quietly and left the room. Alfred followed a moment later, pulling the door almost closed behind him. They stood in the hallway. Through the gap in the door, they could hear the small, desperate sounds of a starving child eating. Sir, Alfred said. His voice was perfectly controlled. His eyes were not. What was done to that boy? I know the bruises alone, some of those are months old, layered. That's not a single incident, that's systematic, and he flinches. Every movement in his peripheral vision, he flinches. I've seen that in soldiers, sir, in prisoners, not in children. I know Alfred. Alfred straightened, drew himself up to his full height, which was considerable. I want it understood, he said, with the particular clipped precision that meant he was making a declaration rather than a request, that this child will be cared for, properly. Whatever complications arise from his abilities, whatever logistical challenges present themselves, whatever legal entanglements may follow, this child will be fed, clothed, housed, and treated with dignity under this roof, for as long as necessary. Bruce looked at him. Was there any doubt? None whatsoever, sir. I simply wanted it on the record. Noted. Bruce paused. I need to make some calls. Whoever he is, wherever he came from, there's a history. Someone put those bruises on him. I want to know who, and when you find out. Bruce's expression didn't change, but something behind it did, something cold, something final. Then we'll have a conversation about accountability. Alfred nodded and went back into the room to sit with Harry. Bruce went to the cave. He had calls to make and research to do, but first he pulled up the security feeds from the guest room. Harry had finished the sandwich and was working on the soup, holding the bowl in both hands and drinking directly from it, spoon abandoned. His eyes were closed, and there were tear tracks cutting clean lines through the grime on his cheeks. Bruce watched for 10 seconds. Then he closed the feed, opened a secure line, and dialed. Bruce. Zatanna Zatara's voice was sleep-rough but alert. She was, like most magic users he knew, nocturnal by inclination. It's noon. Either the world is ending or you need something weird. I need something weird. Color me shocked. What kind of weird? I found a child in the Gotham subway tunnels, 11, maybe 12. He can project energy from his hands, manipulate temperature, move objects telekinetically, and generate concussive force strong enough to collapse reinforced concrete. He has no training, no apparent awareness of what he is, and his power appears to be emotional and instinctual. It doesn't match any metahuman profile in my database. Silence on the line. Zatanna processed quietly. She was theatrical in person but razor-sharp in private. How strong? She asked. He nearly brought down a subway station when I startled him. Half-conscious, malnourished, terrified, and the energy output was significant. I estimate he could have done structural damage to the surface buildings above if he'd kept going. That's strong, that's strong. And you said emotional, instinctual, no incantations, no gestures, no foci. Number raw output, light, heat, force, all emanating directly from him. His hands are the primary emission point, but I suspect that's habit, not limitation. Another pause. When Zatanna spoke again, her voice was different, careful, precise. Bruce, what you're describing sounds like a natural-born magic user. And I don't mean someone with a talent for the arcane arts like me. I mean someone born with magic in them as a fundamental part of their biology. She paused. That's not supposed to exist, not the way you're describing it. Magical ability in the DC in our world is almost always acquired. Inherited bloodlines, mystical artifacts, demonic pacts, divine gifts, pure innate magical ability without any external source. That's legend, that's myth. He's not a myth. He's an 11-year-old boy sitting in my guest room eating soup. I want to see him. That's why I called, but Zatanna, he's traumatized, badly, abused, alone, terrified. I need you to be careful with him. Bruce, her voice softened. I'm not going to scare a child. I'll come tomorrow, give him a day to settle. And Bruce, yes, if he's what I think he might be, if there's even a chance he's what I think he might be, then he's not just powerful, he's important, historically, cosmically important, so keep him safe. That's the plan. He ended the call and sat in the silence of the cave. Above him, in a warm room with a garden view, a boy who could melt steel with his bare hands was eating soup and crying into a bowl. Bruce opened a new search on the Bat computer. He typed DURSLEY, England, child abuse, missing person, and began to dig. The afternoon passed quietly. Harry slept again after eating, his body demanding recovery with an urgency that overrode everything else. Alfred checked on him every 30 minutes, monitoring his breathing, his temperature, his color. The boy's vitals were stabilizing. He was dehydrated but improving, malnourished but responsive. Young bodies were resilient. Young bodies that could generate supernatural energy were, apparently, even more so. Bruce spent the afternoon in the cave, pulling threads. The Dursleys were easy to find. Vernon and Petunia Dursley, number 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey, England. Vernon worked at a drill company called Grunnings. Petunia was a housewife. They had one son, Dudley, 13, attending a local school called Smeltings. And until roughly 18 months ago, they'd had a nephew living with them. A nephew named Harry Potter. Harry James Potter, born July 31st. Parents, James and Lily Potter, both deceased. Cause of death listed as a gas explosion at their home in a village called Godric's Hollow on October 31st, 1981. Harry had been placed with his maternal aunt's family by social services shortly after. Bruce read the file twice. Something was wrong with it. The documentation was thin, too thin. No regular social worker visits after placement. No school records that mentioned concerns about the child's welfare despite what must have been visible signs of abuse. No missing persons report filed when Harry disappeared. The Dursleys hadn't reported their nephew missing. Their 11-year-old nephew had vanished and they hadn't called the police. Bruce's jaw tightened. He dug deeper. The gas explosion that killed the Potters was also strange. The forensic report was cursory, almost perfunctory. No detailed investigation, no follow-up, no suspects identified despite the fact that two young parents had died violently in their home. The file had been closed with unusual speed and signed off by officials whose names didn't appear in any other public records. Someone had buried this, quickly, efficiently, and with enough influence to make questions disappear. Bruce flagged the file and kept pulling. James Potter's background was sparse, educated at an institution that didn't appear in any database of British schools. Lily Potter, née Evans, had similarly thin records after age 11, as if she'd simply stepped out of the normal world and into a gap. He cross-referenced with Zatanna's earlier comment, natural-born magic users, hidden communities, inherited bloodlines. A picture was forming. Incomplete, fuzzy at the edges, but coherent enough to make Bruce Wayne very, very focused. Harry woke again at 6 in the evening, this time no crash. Alfred reported that the boy had simply sat up in bed, looked around the room with a bewildered expression, and asked very politely where the toilet was. When Bruce came up from the cave, Harry was sitting at the kitchen table. Alfred had coaxed him into a bath, no small feat, given the boy's reluctance to be vulnerable, and he was now wearing clean clothes that were still slightly too large, his dark hair wet and sticking up in every direction. Without the layers of grime, Harry looked both better and worse. Better because the basic structure of his face was visible, fine-boned, sharp-featured with those striking green eyes. Worse because the damage was clearer. Dark circles under his eyes, cheeks hollow, wrists so thin they looked breakable. But he was sitting at the table and he was eating slowly, carefully, as Alfred had instructed, and he looked up when Bruce entered with an expression that was wary but no longer hostile. "Alfred says this is your house," Harry said. "It is. It's big. It is." Harry looked around the kitchen, a space larger than the entire ground floor of number 4 Privet Drive, probably. His expression was hard to read, not impressed, exactly. More like incredulous, as if the existence of so much space for so few people was fundamentally absurd. "There's just you and Alfred?" Harry asked. "Most of the time, yes. In all of this, it was my parents' house. I grew up here." Harry absorbed this, filed it away behind those watchful eyes. "I looked into your background this afternoon," Bruce said, sitting across from him at the table, direct, honest. He wasn't going to pretend he hadn't. "Your name is Harry Potter. You lived with Vernon and Petunia Dursley in Surrey, England. They didn't report you missing." Harry's face closed, shudders dropping behind the green eyes. His hand tightened around his fork. "They were glad I was gone," he said, flat, factual. "What did they do to you, Harry?" The kitchen was very quiet. Alfred was at the stove, ostensibly focused on dinner preparation, actually listening with every fiber of his being. "It doesn't matter," Harry said. "It does. It doesn't because it's over. I left, I got on a ship and I came here, and now I'm here and they're there and it's over." "Harry, I don't want to talk about it." Sharp, final. The lights in the kitchen flickered once, a brief, involuntary pulse of power, and then steadied. Bruce nodded. "Okay, when you're ready, if you're ever ready." Harry's grip on the fork relaxed fractionally. He went back to eating. After a moment he said, without looking up, "The cupboard." Bruce waited. "They kept me in a cupboard under the stairs. That was my room for 10 years, a cupboard." Alfred set down the pan he was holding, very carefully, very quietly. "And then my uncle hit me when I did things, the weird things. He said he'd beat it out of me." Harry's voice was controlled, too controlled, the careful monotone of someone recounting facts rather than memories. "He couldn't. You can't beat it out. It just comes back angrier." "No," Bruce said, "you can't beat it out. I tried not to do it. I tried so hard, but it would just happen. If Dudley was chasing me, or if Uncle Vernon was, it would just happen. And then it'd be worse. The punishment would be worse because they were scared of me and angry at me at the same time." He put the fork down, stared at his plate. "I didn't know what it was. I still don't. I thought maybe I was a freak. That's what they called me. The Freak. That was my name there." The lights in the kitchen buzzed. The temperature rose 3 degrees. Neither Bruce nor Alfred moved. "You're not a freak," Bruce said. "You have an ability, an extraordinary one. And it's part of you. It's not something to be beaten out or suppressed or ashamed of. It's something to be understood and developed." Harry looked at him, those green eyes still too old for his face. You really believe that? I've worked with people who can fly, Harry, people who can run faster than light, people who can bench press mountains. What you can do is different from what they can do, but it's not less, and it's not wrong. Something shifted in Harry's face, not a breakthrough, nothing so dramatic, just a tiny crack in the wall, a single brick loosened. Okay, Harry said softly. He picked up his fork and went back to eating. The rest of the evening was quiet. Alfred showed Harry the house, not all of it, because showing someone all of Wayne Manor would take the better part of a day, but the essential part. The kitchen, the living room, the library, the gardens visible through the tall windows. Harry walked through it all like a visitor to an alien planet, touching walls and door frames and the spines of books with careful, wondering fingers. He paused in the library, longest pause of the tour. His eyes swept the shelves, thousands of volumes, floor to ceiling, and something flickered in his expression. Hunger, but not for food. Can I read these? He asked, careful, tentative, braced for refusal. Any of them, Alfred said, all of them. The library is open at all hours. Harry pulled a book from the nearest shelf, a thick volume on astronomy, well above any 11-year-old's reading level. He opened it and his eyes moved across the page with a focus and speed that told Bruce something new. The boy was smart, not just clever or quick, intellectually hungry in a way that suggested he'd been starved of stimulation as deliberately as he'd been starved of food. Another data point, another piece of the picture. Bruce left Harry with Alfred and the astronomy book and went back to the cave. He had plans to make. Zatanna was coming tomorrow. Harry needed medical attention, real attention, not just food and rest. He needed documentation, legal status, protection, and beyond all of that, he needed training. Because the power Bruce had seen in that tunnel was vast, uncontrolled, and growing, and a child with that kind of power in Gotham City without the ability to control it was a disaster in slow motion. He sat at the computer and began building a framework. Physical recovery first, nutrition, medical care, sleep. Then assessment. Zatanna could evaluate the magical component while Bruce assessed cognitive and physical baselines. Then training, structured, progressive, designed to build control and precision. And alongside all of that, the hardest part, trust. Building a relationship with a child who had been taught by the world that relationships meant pain. Bruce Wayne had never planned to be a father. He'd taken in Dick Grayson out of empathy and guilt and a fierce, irrational need to save the boy he hadn't been able to save himself from being. Dick had grown up bright and strong and good, despite Bruce's mistakes, and now he was Nightwing, holding his own, making his own way. This was different. Dick had been traumatized but fundamentally whole, loved by his parents for the first 11 years of his life, with a foundation of security that Bruce had been able to build on. Harry had no foundation. Harry had a cupboard and a word, freak, and 10 years of systematic cruelty followed by a year of surviving alone on streets that would have killed most adults. Building from that wasn't renovation, it was construction from bedrock. Bruce pulled up the training protocols he developed over the years. He'd need to modify them heavily. He opened a new file, Project Sentinel. He paused, deleted the title, too clinical, too military. The boy wasn't a project. He renamed the file Harry. And began to write. Midnight, the manor was silent. Bruce was in the study, still working, when a soft sound from the hallway made him look up. Harry stood in the doorway barefoot, wearing the pajamas Alfred had laid out. The astronomy book was clutched to his chest. His eyes were too bright, not with power, but with the desperate alertness of someone who was afraid to sleep. I had a dream, Harry said, about the tunnel, the men. I could hear them screaming under the rocks. Bruce set his work aside. Come in. Harry padded into the study and sat on the leather sofa across from Bruce's desk. He pulled his feet up under him, making himself small again, that habitual contraction, minimizing the target. Do you dream about people you've hurt? Harry asked. Blunt, artless, a child's question with an adult's weight. Yes, Bruce said, sometimes. Does it get better? It gets different. The dreams don't go away, but you learn to carry them. Harry considered this. His fingers traced the cover of the astronomy book. What am I? He asked, not for the first time, but differently now. Not with the panicked defiance of the tunnel or the brittle control of the kitchen. Quietly, honestly, a child asking an adult for an answer he desperately needed. I don't know yet, Bruce said, but I have a friend who might. She's coming tomorrow. Her name is Zatanna, and she understands things about what you can do that I don't. Is she like me? Similar, not the same. She'll be able to tell us more. Harry nodded. He opened the astronomy book to a page about stellar classification and stared at it without reading it. Mr. Wayne, Bruce, hesitant, trying the name. Are you going to send me back? Number, what if your friend says I'm dangerous? You are dangerous, so am I. That's not a reason to send you anywhere. What if the Dursleys will never touch you again? That's not a promise I make lightly, and it's not one I break. Harry looked at him. For a long, searching moment, that ancient, calculating gaze swept Bruce's face, looking for the lie, the evasion, the conditional clause. He didn't find one. "Okay," Harry said, third time he'd said it. Each time it carried a little more weight, a little more trust, a brick removed from the wall rather than loosened. "I'm going to try to sleep again," Harry said, standing up. He paused in the doorway. "Thank you for the food and for all of it." "You're welcome, Harry." The boy vanished down the dark hallway, bare feet silent on the hardwood. Bruce listened until he heard the guest room door close. He turned back to his desk. The file was open on his screen. Harry. Training frameworks, medical protocols, legal strategies, resource allocations. But that wasn't what mattered tonight. What mattered tonight was that a boy who'd been living in a sewer was sleeping in a clean bed, with a full stomach, in a house where no one would hurt him. The rest, the power, the mystery, the training, the destiny that Zatanna's voice had hinted at, all of that could wait. Bruce closed the file, turned off the desk lamp, sat in the dark study and listened to the old house settle around him. Down the hall, in the quiet room with the garden view, every light in the house went out at once. A pulse. A heartbeat of power rolling through the manor's electrical system like a wave. The lights flickered back on 2 seconds later. Harry, dreaming. His power reaching out even in sleep, touching the house that sheltered him. Bruce sat in the dark after the lights returned and thought about what he'd found beneath Gotham. Not a weapon, not an anomaly, not a project. A child who could set the world on fire and who just wanted someone to tell him he wasn't a freak. "What have I found?" he'd thought last night in the tunnel with an unconscious boy in his arms. He knew the answer now. The same thing Alfred found 26 years ago in a mansion full of ghosts. Someone worth saving. Chapter 2. Crucible. Zatanna Zatara arrived at Wayne Manor at 10 in the morning, which for her was practically dawn. She came through the front door because Bruce had asked her not to teleport into the house. "He's skittish, Z, don't appear out of thin air in front of him," and she'd agreed, though she'd pointed out that appearing out of thin air was sort of her whole thing. Alfred met her in the foyer. She was dressed down for Zatanna: jeans, boots, a leather jacket, her dark hair pulled back. No top hat, no fishnets, no stage presence. Bruce had asked for that too. She'd agreed to that as well, because Bruce Wayne asking for things twice meant they mattered, and Bruce Wayne asking for things involving a child meant they mattered enormously. "Miss Zatara," Alfred said with the warmth he reserved for people he genuinely liked. "Thank you for coming, Alfred." She kissed his cheek. "Bruce said you've been feeding him," the boy. "Continuously. He eats as if he's afraid each meal will be his last, which, given what we know, is an entirely rational fear." "How is he this morning?" "Alert, wary. He's been in the library since 7 a.m. reading a university-level textbook on astrophysics. He appears to be understanding it." Zatanna raised an eyebrow. 11 years old, so he tells us. Huh. She followed Alfred through the manor to the library where Bruce was waiting outside the door. "He's inside," Bruce said, keeping his voice low. "I told him you were coming. He's nervous but willing." "What did you tell him about me?" "That you understand things about his abilities that I don't, that you can help him figure out what he is." "No pressure or anything." Zatanna glanced through the cracked door. She could see a small figure in an armchair by the window, nearly swallowed by the upholstery, a book open on his lap. Even from here, even through a door, she could feel it, the boy's power. It filled the room like a scent, warm, electric, thrumming at a frequency that made her teeth ache. Her own magic stirred in response, recognizing something kindred and yet alien. Like hearing a familiar song played on an instrument she'd never encountered. "Bruce," she said quietly, "whatever I expected, it wasn't this. What do you feel?" "I feel like I'm standing next to a bonfire and he's just sitting there reading." She took a breath. "Okay, let me do this." She pushed the door open and walked in. Casual, easy, a woman entering a library, no fanfare. Harry looked up. Those green eyes locked onto her with the laser focus Bruce had described, evaluating, measuring, cataloging threat levels. Zatanna smiled, not a performance smile, not the dazzling grin she wore on stage, a real one. "Hey Harry, I'm Zatanna, Bruce's friend. I know. He told me." Harry's voice was guarded but polite. Whatever else the Dursleys had beaten into him, they'd installed a reflexive politeness that surfaced when he was unsure. "You do magic." "I do. Real magic, not card tricks and things." Zatanna pulled the chair from the reading desk and sat, keeping a comfortable distance. "Real magic, wanna see?" Harry's eyes narrowed slightly, suspicious. But curiosity was winning, she could see it, the same intellectual hunger Bruce had noticed, straining against the caution. "Okay," he said. Zatanna held up her hand, palm open, and spoke softly. "Rewolf." A flower bloomed from her palm. Not a conjured illusion, a real flower, a white lily growing from nothing into full bloom in 3 seconds. It sat in her hand, perfect and alive, dewdrops on its petals. Harry stared at it, his mouth opened slightly. How did you do that? He whispered. Backward incantation. I speak what I want to happen backwards, and my magic makes it real. That's how my particular tradition works. It's how my father taught me and his mother taught him. You have to say words. I do, every time. The words are how I focus and direct the energy. Harry looked at his own hands, then back at her. I don't have to say anything, it just happens. I know. That's what makes you different. Zatanna leaned forward slightly. Harry, can I ask you something? When it happens, what does it feel like inside you? Not what it looks like from outside. What does it feel like? Harry frowned, thinking. She could see the gears turning, a child trying to articulate something he'd never had language for. Like heat, he said slowly. In my chest, like something's alive in there and it wants out. When I'm calm, it's just warm. When I'm scared or angry, it pushes, like pressure, like it's trying to get through my skin, and if I don't let it out, it hurts, like being squeezed. Zatanna nodded. Expression was neutral, but her mind was racing. And when you do let it out, it goes where I'm looking, mostly, sometimes where I'm thinking about. It's not, I can't always control where it goes or how much comes out. Last night I broke a window and a dresser just because I woke up scared. Can you show me something small, whatever you're comfortable with? Harry glanced at the door where Bruce's shadow was visible in the hallway. He looked back at Zatanna, then down at the lily in her hand. He held out his own hand, palm up, and frowned in concentration. The air above his palm shimmered. Warmth rolled off him in a wave that Zatanna felt on her face like opening an oven door. A point of golden light appeared, hovering an inch above his skin. It grew, brightened, elongated, and resolved into a shape. A bird, a tiny bird made of light and heat, glowing gold, its wings moving in slow, steady beats. It lifted off Harry's palm and circled once around his head, trailing sparks like a tiny comet before dissolving into nothing. Harry's hand dropped. He was breathing harder. That's all I can do when I try to be precise. The big stuff, the force and the heat and the breaking things, that's easy. That just comes, but making something specific, something with a shape. He trailed off. It's hard. Zatanna was staring at the space where the bird had been. She realized she was holding her breath and let it out. Harry, that was beautiful. He blinked, as if the word didn't compute, as if no one had ever applied it to something he'd done. It was just light. It was controlled energy manifestation shaped by pure intent and willpower, without incantation, without a focus object, without any external magical tradition or framework. Do you know how many sorcerers on this planet can do that? Neither do I, because I'm not sure any of them can. Harry stared at her. But you just made a flower. I made a flower by speaking a word that channels my inherited magical ability through a linguistic framework developed over generations. You made a living sculpture out of raw energy using nothing but your mind. Those are not the same thing. She stood up, walked to the window, collected herself, because Zatanna Zatara did not lose her composure in front of clients or children, and this boy was both. She turned back to face him. Your magic is different from mine, she said. Not better, not worse, but fundamentally different in nature. Mine is inherited and channeled through learned techniques. Yours is innate. It's part of your biology, the way your heartbeat is. It doesn't need words or wands or rituals because it's not a skill you learn. It's an organ you were born with. An organ, a metaphor. What I mean is, you're not doing magic, Harry. You are magic. It's woven into you at a level I've never seen before. The reason you can't always control it is the same reason a baby can't control its hands at first. It's not a failing, it's just a muscle you haven't learned to use. Harry absorbed this. That calculating look was back, but different now, turned inward, evaluating himself rather than her. Can I learn, he asked, to control it? Yes, absolutely yes. It's going to take work and it's going to take time, but your magic wants to be controlled. I can feel it, Harry. It's not fighting you. It's waiting for you to learn its language. She came back and sat down. Held out the lily to him. Keep this. Think of it as a promise. I'm going to help you figure this out. Harry took the flower, held it carefully as if it might vanish, as if everything good might vanish if he held it too tightly or not tightly enough. Thank you, he said. Zatanna looked at the door. Bruce was still there, listening. Don't thank me yet, she said, smiling. Training's going to be the hard part. Zatanna stayed for 3 hours. She ran what she called baseline assessments, a series of exercises designed to map the boundaries of Harry's abilities. They used the Manor's East Garden because Zatanna wanted open space and Bruce wanted distance from anything structurally important. The results were staggering. Harry could generate and project thermal energy, heat and cold, with a temperature range that Zatanna couldn't fully measure because her instruments topped out before he did. He could move objects telekinetically, from pebbles to a stone garden bench that weighed over 300 pounds. He could generate concussive force, directed blasts of kinetic energy that cratered the lawn and sent Alfred's birdbath into orbit. He could create barriers, fields of shimmering gold energy that deflected everything Zatanna threw at them, from conjured projectiles to focused magical attacks. And there were hints of more. Twice during the assessment, Harry flickered, his body seemed to blur, as if for a fraction of a second he wasn't entirely in one location. Zatanna caught it both times and filed it away. Teleportation, possibly instinctual, triggered by stress, if he could learn to do it deliberately. The control issues were real. Harry's precision was wildly inconsistent. He could generate enormous force but couldn't reliably modulate it. Asked to push a leaf across the grass, he sent it through a hedge and into the next county. His barriers were strong but irregular in shape and duration. His thermal output was powerful but unfocused, heating the entire area rather than specific targets. Power without precision, Zatanna told Bruce afterward, while Harry was inside with Alfred having lunch. They stood in the garden, surveying the damaged, cratered lawn, missing birdbath, one small tree that was now on fire and one that was inexplicably frozen solid. He's got a fire hose and no nozzle. Can you teach him precision? I can teach him theory. Frameworks for thinking about magical energy, how to conceptualize it, partition it, direct it. My methods won't transfer directly because his magic works differently than mine, but the underlying principles should apply. The mental discipline, though, the focus, the control under pressure, the ability to think clearly when the power wants to run wild, that's your department. That's training, not teaching. Bruce nodded. He'd already been thinking along the same lines. How often can you come? Twice a week, more if needed. Bruce, I want to be clear about something. She lowered her voice. This boy is going to be one of the most powerful magic users on the planet. Possibly the most powerful. I've studied sorcerers and magicians and mystic entities for my entire life, and I have never felt anything like what's inside that kid. What he did today was the equivalent of a toddler knocking over a block tower. When he grows up, when he learns control, I don't know what his ceiling is. I'm not sure he has one. That's why he needs training and structure and people around him who won't be afraid of what he can become. Zatanna looked at him for a long moment. You're going to turn him into a vigilante. I'm going to give him the tools to make that choice himself. Bruce, he's already made the choice, Zatanna. He told me last night about the men in the tunnel, the traffickers who tried to grab him. He defended himself and he's been carrying guilt about it ever since. He has power and he has a conscience. The only question is whether that conscience is educated. Zatanna sighed. She looked at the frozen tree, the burning tree, the cratered lawn. Twice a week, she said, and Bruce, get him a library card. The boy reads like he's starving for it. She left through the front door. No teleportation. She'd promised. Training began the next morning. Bruce woke Harry at 6 a.m. The boy appeared in the kitchen bleary-eyed and confused, wearing pajamas and the deeply offended expression of someone who had just discovered mornings, but he came. Alfred had laid out breakfast, eggs, toast, fruit, juice, a quantity of food that would have fed the Dursley household, but that Alfred had calculated precisely for a growing, malnourished child with a hyperactive magical metabolism. Eat everything, Bruce said. You'll need the energy. For what? Training. Harry looked at him over a forkful of scrambled eggs. You said your friend Zatanna, she was going to help me learn control. She is, twice a week, but control isn't just about magic. Control starts here. Bruce tapped his temple, and here, he tapped his chest. If you can't discipline your mind and your body, you'll never discipline your power, so we start with the fundamentals. What fundamentals? Physical conditioning, mental focus, observation, awareness. Harry chewed, swallowed. I lived in a sewer for 4 months. I think I know about survival. You know about survival. I'm going to teach you about thriving. The first week was brutal. Bruce started with physical assessment. Harry was, predictably, in terrible condition. Underweight, undermuscled, with the flexibility of a concrete pillar and the cardiovascular endurance of someone who'd spent a decade in a cupboard. His reflexes, however, were extraordinary, honed by years of dodging Vernon Dursley's fists and Dudley Dursley's gang and whatever else he'd encountered on the streets. And his pain tolerance was absurdly high, which was not a trait Bruce was happy to discover, because it meant the boy had been hurt enough and often enough to adapt to it. They started simple, running. Bruce took Harry out to the manor grounds at dawn, and they ran slow, measured laps around the perimeter of the estate. Harry lasted 12 minutes the first morning before doubling over, gasping, his vision swimming. Bruce waited beside him without comment and then walked him through cool-down stretches. Tomorrow we go 13 minutes, Bruce said. I'm going to die, Harry wheezed. You're not going to die, you're going to be sore, there's a difference. They ran every morning, 13 minutes on day 2, 15 on day 3. By the end of the first week, Harry could run for 20 minutes without stopping, and the color in his face was shifting from gray to something approaching healthy. Afternoons were mental work. Bruce sat with Harry in the study and taught him observation exercises. Memorization drills, study a room for 60 seconds, close your eyes, list everything you saw. Deduction games, here's a photograph of a crime scene, what happened here, what's the evidence telling you. Pattern recognition, logic puzzles, spatial reasoning. Harry was terrifyingly good at this. Not immediately, the first day, he struggled with the observation exercises, his attention fractured by anxiety and the constant hypervigilance that came with his background. But once he understood the framework, once he grasped that Bruce was teaching him to channel the alertness he already possessed into structured analysis, he took to it like a fish finding water. You taught yourself to read people, Bruce told him on the fourth day after Harry had deduced the contents of a sealed box from the way Alfred carried it. That's a survival skill. What I'm teaching you is how to apply that same skill deliberately, systematically to everything around you. You're teaching me to be a detective, Harry said. I'm teaching you to think. Detection is a byproduct. Evenings belong to Alfred. This hadn't been planned, it had simply happened organically, the way things did in Alfred's orbit. After dinner, Alfred and Harry would settle in the library, and Alfred would teach, not formally, conversationally. Harry would ask a question about something he'd read, what's a neutron star? Or why did the Roman Empire fall? And Alfred would answer, and the answer would lead to another question and another, and by the time Harry went to bed, he'd absorbed more than most children learned in a week of school. Alfred was, Bruce reflected, a superlative teacher, patient without being condescending, knowledgeable without being showy. And he had an instinct for knowing when Harry was genuinely curious versus when Harry was asking questions to postpone bedtime, which was its own form of intelligence. The nightmares continued, every night without fail. Harry would scream or gasp or simply radiate power in his sleep, sending pulses through the manor's electrical system. Bruce installed surge protectors on every circuit in the house after the third night. Alfred replaced the guest room window twice. Harry apologized each time, mortified, and each time both Bruce and Alfred told him it didn't matter, and each time Harry looked at them as if they were speaking a language he was still learning to translate. On the sixth day, Bruce introduced combat training. Not fighting, not yet, movement. Bruce took Harry to the cave. The boy's eyes went wide when the elevator descended into the vast underground space, wider still when he saw the vehicles, the computer, the arsenal, and led him to the training floor. Padded mats, open space, mirrors on one wall. I'm not going to teach you martial arts, Bruce said. Not yet. First, I'm going to teach you how to move. I know how to move. I just spent a week running around your garden. You know how to locomote. Moving is different. Moving is understanding where your body is in space at every moment. It's balance, proprioception, spatial awareness. You have magic that can project force in any direction. You don't know exactly where you are and where everything else is. When you use it, you'll miss, or worse, you'll hit the wrong thing. He spent 3 hours teaching Harry basic stances, weight transfers, and balance exercises. Harry fell over a lot. He got frustrated. The frustration made the air temperature spike, which made Bruce calmly point out that his inability to separate emotional state from power output was exactly why they were doing this, which made Harry more frustrated, which proved the point. By the end of the session, Harry could hold a single-leg stance for 30 seconds without wavering. Small progress, foundational. Why can't I just use magic for everything? Harry asked as they took the elevator back up, not whining, genuinely curious. If I can knock someone down with a wave of my hand, why do I need to know how to stand on one foot? Because power without skill is chaos. You're a bonfire, Harry. Bonfires are impressive, but they burn everything, including the things you want to protect. I'm going to teach you to be a scalpel. I thought you were teaching me to think. I'm teaching you to think, move, observe, and control yourself. The magic is yours, the rest is mine. Harry considered this as they walked through the manor. And the combination, he asked. Thinking and moving and magic together. That, Bruce said, is what makes a vigilante. Harry stopped walking, turned to face Bruce with an expression that was very still and very intent. Is that what you're training me to be? Bruce met his gaze. I'm training you to have the option. What you choose to be is up to you. But this city, he gestured toward the windows, where Gotham's skyline was visible in the distance, gray and jagged against a cloudy sky. This city is full of people who need help. You have the power to provide it. Whether you choose to is your decision, and I won't make it for you. But I want you to be ready if the time comes. Harry looked out at Gotham. City that had been his home for 4 months, its sewers, its tunnels, its dark underbelly. The city where men had tried to grab him in the dark, the city where he'd hidden and starved and survived. I already chose, he said quietly. I chose when I came here instead of somewhere safe. I could have stayed on the ship, gone somewhere warm, somewhere easy. But I got off in Gotham because, I don't know, something told me to. Something said this was where I was supposed to be. He looked back at Bruce. Train me for real, not just the basics, all of it. I want to be ready. Bruce studied him, 11 years old, maybe 12, a century behind those green eyes. All right, he said. Then we start for real tomorrow, day 8. Dick Grayson came to visit. Bruce hadn't called him. Alfred had. Because Alfred understood things about family dynamics that Bruce, for all his brilliance, sometimes missed, like the fact that an isolated, traumatized child in a house with only 2 adults needed to see someone closer to his own age, even if closer still meant a decade's gap. Dick arrived on his motorcycle at noon, helmet under one arm, grinning the easy grin that had been making people like him since he was 9 years old. He walked into the manor, hugged Alfred, clapped Bruce on the shoulder, and said, "So where's the wizard?" "We're not calling him that," Bruce said. "Bruce, the kid shoots fire from his hands. He's a wizard. Where is he?" Harry was in the library as usual. He'd graduated from the astronomy textbook to a volume on theoretical physics that Bruce was fairly sure he himself hadn't fully understood at age 20. He looked up when Dick walked in and immediately tensed. New person, unexpected, unknown variable. "Hey." Dick crossed the room with the particular confident ease of someone who'd grown up performing. He dropped into the chair across from Harry and stuck out his hand. "Dick Grayson, I used to live here. Bruce probably hasn't mentioned me because he's emotionally constipated. I'm basically your older brother now." Harry stared at the outstretched hand, then at Dick's face, then at the hand again. "I don't have a brother," Harry said. "You do now. Come on, shake. It's not going to bite you." Harry shook his hand, cautiously as if the gesture might be a trap. Dick's grip was warm and calibrated, firm enough to be genuine, gentle enough to be safe. "Bruce says you can do things," Dick said, settling back in his chair with the boneless comfort of a natural acrobat. "Cool things, magic things." "I can do things," Harry confirmed, still wary. "Can you fly?" "I what?" "Fly, like through the air. Because if you can fly and I can't, I'm going to be extremely jealous and possibly resentful." Harry blinked. The wariness was fracturing, unable to maintain structural integrity against the sheer force of Dick Grayson's personality. "I don't think I can fly," Harry said. "Have you tried?" "Number, then how do you know?" Dick leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes bright. "Seriously, Bruce said you can move stuff with your mind, right? Objects. What's the heaviest thing you've moved?" "A garden bench. It was about, I don't know, really heavy." "Could you move yourself?" Harry's mouth opened, closed. His brow furrowed. He looked down at his hands with the expression of someone who'd just been handed a key and was trying to figure out which door it opened. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe we should find out." Dick stood. "Come on outside, let's see if the wizard can fly." "We're not calling me that," Harry said, but he was standing up, the book forgotten, and there was something on his face that Bruce, watching from the doorway, hadn't seen before. Excitement. A child's excitement. The pure, uncomplicated thrill of possibility. They went to the garden. The lawn was still cratered from Zatanna's assessment, and the frozen tree had thawed into a sad, drooping mess that Alfred was pointedly not discussing. Dick led Harry to the center of the open space and stepped back. "Okay, start small. Can you lift a rock?" Harry held out a hand. A stone the size of a fist rose smoothly from the ground and hovered at eye level. "Cool, now can you push it, like give it a shove without touching it?" Harry flicked his fingers. The stone shot sideways and embedded itself in the garden wall with a crack. "Wow, okay, lot of power there. Now, and this is the important part, can you do that to yourself? Feel whatever you feel when you push the rock, but push you instead. Gently." Harry closed his eyes, his face scrunched in concentration. The air around him shimmered, that heat-haze distortion that Bruce had learned to recognize as Harry's power building. Nothing happened for 10 seconds, 15. Then Harry rose, not fast, not dramatically. He lifted off the grass like a soap bubble, slow, uncertain, wobbling 2 inches, 6 inches. A foot. He hung there, eyes still closed, face tight with concentration, arms slightly extended for balance he didn't need because he wasn't standing on anything. Dick whooped, an actual whoop, loud and joyful, the sound of a man who'd spent his childhood defying gravity and recognized a kindred spirit. Harry's eyes flew open. He looked down, saw the grass a foot below his feet. "Oh," he said. And then he fell because looking had disrupted the concentration that held him up, and he landed on his backside on the soft lawn with a thump and an oof, and a burst of startled laughter, actual laughter, bright and real, that made Dick cheer again and made Bruce in the doorway feel something crack open in his chest. "I flew," Harry said, scrambling to his feet. "Did you see? I flew." "You hovered," Dick corrected, grinning enormously. "But yeah, kid, you flew. Now do it again." They spent the next 2 hours in the garden. Dick was a natural teacher, patient where it mattered, pushing where it helped, injecting humor into the frustrating moment. Taught Harry to think about flight not as lifting but as redirecting. Don't push against the ground, push against everything all around you, like you're squeezing yourself upward through the air. Harry crashed a lot. He cratered the lawn further. He accidentally launched himself sideways into a hedge at one point, and Dick had to pull him out while Harry spat leaves and swore words that he must have learned on the streets. But by the end of the afternoon, Harry could hover at 6 feet for 30 seconds. He could move laterally, slowly, with concentration. And once, just once, he shot straight up 40 feet in a burst of golden light before his focus broke and Dick had to sprint to catch him on the way down. He didn't quite make it, but Harry's magic caught himself at the last second, stopping him 3 inches above the ground in a cocoon of golden energy before depositing him gently on the grass. "Your magic's got good reflexes," Dick observed, helping him up. "Even when your brain panics, your power catches you. That's a good sign." "I almost fell 40 feet, but you didn't. Your magic knew what to do even when you didn't. That's instinct. That's good." They went inside. Harry was exhausted. The sustained magical output had drained him, but he was vibrating with a different kind of energy. The glow of accomplishment, of discovery, of finding out that the terrifying, uncontrollable force inside him could do something wonderful. Dick stayed for dinner. He and Harry sat together at the kitchen table while Alfred cooked, and Dick told stories about growing up in the circus, about learning acrobatics, about the first time Bruce had taken him to the cave. He didn't tell the story of his parents' death. Not yet. That was a gift for a different day, when trust was deeper and the parallels could be drawn without causing damage. Harry listened with rapt attention, eating steadily, asking questions. How high could Dick jump? How fast could he move? What was it like to fight criminals? Did he ever get scared? Every time, Dick said, "Fear's not the enemy, Harry. Fear is information. It tells you something matters. The trick isn't not being scared, it's being scared and doing the thing anyway." Bruce said something like that. Bruce says a lot of things like that, usually while punching someone. "The man communicates best through violence and brooding silences." Dick glanced at Bruce, who was leaning against the kitchen counter with his arms folded. "Don't give me that look. You know it's true." "I communicate fine," Bruce said. "You communicated your disapproval of my motorcycle last week by sending me a 12-page engineering report on the structural inadequacies of the chassis. That's not communication, Bruce. That's a passive-aggressive research paper." Harry laughed, small, surprised, quickly suppressed, but a laugh. Dick caught it and filed it away with visible satisfaction. After dinner, Dick pulled Bruce aside. "He's remarkable," Dick said, low, serious. The performer's mask dropped. "The power is insane, but that's not what I mean. He's been through hell, Bruce. Worse than me, worse than most people I know, and he's still in there. Still curious, still wanting to learn, still capable of laughing. That kid's got a core of steel. I know, you're going to make him a vigilante. He's already decided. He's 11. I was 8 when I decided. You were 11. Dick opened his mouth, closed it, ran a hand through his hair. "Yeah," he said, "fair point, but Bruce, be careful with him. He's strong, but he's fragile in places he doesn't even know about yet. The trauma stuff, it's going to surface. Not now while everything's new and exciting. Later, when he feels safe enough to fall apart." "I know," Bruce said again, because he did. He'd watched it happen with Dick years ago. The delayed collapse, the grief that waits until it's safe to arrive. "I'll come by twice a week," Dick said. "Teach him movement, acrobatics, spatial awareness, the stuff you're too stiff to teach." "I'm not stiff. Bruce, you move like a tank in a tuxedo. It's effective, but it's not graceful. The kid needs grace. He needs to learn to move like his power moves, fluid, fast, in every direction. That's my department." Bruce didn't argue. Because Dick was right, and because accepting help was something he'd been working on for 20 years. Dick left at 9. Harry watched his motorcycle disappear down the manor's driveway from the library window, and when he turned around, his expression was complicated. "He's like you," Harry said, "but different." "Different how?" "He's lighter, like he carries the same stuff, but it doesn't weigh as much." Bruce considered this. "Dick processes things through connection, through people. I process through work, which is better, his way. Don't tell him I said that." The second week brought Zatanna's first formal training session. She arrived on Tuesday and set up in the cave. Bruce had cleared a space, reinforced the walls, and installed measurement equipment. Harry descended in the elevator wearing the training clothes Alfred had procured, flexible, practical, dark. "Today we're going to work on control," Zatanna said. "Not power. You have enough power to light up a city block. What you need is finesse." She set a candle on a stand in the middle of the floor. "Light it." Harry raised his hand. The candle exploded. Wax and flame went everywhere. Zatanna's shield caught the debris. "Let me rephrase. Light the candle without destroying it." Harry's jaw set. He raised his hand again more carefully. The air shimmered. The candle's wick smoldered, glowed, and burst into a flame that was 6 inches tall, 4 times what a candle that size should produce. "Closer," Zatanna said. Again, they went through 18 candles. By the end of the session, Harry could light one with a flame approximately the right size about half the time. The other half, the candle either exploded, melted, or caught fire in its entirety. Zatanna was patient. Harry was frustrated. I could level a building, he said through gritted teeth after the 15th candle detonated. Why can't I light a stupid candle? Because leveling a building is about release. Lighting a candle is about restraint. Release is easy. Restraint is mastery. Restraint is boring. Restraint is the difference between a forest fire and a forge. One destroys, the other creates. Which one do you want to be? Harry stared at the remains of candle 15. He took a breath, raised his hand. The 16th candle lit with a perfect, steady flame. That one, he said. Zatanna smiled. Now put it out without destroying it. The candle exploded. We'll work on that, Zatanna said, Thursday of the second week. Physical training had progressed to basic hand-to-hand combat. Bruce stood across from Harry on the cave's training mat, both in workout clothes. I'm going to attack you, Bruce said, slowly. I want you to move, don't use magic, don't try to block, just move, get out of the way. Why can't I use magic? Because magic is your strength and you'll lean on it. A good fighter doesn't lean. A good fighter has options. Magic is one option, movement is another. When you have both, you're twice as hard to predict. Bruce came forward, slow, telegraphed, a straight right hand that a blind man could have seen coming. Harry sidestepped, barely. Good, again, straight left. Harry ducked under it, too low, off balance, but out of the way. Better, again. They went for an hour. Bruce gradually increased the speed, and Harry gradually adapted. His reflexes were exceptional, that survival instinct converting raw into practical with minimal instruction. He couldn't fight back yet, couldn't even throw a proper punch, but he could move. He could read Bruce's body language, the shift of weight, the tension in a shoulder, the direction of a glance, and translate those reads into evasive action in real time. You're reading me, Bruce said, pausing, not even winded. Harry was drenched in sweat. I can see when you're going to move, your shoulder goes first. Most people's does. Good, now I want to try something. Same exercise, but this time you can use magic. One rule, no direct attacks on me. You can move yourself, shield yourself, redirect yourself, but you cannot throw anything at me. Understood? Why? Because the first thing I need to know is whether you can integrate magic into movement without defaulting to attack. Power is your comfort zone, I want you outside it. Harry nodded. Set his stance the way Bruce had taught him, feet shoulder-width, weight centered, knees soft. Bruce attacked. Faster this time, real speed, combat speed, though still well below his maximum. A jab-cross combination aimed at Harry's center line. Harry sidestepped the jab and then did something extraordinary. Instead of ducking the cross, he pushed, a burst of force against the floor that launched him backward and upward, flipping him over Bruce's head. He landed behind Bruce in a crouch, wobbled, nearly fell, caught himself with a hand on the mat. Bruce turned, looked at him. Did Dick teach you that flip? Number I just, it felt right. The magic and the movement together, like they clicked. Do it again. Harry did it again and again. Each time smoother, more controlled. The magic and the body working in concert rather than series. By the fifth attempt, he was flowing, stepping, pushing, spinning, redirecting with bursts of force that moved him through space like a pinball, unpredictable and fast. He was laughing, not the suppressed, careful laughter of the kitchen table. Full laughter, breathless and wild, the sound of a child discovering joy in his own body for the first time. The cave echoed with it. Bruce pressed harder. Real combinations now, multi-angle attacks that would have challenged an experienced martial artist. Harry dodged, slipped, flew, literally flew at one point, boosting himself 10 feet straight up to avoid a sweep kick and hanging in the air for 3 seconds before dropping back down. Bruce threw a feint right hand high, left hand low, the real attack a knee strike to the midsection. Harry read the feint, read it, didn't fall for it, and instead of dodging, he planted both feet and threw up a barrier. Gold light shimmering, solid as steel. Bruce's knee hit it and stopped dead. They stood there, separated by 2 inches of golden energy. Harry's eyes were bright, power and adrenaline and something fierce and new. You said no direct attacks, Harry panted. You didn't say no shields. Bruce looked at the barrier, looked at the boy behind it, felt the edge of his mouth twitch. Good, he said. Very good. 3 days later, Friday evening, Harry went out. Bruce didn't know, Alfred didn't know. Harry waited until the manor was quiet, Bruce in the cave, Alfred in his quarters, and slipped out a ground floor window. He'd been watching. 2 weeks of observation training, and he'd mapped the manor's security systems, blind spots, and patrol patterns with the methodical precision of someone who'd spent years learning to be invisible. He dropped from the window to the garden, crossed the grounds to the wall, and climbed it. The wall was 12 feet of stone, and he could have floated over it, but he climbed it because Bruce had told him not to lean on magic, and Harry was finding, to his surprise, that he wanted to impress Bruce Wayne. The manor was 20 minutes from the city by car. Harry flew, not well, not fast. He rose above the tree line and arrowed toward Gotham's skyline, wobbling, dipping, correcting. The wind was cold at altitude, and he hadn't thought to bring a jacket. His magic compensated, warming the air around him in a cocoon of heat that left a trail of steam in the night air like a small comet. Gotham spread beneath him, vast and glittering and rotten and alive. He'd never seen it from above, only from below, from the sewers and tunnels and back alleys. From up here it was almost beautiful. Almost. He dropped into the Narrows. He knew the Narrows. He'd passed through when he first arrived in Gotham, before he'd found the subway tunnels. It was the worst part of the city, the most desperate, the most dangerous, the most forgotten. The streets were narrow and poorly lit, the buildings crumbling, the people moving fast with their heads down. Harry landed in an alley and walked. He didn't have a plan. He hadn't thought this through, not the way Bruce was teaching him to think things through. He just felt the pull, the city calling. 2 weeks of training and good food and safety, and underneath it all, the memory of what it felt like to be the person who needed help and nobody came. He wanted to be the person who came. He walked for 20 minutes. The Narrows at night was a symphony of misery, shouting from apartments, the distant pop of gunfire, a woman crying somewhere above him, the constant wail of sirens that never seemed to get closer. Harry moved through it with the invisibility of someone who lived on the streets. Head down, fast walk, don't make eye contact, except he didn't want to be invisible anymore. He wanted to see. He saw it at the corner of Miller and 8th, an alley. 3 figures, men, adult, big, and a 4th figure, smaller, pressed against the wall. Harry stopped. The scene resolved in the orange-yellow streetlight, 3 men surrounding a woman, one of them gripping her arm, another going through her bag, the third watching the street. The lookout saw Harry and sneered. "Walk away, kid." Harry didn't walk away. He walked into the alley. "Hey," the lookout stepped toward him. Big guy, heavy, a scar across his nose. "I said walk, you little." Harry raised his hand. The man's feet left the ground. He flew backward, not gently, not carefully, with the full, unrestrained force of Harry's instinct, and slammed into the dumpster at the end of the alley hard enough to dent the steel. He didn't get up. The other 2 men turned. The one holding the woman's arm let go. The one with her bag dropped it. What the? Harry's eyes glowed. Not a metaphor, not a trick of the light. His irises burned gold green and the air around him crackled with energy. The temperature in the alley spiked and both men felt sweat bead instantly on their skin. "Leave," Harry said. They ran, not walked, not backed away. They ran, stumbling over each other, and disappeared into the night. The lookout by the dumpster groaned and crawled after them, dragging one leg. Harry turned to the woman. She was pressed against the wall, clutching her bag strap, staring at him with wide eyes. "Are you okay?" Harry asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, nodded. "You should probably go somewhere safe. Is there somewhere you can go?" Another nod. She peeled herself off the wall, grabbed her bag, and edged past him, never taking her eyes off the boy whose hands were still faintly glowing in the dark alley. "Thank you," she whispered. And then she was gone, running, heels clicking on wet pavement. Harry stood in the empty alley. His heart was pounding, not from fear, not from exertion, from something else, something bright and fierce and right. He'd helped, he'd seen someone in trouble, and he'd done something about it, and it had worked, and the person was safe. So he kept walking. Over the next 2 hours, Harry stopped 4 crimes in the Narrows. The mugging was first. Then a carjacking on Roosevelt, 2 guys with a Slim Jim and a brick, and Harry pinned them both to the hood of the car they were trying to steal with a wave of telekinetic force that left them stuck like flies on tape. Then a drug deal that was going sideways, a buyer and seller screaming at each other, a gun coming out, and Harry reaching out with his mind and ripping the weapon from the man's hand so fast it left friction burns on his fingers. The gun floated to Harry, who crushed it into a ball of scrap metal and dropped it at the man's feet. "Find a new career," Harry suggested. 4th was the worst, a convenience store, glass front. Harry heard the crash from 2 blocks away and actually ran, feet on pavement, because he was still not good enough at flying to do it quickly in a tight urban environment. He rounded the corner and saw, shattered door, a man inside with a shotgun, the store clerk on the floor with his hands over his head, and a second man stuffing cash from the register into a bag. Harry walked through the shattered door. Glass crunched under his sneakers. The man with the shotgun swung it toward him. Harry didn't flinch, didn't slow down. He raised his hand and the shotgun wrenched itself free, torn from the man's grip and flung across the store where it hit the far wall and clattered to the floor. The robber stared at his empty hands, looked at Harry, looked at his partner who had frozen mid-stuff with a fistful of 20s. Harry's hands blazed with light, gold, bright, filling the store with warmth and power. "Sit down," he said. They sat. Harry turned to the clerk. "Are you hurt?" The clerk was middle-aged Korean with a name tag that said Park. He looked at Harry with an expression of total bewilderment. No, I'm not hurt. Who, what are you?" "Nobody. You should call the police." Harry walked out. Behind him he heard the clerk reaching for the phone, and one of the robbers saying to the other in a voice high and shaky with shock, "Dude, was that a kid?" He made it 6 blocks before he found Batman waiting for him, not in the suit. In the suit, Batman would have materialized from the shadows like a piece of the night coming alive. Instead, Bruce Wayne stood under a streetlight in a dark coat, arms folded, his expression absolutely unreadable. The Batmobile was parked behind him, black and angular, engine ticking as it cooled. Harry stopped. The glow around his hands died. "Hey," he said, "you disabled the window sensor. Yes. You avoided every camera on the grounds. Yes. You flew to the city. Yes. You've been intervening in criminal activity in the Narrows for approximately 2 hours. Yes." Bruce stared at him. Harry met the stare. He didn't flinch, didn't look down, didn't apologize. His chin was up, his shoulders were back, and there was a fire in his green eyes that had nothing to do with magic. "You said this city needs help," Harry said. "I helped. You have 2 weeks of training, 2 weeks. You have no tactical awareness, no communication equipment, no backup, no armor, no plan, and no understanding of the criminal ecosystem you just disrupted. You walked into a situation with a loaded shotgun wearing sneakers and a t-shirt. And I stopped it, and if there had been a second gunman, a lookout with a rifle across the street, if one of those men had been on Venom or wearing body armor or had a metahuman ability of their own, then I would have dealt with it. You don't know that. I do know that." Harry's voice was steady, certain, not arrogant, certain. "I can feel it, Bruce, my magic, it's there, it's always there, and it's faster than a gun, faster than anything they had. I wasn't in danger tonight, they were." Bruce was silent for a long moment. His jaw worked. Harry could see the conflict, the anger, the fear, the grudging recognition, playing out behind those dark eyes. "Get in the car," Bruce said. Harry got in the car. They drove in silence for 5 minutes. The Batmobile's interior was like sitting inside a stealth fighter, dark, angular, covered in screens and controls that Harry's fingers itched to explore. He didn't touch anything. The silence was heavy enough. "You're angry," Harry said. "I'm concerned. You're angry." Bruce exhaled hard. "I'm angry because you did exactly what I would have done at your age, and I know exactly how stupid it was because I did it." Harry turned to look at him. "Did it work when you did it?" "Sometimes, and sometimes I got shot, stabbed, poisoned, beaten half to death, and thrown off a building. I can fly. You can hover at 6 feet and drift sideways. That is not flying. I flew here, in a straight line over open terrain in fair weather. What happens when you need to fly between buildings in rain while someone's shooting at you?" Harry didn't have an answer for that. They drove. Bruce's hands were tight on the steering wheel, or the equivalent. The Batmobile's steering was more of a suggestion system for an AI that did most of the actual driving. "I'm not going to lock you up," Bruce said. "I'm not going to forbid you from going out. That would be pointless. You'd just find another way, and you'd lose trust in me, and trust is the only thing holding this together." Harry waited. "But you are going to do this right. If you want to fight for the city, you're going to be prepared. You're going to be equipped. You're going to have comms, armor, a plan, and backup. You are not going to run into gunfire in a t-shirt because you feel invincible. Feeling invincible is how people die." "I'm not, Harry." Bruce looked at him, just a glance, brief but loaded. "I'm not trying to hold you back. I'm trying to keep you alive long enough to become what you're going to become. 2 more weeks. Give me 2 more weeks of real training, combat tactics, scenario planning, and then we go out together. Properly." Harry held his gaze. The streetlights of Gotham streaked past the windows. 2 weeks, Harry said, "and then we go out together." "Together." Harry paused. "But if I see someone in trouble between now and then you call me and we handle it as a team." Harry considered this. It was reasonable. More than reasonable, it was the same logic he would have applied in Bruce's position. He nodded. "Deal." They drove back to the manor. Alfred was waiting at the door, and his expression suggested that someone was about to get a very polite, very thorough lecture on the topic of informing one's household before departing to fight crime at midnight. He was right. It was a hell of a lecture. The next 2 weeks were different. The training intensified, not gradually, sharply, like a switch had been thrown. Bruce had been building a foundation. Now he was building on it. Mornings were combat, not just evasion now, offense-defense combinations. Bruce taught Harry to fight the way he fought, efficient, direct, using an opponent's force against them. Harry would never be a physical powerhouse. He was too small, too light, but he was fast, flexible, and his magic made him something else entirely. A jab that carried a pulse of telekinetic force. A block reinforced with a barrier that could stop a crowbar. A dodge augmented by a burst of propulsive energy that moved him 6 feet sideways in a blink. They sparred every day. Bruce didn't pull punches, not real punches. He wasn't trying to hurt the boy, but he attacked with genuine intent, genuine speed, genuine pressure. Harry adapted at a rate that was almost unsettling. His body learned and his magic learned with it, the two systems integrating in real time until the distinction between physical movement and magical augmentation blurred and vanished. He's not fighting like a person who uses magic, Dick observed during one of his visits, watching Harry spar with Bruce from the cave's observation gallery. He's fighting like magic that happens to have a body. It was the most accurate description anyone had offered. Zatanna's sessions evolved too. Candles gave way to more complex exercises, shaping energy into specific forms, maintaining multiple magical effects simultaneously, using magic under physical stress. She had Harry levitate while solving math problems. She had him maintain a barrier while Bruce attacked it and simultaneously light candles across the room. She pushed his multitasking capacity until he broke, and then she pushed further. Your magic can handle more than your conscious mind can track, she told him after a session where he'd successfully maintained a shield, levitated 3 objects, heated a metal bar to glowing, and recited the periodic table all simultaneously for 45 seconds before collapsing in a heap. The limit isn't power, it's attention. The more you can train your mind to split focus without losing coherence, the more you can do at once. Bruce says the same thing about combat. Bruce is right. He usually is the insufferable man, Harry grinned. He was grinning more often now. The nightmares hadn't stopped, they were still there every night, sometimes so bad that the manor's lights blew and Alfred had to sit with him until dawn. But the daylight hours were expanding, filling with purpose and progress and the slowly growing warmth of human connection. He argued with Dick about acrobatics. He discussed Victorian literature with Alfred over tea. He sat in comfortable silence with Bruce in the cave, 2 people who understood each other's darkness without needing to name it. He was healing, slowly, unevenly, with setbacks and scars and days when the cupboard felt closer than the cave, but healing. The suit arrived on a Thursday. Alfred presented it in the cave, laid out on a table with the understated pride of a craftsman displaying his finest work. It was dark, not black, dark charcoal, with a subtle texture that caught the light in shifting patterns. The material was a Wayne Enterprises prototype, lightweight, flexible, resistant to blades, bullets, and blunt force impact. Alfred had modified it extensively. The torso was reinforced with additional ballistic panels, the joints were articulated for maximum range of motion, and the boots had grip soles designed for Gotham's wet rooftops. But the defining feature was the emblem on the chest, not a bat. A stylized shape, angular, sharp, like a bolt of lightning crossed with a shield. It caught the cave's light and seemed to glow faintly gold. I took the liberty, Alfred said, of incorporating a fiber-optic weave into the emblem's material. It reacts to electromagnetic energy, specifically to the wavelength your magic produces. When you use your power, it will illuminate, a visual signature. Harry touched the suit, ran his fingers over the emblem. There's a hood, Alfred continued, indicating a separate piece. Retractable, built into the collar. It contains a communication system linked to Batman's network, a heads-up display with basic tactical overlays, and at Master Bruce's insistence, a GPS transponder that cannot be disabled. Because he worries, Harry said, because he is clinically incapable of not worrying. Yes, Harry picked up the suit. It was lighter than he expected. He looked at Bruce, who stood a few paces back, watching. You said 2 weeks, Harry said. It's been 2 weeks, and we're going out, tonight. Harry looked at the suit, at the emblem, at his own hands, which hadn't glowed or sparked or burned anything in the cave since last Tuesday, because his control was improving by the day. Thank you, he said to Alfred, to Bruce, to the cave and the house and the days that had brought him here, to the city that waited outside, dark and broken and needing. He put the suit on. It fit perfectly, because Alfred, Gotham at midnight, seen from the top of the Sprang Bridge. The city glittered below, indifferent to its own suffering, beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful. Wind whipped off the river, carrying the smell of salt and industry and something underneath, the living scent of a city that never fully sleeps. Harry stood on the bridge's highest point, 140 feet above the water. The suit moved with him like a second skin. The hood was up, the comm was live in his ear, and his hands were steady. Beside him, Batman was a shadow. The cowl, the cape, the silence, the full presence of the dark night rendered in absolute blacks against the night sky. Rule 1, Batman said, we don't kill. I know. Rule 2, civilians are the priority, always, before the mission, before the target, before yourself. If someone is in danger, you get them out first. I know. Rule 3, you stay in communication. If I give an order, you follow it, not because I outrank you, but because I have 15 years of experience in this city and you have 2 weeks. I know. Rule 4, Bruce. Harry turned to face him. The wind pulled at his hood, the emblem on his chest glowed faintly gold. I know, you've been teaching me for a month. I listened, I'm ready. Batman looked at him. Behind the cowl, behind the white lenses, Bruce Wayne looked at the boy he'd pulled from a sewer and saw not what he was, but what he was becoming. Then let's go. Batman fired a grapple line and swung off the bridge into the dark. Harry watched him arc through the night, black on black, a shape cut from shadow, and then he stepped off the edge and fell. For 2 seconds he dropped, wind screaming, bridge receding above, water rushing up below. His stomach lurched, his body screamed, every survival instinct he possessed fired at once. Then he pulled. Magic erupted from his core, not from his hands, from everywhere, from every cell, and Harry Potter flew. Not hovered, not drifted, not wobbled uncertainly 6 feet above a garden lawn. He flew, tearing through the air above the Gotham River like a comet, golden light streaming behind him, the city wheeling beneath him in a blaze of 10 million lights. He caught up to Batman in 3 seconds, pulling alongside the grapple line's arc, matching speed, grinning so hard his face hurt. "Show off," Batman's voice said in his ear. "Just getting started," Harry said. He banked left and shot toward the skyline, and the night opened up before him like a door, and Gotham waited on the other side, and he was ready. He was finally ready. Chapter 3, Fear and Fire. The first 3 weeks of patrol were education, not the kind Bruce gave in the cave with drills and scenarios and calm, measured instruction. This was Gotham's education, raw, loud, unpredictable, and delivered at speed. Harry learned more about the city in those 21 nights than he had in 4 months of living beneath it. He learned the geography, not the map version, not the neat grid of streets and avenues that Bruce had made him memorize. The real geography, the way the Narrows folded in on itself like a wounded animal, alleys branching into dead ends and ambush points. The way Crime Alley earned its name after midnight when the streetlights died in sequence, 1 block at a time, as if the city itself was closing its eyes. The way the East End breathed differently than the West Side, its rhythm slower, heavier, the weight of poverty pressing down on every block like a physical force. He learned the people. The night shift workers waiting for buses that were always late, clutching coffee and exhaustion in equal measure. The homeless population, invisible by design, mapped into doorways and underpasses and steam vents with the territorial precision of nations. The working girls on the East End's lower streets, who clocked him the second night and called him Little Ghost because of the way he appeared and disappeared in flashes of golden light. He learned the criminals, not the rogues, not the jokers and riddlers and scarecrows that made the news. The real criminals, the everyday machinery of Gotham's underworld, the drug runners who used the old subway service tunnels Harry had once called home, the protection rackets that squeezed every small business in the Narrows like a slow-motion fist, the car theft rings and the fencing operations and the quiet, efficient violence that kept the whole machine running. Batman taught him to see it as a system. "Crime in Gotham isn't random," Bruce said on the 4th night, crouched on a rooftop above the Bowery while Harry floated beside him, legs crossed, sitting on nothing. "It's an ecosystem. Every piece connects to every other piece. The dealer on the corner connects to the distributor, who connects to the supplier, who connects to the money launderer, who connects to the legitimate business that washes the cash. You can arrest the dealer every night for a year and nothing changes because the system replaces him in 24 hours. So what's the point?" Harry asked. "The point is to understand the system well enough to break it, not at the bottom where it regenerates, at the joints, the connections between pieces. You disrupt those, the whole structure weakens." Harry absorbed this the way he absorbed everything, quickly, hungrily, filing it away in a mind that was becoming frighteningly organized under Bruce's tutelage. And he fought. Every night he fought. The first real engagement had been night 1, right off the bridge. A carjacking in progress on the Sprang Bridge's off-ramp, 2 guys with masks and a crowbar, a terrified family in a minivan. Batman had taken the one on the driver's side with a single fluid motion, batarang to crowbar to wristlock in 2 seconds. Harry had handled the other one by lifting him 10 feet off the ground and holding him there, pinned in a cocoon of telekinetic force, while the family drove away. "Too much force," Batman had said afterward, zip-tying the floating man's wrists before Harry set him down. "You could have pinned his feet. You didn't need to levitate him. It worked. Efficiency isn't about what works. It's about what works with the minimum necessary force. Save the big displays for when you need them." Harry had taken the note. The next time he'd pinned a purse snatcher's shoes to the pavement with a targeted burst of telekinetic adhesion, stuck him in place like he'd stepped in supernatural glue. Minimum force, maximum embarrassment. By the end of the first week, they'd developed a rhythm. Batman worked the rooftops and the shadows, surveillance, infiltration, the precision strikes that were his signature. Harry worked the streets in the air, visible, fast, a deterrent as much as a response. When they converged on a target, it was devastating. Batman from above or behind, silent and surgical. Harry from the front, blazing with light and power, drawing every eye and every weapon toward himself while Batman dismantled the operation from the inside. "You're the Hammer," Dick told him during a training session, watching footage of their latest takedown, a drug processing lab in the East End, 14 armed men, neutralized in 90 seconds. "Bruce is the Scalpel. Together, you're terrifying. I thought Bruce wanted me to be a Scalpel too. Bruce wants everyone to be a Scalpel, it's his thing, but sometimes you need a hammer, and Harry, you're a really, really good hammer." Harry threw a cushion at him. It missed because Dick was Dick, but the telekinetic follow-up caught him in the back of the head. The city noticed, not immediately. Not the way the bat signal had announced Batman's arrival decades ago. This was quieter, grassroots, spreading through the neighborhoods Harry patrolled most frequently. The Narrows talked first, street-level whispers about a kid, a glowing kid, who showed up when things went bad and made them better. The East End followed, then the Bowery, then Crime Alley. The Gotham Gazette picked it up in week 2. A photograph, blurry, taken on a phone, showing a figure wreathed in golden light hovering above an intersection where a 5-car pileup had trapped 3 people in burning wreckage. Harry had ripped the doors off the cars with telekinesis and shielded the victims from the flames while the fire department arrived. The photo caught him midair, arms extended, light streaming from his palms, face hidden by the hood. The headline read, "Gotham's Golden Ghost, who is the Narrows' new protector." "Golden Ghost," Harry said, reading the paper at the kitchen table the next morning. "That's terrible. I thought it was rather evocative," Alfred offered, pouring tea. "It sounds like a breakfast cereal." "The media will name you whether you like it or not," Bruce said, not looking up from his own reading. "The question is whether you choose a name first." Harry thought about this for 3 days. Then he stopped thinking about it because Gotham gave him something else to think about. Jonathan Crane had been out of Arkham for 6 weeks and nobody had noticed. That wasn't unusual. Arkham's revolving door was Gotham's most reliable institution. Villains went in, villains came out, the paperwork was filed, the cycle repeated. But Crane was different from the brawlers and the maniacs. Crane was quiet, Crane was patient. Crane didn't announce his returns with explosions or hostage situations or theatrical displays. Crane went underground and he worked, and by the time you knew he was active, it was already too late. Bruce caught the first thread on a Tuesday. A cluster of emergency room admissions in the East End, 9 people in 3 days, all presenting with identical symptoms. Extreme panic responses, elevated cortisol, tachycardia, visual and auditory hallucinations consistent with acute terror. The hospital had logged it as a potential contaminated drug bat. Bruce had cross-referenced the symptom profile with his database and felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Fear toxin," he told Harry in the cave, pulling up the chemical analysis from blood samples he'd obtained through channels that were technically legal and practically invisible. "Modified, the base compound is Crane's signature, a synthetic psychoactive that targets the amygdala and floods the brain with fear responses. But this version is different. The molecular structure has been altered. It's more potent, longer-acting, and," he highlighted a section of the analysis, "aerosolizable. The previous versions required direct injection or close-range spray delivery. This can be dispersed in open air." Harry studied the molecular diagram. He'd been devouring chemistry texts from the Manor's library for the past week, not because Bruce had assigned them, but because understanding the physical world helped him understand his magic. Energy was energy, whether it was chemical, kinetic, or whatever it was that burned inside him. "How much area could this cover?" Harry asked. "Depends on concentration and delivery method. In a closed space, a building, a subway car, a small canister could affect dozens of people. In open air with wind dispersal." Bruce's jaw tightened. "Blocks, multiple blocks. And the people at the hospital, test subject. Crane's testing his formula, refining it. He's not ready for deployment yet, but he's close." Harry looked at the map of the East End that Bruce had overlaid with the hospital admission data. 9 dots clustered in a 6-block radius. "We find him before he's ready," Harry said. "That's the plan." They spent 3 nights hunting. Batman worked his network, informants, surveillance systems, the intricate web of human intelligence he'd built over 15 years of operating in Gotham's underworld. Harry worked the streets, moving through the East End at ground level, talking to the people who lived there, not as a vigilante, as a kid. A kid in a hoodie and jeans who asked questions in the way that only someone who lived rough could ask them, with the credibility of shared experience. The homeless community talked to him. They didn't talk to Batman. The Bat was too big, too dark, too other. But Harry was one of them. He'd slept in their doorways, eaten from their dumpsters, hidden in their tunnels. They recognized him even without the suit, the way animals recognize their own. "Something bad in the air," a woman named Marguerite told him. She lived under the Vincefinkel Bridge with a shopping cart and 3 cats. Last Thursday, Eddie and Sue Jin, they were sleeping by the vent on 14th and they started screaming. Both of them, same time, screaming about spiders and fire and things that weren't there. Took hours to calm down. Eddie still won't come out from under his blanket. We're exactly on 14th, east side, near the old textile warehouse, the one that's supposed to be closed. Harry relayed this to Bruce. 2 hours later, Batman had surveilled the warehouse and confirmed it. Jonathan Crane was operating a laboratory in the basement. Not a large operation, a half-dozen hired men providing security and logistical support, Crane himself working with the focused intensity of a scientist on the verge of a breakthrough. The warehouse's ventilation system had been modified to serve as a dispersal mechanism for testing. Crane had been releasing small quantities of the toxin through the building's vents, letting it drift into the surrounding streets to observe the effects on an unsuspecting population. "He's using the neighborhood as a petri dish," Harry said, and his voice was very quiet in the way it got when he was angry. Not loud, not hot, cold. The air around him dropped 3 degrees. "He always has," Bruce said. "Crane doesn't see people, he sees data points, subjects. His obsession with fear is genuine. He's not a sadist. He doesn't enjoy the suffering. He's fascinated by it the way a biologist is fascinated by a virus. That makes him more dangerous, not less. A sadist gets bored, a scientist never does. When do we go in? Not yet. The lab is the current operation, but it's not the endgame. Crane didn't build an aerosolizable fear toxin to test it on a dozen homeless people. He has a larger target. I need to know what it is before we shut him down, or we only stop the experiment, not the plan." Harry didn't like waiting. Bruce knew this, could see it in the tension of the boy's shoulders, the faint shimmer of heat around his clenched fists. Harry had a deep, visceral reaction to predators who targeted the vulnerable. It was personal. It would always be personal. 2 days, Bruce said. "Give me 2 days to trace his supply chain and identify the target, then we go in. 2 days, people are being poisoned. And if we move too early, the larger attack happens somewhere else, somewhere we don't know about, and hundreds of people get poisoned instead of dozens. Strategy, Harry. The hard part of this job isn't fighting, it's waiting." Harry's fists unclenched. The heat dissipated. He nodded, tight and unhappy, but understanding. 2 days, Bruce traced the supply chain in 36 hours. Components for Crane's modified toxin were exotic, 3 separate precursor chemicals that weren't available through any legitimate channel and were difficult to source even on the black market. Bruce tracked them backward from the warehouse through a series of shell companies, dead drops, and intermediaries. Each layer peeled back, revealing another, until he reached the point of origin. A single large order. Enough precursor material to produce approximately 200 liters of weaponized fear toxin. The delivery address was a cold storage facility in the East End's industrial district, a facility that sat directly above one of Gotham's main water treatment intake points. Not the water supply, the ventilation system. Gotham's East End was served by a district heating network, steam pipes that ran beneath the streets, feeding radiators in thousands of buildings. The network's central plant was adjacent to the cold storage facility. If Crane introduced his aerosolized toxin into the steam system, it would be carried through the pipes and released into every building connected to the network. 14,000 apartments, 40,000 people. All hit simultaneously with weaponized terror. "He's not testing anymore," Bruce said, showing Harry the schematic in the cave. "He's ready." The warehouse lab was proof of concept. The cold storage facility is the delivery mechanism. Based on the quantity of precursor material, he's planning a single massive deployment. When the district heating system runs at peak output between 8 and 11 p.m., that's when the most apartments are drawing steam for evening heating. If Crane wants maximum dispersal, he'll introduce the toxin during that window. Based on his supply timeline, he has enough material to be ready within 24 hours. Harry stared at the schematic. 40,000 people. 40,000 people screaming, hallucinating, tearing at their own skin and each other's, trapped in their homes with their worst nightmares made real. "Tonight," Harry said, "tonight, I'll take the cold storage facility and the heating plant. Your job is the warehouse lab. Crane may still be there and the remaining toxin stockpile needs to be neutralized." "You want me to take the lab alone?" Bruce looked at him, steady, appraising the way he looked at everything, but underneath it, something warmer, something that might have been trust. "You're ready. The security is 6 men, lightly armed, not expecting a direct assault. Crane may or may not be present. If he is, be careful. His fear toxin is delivered by multiple methods: gas canisters, dart guns, direct spray. Your barriers should protect you from airborne exposure. Don't let him get close enough for direct contact. And if I run into trouble, call me. I'll be 4 blocks away. And if you run into trouble," the corner of Bruce's mouth twitched, almost a smile, Then you'll come pull me out. That's how teams work. They went at sundown. Batman took the Batmobile to the industrial district. Harry properly flew, banking between buildings, cutting through the East End's jagged skyline with a confidence that would have been unthinkable a month ago. The suit's comm was live in his ear, and Bruce's voice was a steady presence, calm and precise. I'm approaching the heating plant, 2 guards on the perimeter, moving to neutralize. Copy. I'm over the warehouse now. Harry hung in the air above the old textile building. From up here it looked dead, dark windows, no movement, no lights, but he could feel something. A faint wrongness in the air, a chemical sharpness that prickled at the edge of his senses. His magic was sensitive to threats in ways he was still learning to interpret. It responded to danger before his conscious mind registered it, a low hum of warning that vibrated in his chest. He descended. Landed on the roof without a sound, a trick Dick had taught him, using a tiny burst of telekinetic cushioning to absorb the impact of his feet touching the surface. The roof was flat, industrial, studded with ventilation units and old antenna mounts. One of the ventilation shafts had been recently modified, new ductwork shiny against the rust, connected to a system that hadn't been there when the building was a textile warehouse. Harry dropped through a skylight. The warehouse's upper floor was empty, a vast open space full of abandoned machinery and dust. He moved through it in silence, following the modified ductwork with his eyes, tracing the new pipes downward through the floor to the basement level. Crane's lab was below. He found the stairs, descended. The chemical smell intensified, sharp and acrid, coating the inside of his nose. His magic stirred in response, a reflexive defensive reaction, the power surging toward his skin as if preparing to form a barrier. He let it. A faint golden shimmer settled over him like a second suit, sealing the air around his face. The basement opened up into a space that had been transformed. Lab equipment, real equipment, expensive, precise, covered every surface. Workbenches, centrifuges, distillation apparatus, chemical hoods. Racks of canisters lined one wall, each one labeled with a date and concentration value. This was a professional operation, funded and supplied by someone with deep pockets and a long timeline. 6 guards. Harry counted them as Bruce had taught him, scan the space, identify all threats before engaging. 4 were positioned around the lab's perimeter, armed with automatic weapons. 2 more flanked a central workstation where a tall, thin figure in a lab coat worked with the focused intensity of a man who had forgotten the rest of the world existed. Jonathan Crane, Scarecrow. Harry had studied the file. Crane was mid-40s, gaunt, with sharp features and eyes that held the particular emptiness of a man who had systematically disconnected himself from human empathy in pursuit of understanding. He'd been a psychologist once, a professor, brilliant by all accounts. His descent into villainy hadn't been a fall so much as a migration. He'd simply followed his obsession past the point where ethics could keep up. Crane looked up. He didn't see Harry, not yet. He looked up because something had changed in the air, some instinct, some predator's awareness that the environment had shifted. His eyes swept the basement, narrowed, and returned to his work. Harry moved. He came off the stairs fast, faster than the guards expected, faster than they could track. The first one saw a blur of dark and gold, and then Harry's telekinesis hit him like a truck, slamming him sideways into the wall. The second guard brought his weapon up, and Harry was already inside his reach, one hand catching the rifle barrel and pushing it aside with physical strength, while the other hand projected a pulse of concussive force that launched the man across the lab and into a rack of empty canisters. The third and fourth guards opened fire. Bullets cracked the air, loud, sharp, the sound hitting Harry's eardrums like hammers. His barrier was already up. The rounds hit the golden shield and stopped, flattened, hung in the air for a fraction of a second like insects in amber, and then dropped to the floor. Harry didn't flinch, didn't slow down. He raised both hands, and the guards' weapons ripped free, torn from their grips by invisible force, and flew across the lab to embed themselves in the far wall. The guards stared at their empty hands. Harry hit them both with a wave of force that knocked them flat and pinned them to the floor, pressure distributed evenly across their bodies, enough to immobilize, not enough to injure. He was getting better at calibration. The last 2 guards flanking Crane reached for their weapons. Harry didn't give them the chance. 2 sharp gestures, fast, precise, the movements becoming instinctual now, and both men were yanked off their feet, pulled sideways by invisible hands, and slammed together in the middle of the lab before being deposited on the floor in a groaning heap. 6 guards, 9 seconds. Harry hadn't taken a step since the gunfire started. Crane stood behind his workstation, very still. He'd watched the entire engagement with the clinical detachment of a man observing an experiment. His hands were at his sides, and Harry could feel that the right hand held something, A small device, cylindrical, with a trigger mechanism. Fascinating, Crane said. Voice was calm, academic, utterly unafraid. You're the one they're talking about, the Golden Spectre, the child vigilante. Step away from the workstation, Harry said. Hands up. The energy projection alone is remarkable. Telekinesis, force barriers, thermal manipulation, and all without apparent technological augmentation. You're not a metahuman, are you? The energy signature is wrong for the metagene, something else, something I haven't encountered. Hands up. Crane tilted his head. Studying Harry the way Harry might study a new book, with curiosity, with hunger, with the particular intensity of someone who had found something unexpected and wanted to take it apart. I've spent my career studying fear, Crane said. The neurochemistry of it, the psychology, the way it shapes behavior, defines identity, controls populations. Fear is the most powerful force in human civilization, more powerful than love, than greed, than faith. Everything humans build, they build because they're afraid, and everything they destroy for the same reason. I don't care about your thesis, step away from the bench, but you should care. Crane's voice shifted, still calm, but with an edge now, a blade wrapped in velvet. Because you're afraid right now, aren't you? I can see it. The elevated respiration, the dilated pupils, the micro tremors in your hands. You're controlling it beautifully, far better than most adults, but it's there. Fear whispering in your ear. What if you're not strong enough? What if you fail? What if the monster in the dark is bigger than the light you carry? Harry's jaw tightened. His hands were steady, they were steady. Crane was wrong about the tremors, but the words landed somewhere deep, somewhere the defenses didn't fully reach. Last chance, Harry said. Step away. Crane smiled. It was the emptiest expression Harry had ever seen on a human face. A smile with nothing behind it, no warmth, no cruelty, no emotion at all, just the clinical satisfaction of a hypothesis confirmed. Let's find out what you're really afraid of, Crane said and pressed the trigger. The device in his hand wasn't a weapon, it was a release valve. Every canister on the wall, every single one, dozens of them representing weeks of production, vented simultaneously. The lab filled with gas in 2 seconds, a dense greenish-yellow cloud that erupted from the canisters like a living thing, expanding, filling the basement, engulfing everything. Harry's barrier held. The gas swirled around the golden shield, unable to penetrate. But the concentration was massive. The entire lab was a cloud of pure, undiluted fear toxin at a concentration dozens of times higher than any street-level exposure. The guards on the floor were already screaming, convulsing, their nervous systems overwhelmed in an instant. Crane had pulled a gas mask from under the workstation and slipped it on with practiced ease. He watched Harry through the yellow fog, eyes bright above the mask's filters. Impressive barrier, Crane observed. How long can you maintain it? Harry's comm crackled. Harry status, Batman's voice clipped. Crane released his full stock. The lab is saturated. I'm shielded, but the guards are exposed. 6 men down, severe toxin exposure. Can you neutralize? Harry looked at the cloud. Thought about it the way Zatanna had taught him, not what he wanted to do, but what the magic could do, what the energy could become. The toxin was chemical. Chemicals had structure. Structure could be disrupted. He reached out with his magic, not his hands, his mind, and felt the toxin. Felt its molecular structure, the bonds that held it together, the places where it was fragile. It was intricate, sophisticated, a marvel of hostile chemistry. But chemistry was just atoms in arrangements, and arrangements could be rearranged. Harry closed his eyes, pulled. The golden energy expanded from his body in a sphere, not a barrier now, but a field, a wave of power that washed through the basement like a tide. Wherever it touched the toxin, the gas shimmered, destabilized, broke apart. Molecular bonds snapped, complex compounds decomposed into their constituent elements, harmless nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen. The yellow cloud dissolved from the inside out, eaten by golden light until the air was clear. Harry opened his eyes. The lab was clean. The guards were still convulsing. The toxin already in their bloodstreams couldn't be neutralized so easily, but the airborne threat was gone. Crane stared. Behind the gas mask, his eyes were wide. Not with fear, with wonder, with the naked, terrible fascination of a man who has just seen something that rewrites everything he knows. Remarkable, Crane whispered. You didn't just block it, you decomposed it. At the molecular level, that's not telekinesis. That's transmutation, Harry hit him with a pulse of force that knocked him backward into the workstation. Crane staggered, caught himself, pulled the mask off. His thin face was flushed with excitement, not pain. You're scared of yourself, Crane said. That's it, isn't it? I can see it now. You're not afraid of me or the toxin or the dark. You're afraid of what you are, what you can do. The power inside you, it terrifies you, doesn't it? Because you don't fully control it, and you know that if it ever truly gets away from you, shut up. People will die. People have died, haven't they? Or you think they have. The guilt is all over your face. Something happened, something you did, something you couldn't control, and people got hurt. And now every time you use your power, you feel it, that cold little whisper. What if this time I can't stop? Harry's vision blurred. Not from gas, not from tears. From something deeper, a tremor in the foundations, the cupboard door rattling, the dark spaces where the worst things lived stirring in response to Crane's words because the man was right. He was right about all of it, the tunnel, the men under the rocks, the sound they'd made. Harry, Bruce's voice in his ear, firm and anchor. He's manipulating you, that's what he does. He finds the crack and he puts his fingers in it. Harry breathed, in, out, the way Bruce had taught him, the way Zatanna had taught him. Not pushing the fear down, not fighting it, acknowledging it, cataloging it, and setting it aside. You're right, Harry told Crane. I am scared, not of you, of me, of what I can do. And you know what that makes me? Crane waited, eyes glittering. Careful, Harry said, it makes me careful. He raised his hand and Crane flew backward, not gently, not carefully, hard, fast, into the wall behind the workstation. He hit with a thud and slid to the floor, dazed. Harry was on him in 2 steps, reaching down, pulling zip ties from his belt the way Bruce had shown him, binding Crane's wrists behind his back with quick, efficient motions. Your toxin is destroyed, Harry told him, pulling the restraints tight. Every canister, every batch, I broke it apart at the molecular level. You'll have to start from scratch, and you'll be doing it from Arkham. Crane laughed. A quiet, breathy sound. You think this was the plan, this lab, this stockpile? He shook his head, eyes bright with a private amusement that made something cold move through Harry's chest. I already sent the final batch to the heating plant 6 hours ago. This lab was the backup. The main event is already in position. Harry went still. Batman, he said into the comm. Crane says he already sent the toxin to the heating plant. It's already there. Silence for 3 seconds. Then Batman's voice, stripped of everything but information. I'm inside the plant now. I see the delivery system. He's rigged it into the main steam line. Harry, the timer, it's active. 7 minutes. You disarm it. It's not a bomb. It's a pressurized injection system. The toxin is in a sealed vessel connected to the steam main. When the timer hits 0, the vessel opens and the steam carries the toxin into the distribution network. I can't disconnect it without triggering the release. What do you need? I need someone who can transmute the toxin inside the vessel without opening it. Harry looked at Crane. The man was watching him with the expression of someone enjoying a private show. Go, Crane said. Run. Try to save them. I want to see if you can. Harry turned away from him and ran for the stairs. Behind him he heard Crane call out almost gently. Remember, you're afraid of yourself, and fear is a terrible thing to bring to a crisis. Harry burst through the warehouse's upper floor at a sprint, hit the skylight at speed, and launched himself into the Gotham sky. 4 blocks between the warehouse and the heating plant. Harry covered the distance in seconds, tearing through the night air fast enough to rattle windows, golden light blazing behind him. He spotted the heating plant below, a squat industrial complex, steam rising from cooling towers, Batman's signal pulsing on his HUD. He dropped through the plant's ventilation shaft like a missile. The shaft crumpled around him. He wasn't being careful, wasn't being precise, was moving on adrenaline and urgency, and he burst through the ceiling of the main processing room in a shower of metal and concrete dust. Batman was at the center of the room, crouched beside a mass of pipes and machinery. The heating plant's main steam line was a massive conduit, 4 feet in diameter, running through the floor and into the distribution network that served 40,000 apartments. Connected to the conduit was Crane's delivery system, a pressurized vessel about the size of a large fire extinguisher, sealed and bolted to the pipe with an electromagnetic coupling. A digital timer on the side showed 4 minutes and 18 seconds. There, Batman pointed. The toxin is inside the vessel, approximately 3 liters of concentrated aerosolized compound. When the timer reaches 0, the coupling opens and the steam pressure draws the toxin into the main line. Harry landed beside him, knelt, placed his hands on either side of the vessel without touching it. He could feel the toxin inside, a dense, hostile presence, chemically complex, pulsing with the same molecular signature he'd dismantled in the lab. Same compound as the lab, Harry asked. Same base, higher concentration. This is the refined product. Harry closed his eyes. He reached into the vessel with his magic, not his hands, his awareness, the part of him that could feel the shape of things at a level below sight and touch. The toxin was a cloud of molecules, billions of them, each one a precise arrangement of atoms linked by chemical bonds. In the lab, he'd had room to work, open air, dispersed gas, relatively low concentration. This was different. The toxin was compressed, pressurized, dense. Breaking the molecular bonds would release energy, chemical energy, thermal energy. in an enclosed vessel connected to a pressurized steam system. If I break the compound down inside the vessel, the energy release could rupture it, Harry said. And if the vessel ruptures while it's connected to the steam line, the toxin disperses anyway, partially but enough. Can we disconnect the vessel from the line? The coupling is wired to a tamper sensor. Disconnect it manually and the vessel vents immediately. 3 minutes 12 seconds, Harry thought, not panicking, thinking. The way Bruce had taught him, the way the training had drilled into him. Problem, constraints, options. What do you have? What do you know? What can you do that nobody else can? I can contain the energy, Harry said. If I decompose the toxin and simultaneously maintain a barrier inside the vessel, a barrier that absorbs the energy release, the vessel won't rupture. Can you do that? Transmutation and containment simultaneously inside an object you can't see into. Harry met Batman's eyes through the white lenses of the cowl. 2 minutes 41 seconds. Zatanna's been training me to split focus. 3 tasks at once, she said. This is 2. At a level of precision you haven't attempted. Then it's a good time to learn. Batman looked at him for 1 second, then he stepped back. Do it. Harry placed his palms flat against the vessel, cold metal, vibrating faintly with the pressure inside. He closed his eyes and dove inward, not into the vessel, into himself. Into the place where the magic lived, the core of heat and light and power that burned in his chest like a star. He split his focus. One stream of awareness reached into the vessel, feeling the toxin, mapping its molecular structure. The other stream formed a barrier, not outside the vessel, but inside it, a shell of golden energy that pressed against the interior walls, ready to absorb whatever energy the decomposition released. The 2 tasks existed simultaneously in his mind, like holding 2 conversations at once. The strain was immediate, a pressure behind his eyes, a buzzing in his teeth. Zatanna's voice in his memory, the limit isn't power, it's attention. Harry's attention held. He began breaking bonds. Carefully, methodically, not the explosive dissolution he'd used in the lab, but a controlled dismantling, picking apart the molecular structure 1 bond at a time, letting each small energy release be absorbed by the interior barrier. The toxin broke down into its component elements: nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, simple, harmless, inert. The process was slow. Agonizingly slow. Each molecule took focus, precision, effort, and there were billions of them. 1 minute 50 seconds. Harry pushed harder, not more power, more attention. He widened the scope of his transmutation, breaking hundreds of molecules simultaneously instead of dozens. The interior barrier strained as the energy absorption increased. His hands were glowing, visible through his closed eyelids, gold light pouring through his skin, the vessel warming under his palms. 1 minute, half the toxin was gone. The other half was fighting him, not literally, not consciously, but the molecular structure was resilient, designed to resist exactly this kind of environmental degradation. Crane was a good chemist. The bonds were strong. Harry hit them harder. The strain was enormous now. His head was pounding, his nose was bleeding, he could taste copper on his lips. The magic surged, responding to his need, and for a terrifying moment it tried to go all at once, tried to release everything in a single cataclysmic burst. Control, Bruce said right beside him, calm, steady, a voice Harry trusted in the dark. You have this, don't rush, control. Harry pulled back from the edge, reined the magic in, maintained the split focus, kept going. 30 seconds, 3/4 done. The toxin was thinning, the molecular density dropping, the energy releases getting smaller as there was less and less to break down. 15 seconds. Harry's vision was graying at the edges, not from toxin, from exertion. His body was running on reserves that were already depleted, magic drawing on physical energy to supplement its own, and there wasn't much left to draw on. 10 seconds. He could feel the coupling mechanism preparing to open, electromagnetic locks disengaging in sequence. The vessel was about to vent into the steam line. 5 seconds. The last molecules broke. Harry felt them come apart, felt the final bonds snap, felt the interior of the vessel become nothing but harmless gas and golden light. The coupling opened. Steam pressure surged through the connection, pulling the vessel's contents into the main line. Nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nothing else. 40,000 apartments received steam, just steam. Harry fell backward, would have hit the concrete floor if Batman hadn't caught him, one arm under his shoulders, supporting his weight, easing him down. Harry's nose was bleeding freely, his eyes unfocused, his body shaking with the deep tremors of total magical exhaustion. Did it work? He mumbled. It worked. The people, safe, all of them. You did it, Harry. Harry tried to say something else, something about Crane, about the guards in the lab, about whether someone should check on the homeless people under the Vincefinkel Bridge, but the words wouldn't come. The world was dimming, and the last thing he felt before consciousness left was Bruce's arm around his shoulders, steady as stone, holding him up even as he fell. He woke in the cave, medical bay. The lights were dimmed. An IV was in his arm, saline, he guessed, for the dehydration. His body felt like it had been used as a punching bag and then put through a washing machine. Every muscle ached. His head throbbed. His magic was there. He could feel it, deep in his chest, not gone but depleted, a banked fire instead of a blaze. Alfred was in the chair beside the bed. Of course he was. "Welcome back," Alfred said. "You've been unconscious for approximately 9 hours. It is now 7 in the morning. The weather is overcast with a chance of rain, and I have prepared French toast." Crane, in Arkham, Batman delivered him personally, along with a comprehensive evidence package that should ensure his stay is somewhat more prolonged than usual, though in Gotham, prolonged is a relative term. The guards in the lab, hospitalized, severe fear toxin exposure, but all expected to recover. The GCPD's hazmat team cleaned the warehouse site. There is no remaining toxin in circulation. Harry sank back into the pillow. The relief was physical, a loosening of tension he hadn't known he was carrying. "Harry," Alfred said, and his voice had shifted, softer. The Alfred who sat with him during nightmares, not the Alfred who reported status updates. "What you did last night was extraordinary. I want you to know that." Bruce said. "It worked. It worked spectacularly. You neutralized a biological weapon inside a sealed container while maintaining a simultaneous energy barrier under a countdown, after having already single-handedly dismantled a laboratory and engaged 6 armed men. Master Bruce has been doing this for 15 years, and I believe he would tell you, if he were emotionally capable of saying it directly, that what you accomplished last night was one of the most remarkable things he has ever witnessed." Harry looked at Alfred. The old man's eyes were bright, not with tears. Alfred didn't do tears, at least not where anyone could see, but with something warm and fierce and proud. "He won't say that, will he?" Harry said. "Not in those words. He will, however, increase the intensity of your training, which in Bruce's emotional vocabulary is the equivalent of a standing ovation." Harry laughed. It hurt, his ribs were sore, his lungs ached, but it was a real laugh. "There is one additional matter," Alfred said. "While you were unconscious, the morning news cycle began." He picked up a tablet from the side table and handed it to Harry. The Gotham Gazette's front page. A photograph better quality than the last one, taken by someone with a real camera. Harry in the suit, hovering above the heating plant, golden light blazing from his hands, the hood throwing his face into shadow. The image was striking, a small figure wreathed in power, haloed against the night sky. The headline read, "Mystery Hero SAVES East End 40, spared from Scarecrow's terror plot." Below the headline, a subheading, "Gotham's newest vigilante, already being called the Spectre of the Narrows, neutralized Scarecrow's fear toxin before it could reach the district heating network in what experts are calling one of the most significant solo interventions in the city's history." The Spectre of the Narrows, Harry read. The Gotham media do enjoy their dramatic monikers. Harry looked at the photo, at the figure in it, small, bright, fierce, a boy in a suit that Alfred had made with power that nobody had given him, doing something that mattered. "It's not right," he said. "The article, I found it reasonably accurate, though they did overstate the name, specter, ghost. Those are dead things. I'm not dead. I'm not hiding." He set the tablet down. "I want a real name. Something that means something. Did you have something in mind?" Harry was quiet for a moment. He thought about the bridge and the fall, and the moment he'd pulled and the magic had answered and Gotham had spread beneath him like a promise. He thought about the heating plant and the timer and Bruce's voice saying, "You have this." He thought about the people in 40,000 apartments who had gone to sleep last night safe and warm because he had been there. "Sentinel," he said. "Someone who stands watch, someone who keeps guard." Alfred considered this. Nodded once with the quiet approval of a man who recognized a right choice when he saw one. "Sentinel," he repeated. "Yes, I think that suits you very well." Bruce came up from the cave an hour later. He looked like he hadn't slept because he hadn't, but there was a settled quality to his expression, the look of a man who had processed a great deal of information and reached conclusions he was at peace with. He sat on the edge of Harry's bed, didn't speak for a moment. "Then you could have died last night, but I didn't. The molecular transmutation inside the vessel, the energy requirements alone should have put you into cardiac arrest. Your body temperature dropped to 91 degrees. Your heart rate was 32 beats per minute when I brought you in, but I'm fine now. You're fine now because you're young and your magic appears to have a regenerative component that I don't fully understand. If you were older, less resilient, less whatever it is that makes you, you would have died on that floor." Harry looked at him. Are you telling me not to do it again? Number, Bruce's voice was rough. I'm telling you that what you did was the bravest thing I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of brave things. Harry blinked. The words hit him in a place he didn't have defenses for, a place below the walls and the calculation and the survival instincts. The place where a boy in a cupboard had spent 10 years believing he was worthless. I'm also telling you, Bruce continued, that I need you alive, not as an asset, not as a weapon. As he stopped the emotional vocabulary that Alfred joked about failing him in real time. You matter to me, Harry, not because of what you can do, because of who you are, so when I say be careful, I'm not giving a tactical instruction. I'm asking you to take care of someone I care about. The room was very quiet. Harry's eyes were bright. His throat worked. He nodded once fast and looked away. Okay, he said, fourth time, heaviest yet. Bruce stood, cleared his throat, became Bruce Wayne again, controlled, composed, already moving on to the next task. Zatanna called. She saw the news. She wants to discuss the molecular transmutation with you. She says it shouldn't be possible and she has questions. Of course she does. Dick also called. He says, and I quote, tell the wizard I'm proud of him and also he's an idiot and also I'm buying him a pizza. Harry smiled, small, real, slightly wobbly. And Alfred tells me you've chosen a name, Bruce said from the doorway. Sentinel. Bruce considered it, nodded. Good name. He left. Harry lay back on the medical bed and stared at the cave's ceiling, vast, dark, full of bats and shadows and the quiet hum of the world's most advanced computer system. Sentinel. He was Sentinel. And somewhere in the dark spaces of the world, in places Harry didn't yet know about, someone else had seen the news from Gotham. Someone old and patient and very, very interested. In a room that existed outside of conventional geography, a man who had lived for centuries set down a cup of tea and studied a photograph on a screen. A boy, wreathed in golden light, hovering above an industrial complex. The man's face was lined with age, but his eyes were young, bright, sharp, alive with an intelligence that had been honed over lifetimes. Ra's al Ghul touched the screen with one long finger. There you are, he murmured. I wondered when you'd show yourself. He picked up his tea, sipped. Set it down, find out everything, he said to the shadow behind him. The boy's name, his origin, his capabilities, his connections, everything. The shadow bowed and vanished. Ra's al Ghul looked at the photograph for a long time, the boy in the golden light, the last sign of a line he had been watching for decades, a bloodline that carried something older and more dangerous than any weapon in his considerable arsenal. You have no idea what you are, Ra's said softly to the photograph, to the boy, to the future that was taking shape in his ancient, patient mind. But you will, he smiled. It was a warm smile, almost paternal. That made it worse. Chapter 4, The Court and the Crown. The owl came on a Wednesday, not a real owl. A ceramic one, white, about 6 inches tall, left on the doorstep of Wayne Manor sometime between 3 and 5 in the morning, the precise window when the Manor's exterior cameras cycled through a maintenance refresh that Bruce had never considered a vulnerability because the window was 11 seconds long and the grounds were walled, gated, and monitored by motion sensors that should have detected a field mouse at 200 yards. Nothing tripped. No alarms, no sensors, no alert. Someone had walked onto the grounds of one of the most secured private residences on the eastern seaboard, placed a ceramic owl on the front step, and vanished like smoke. Alfred found it when he opened the door at 6 a.m. to retrieve the morning papers. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands, and brought it directly to Bruce. I assume this is not a gift from an admirer, Alfred said, setting the owl on Bruce's desk in the study. Bruce looked at it. His face didn't change, but something behind it went very cold and very still. No, he said, it's not. Harry walked into the study 10 minutes later, fresh from his morning run. He was doing 5 miles now, had been for a week, and his body was transforming under the combined pressure of training, nutrition, and a magical metabolism that burned calories like a furnace. He was still lean, still sharp-boned, but the skeletal fragility of the sewer was gone, replaced by a wiry, coiled strength that was beginning to show in the way he moved. Less hunted, more hunter. He saw the owl on the desk and stopped. What's that? Bruce was at the back computer terminal he kept in the study, a secondary access point, less powerful than the cave's main array but sufficient for research. He was scrolling through files that Harry hadn't seen before, dense with text and images and architectural schematics. A message, Bruce said, from the Court of Owls. Harry came closer, looked at the ceramic figure. It was finely made, delicate, detailed, with eyes that were tiny amber stones, beautiful in a cold way like a knife. You've mentioned them, Harry said, the secret society, the ones who run Gotham from the shadows. I've done more than mention them. Sit down. Harry sat. Bruce turned from the terminal and gave him the version he'd been holding back, the full version, not the summary. The Court of Owls was old, not decades old, centuries old. They predated Gotham itself, their roots reaching back to the colonial era when the city was a collection of settlements along the river. They were Gotham's oldest families, the Waynes' peers, their rivals, their shadows. Old money, old power, old ambition, woven into the city's infrastructure so deeply that removing them would be like removing the skeleton from a body. They controlled Gotham through influence, not force. Judges, politicians, police commissioners, real estate developers, media executives, the court placed their people in positions of power and pulled strings so subtle that the puppets rarely knew they were dancing. When influence failed, they had enforcers, the Talons. Assassins, Bruce said, pulling up images on the terminal. Dark figures in armor, faces hidden behind owl-shaped masks, moving through Gotham's history like ghosts. Each one is a fighter selected and trained from childhood, subjected to a chemical and surgical augmentation process that enhances their physical capabilities and, critically, allows them to be revived after death. A Talon can be killed, frozen, stored, and reactivated decades or centuries later. They are, for practical purposes, immortal soldiers. Harry studied the images. His expression was focused, analytical. The detective's mind Bruce had been building engaged and processing. How many? Harry asked. I've confirmed 7 active in the current era, but the court's archives, what little I've been able to access, suggest dozens more in cold storage, potentially going back centuries. And they left this on your doorstep. On our doorstep, yes. Harry looked at the ceramic owl, at its amber eyes. That means they know who you are, Batman. They've known for a long time. The court and the Waynes have a complicated history. My family has been a thorn in their side for generations, too prominent to absorb, too stubborn to control. They've made overtures and threats in the past. This, he gestured at the owl, is neither. This is a declaration. Of what? Bruce turned back to the terminal, pulled up a surveillance photograph, grainy, taken from a distance, showing a gathering of figures in a vaulted underground chamber. They wore white masks shaped like owl faces. I've had monitoring algorithms running on the court's known communication channels since our last encounter 3 years ago. Last night, the algorithms flagged a spike in encrypted traffic across 6 channels simultaneously. That hasn't happened before. Something has changed. Something has them mobilizing. Something like a kid who can shoot fire from his hands showing up on the front page of the Gazette. Bruce looked at him. Yeah, Harry said, that's what I thought. The intelligence confirmed it within 48 hours. Bruce's network, a combination of electronic surveillance, human informants, and the kind of deep cover intelligence work that would have impressed most government agencies, painted a clear picture. The Court of Owls had been observing Harry since the Scarecrow incident. They'd tracked the Gazette's coverage, monitored police reports, analyzed the energy signatures that Harry's magic left behind. They had scientists on retainer who had studied the residual magical energy at the heating plant and produced a report that concluded, in dry academic language, that the entity designated Sentinel represented an unprecedented and uncontrollable variable in Gotham's power structure. Uncontrollable. That was the word that mattered. The Court of Owls existed to control Gotham. Every institution, every power center, every significant player in the city's ecosystem was either theirs or neutralized. Batman had been a thorn because he was skilled, resourced, and incorruptible. But Batman was human and humans had limits, and the court had learned to work around those limits even if they couldn't eliminate them. Sentinel was different. Sentinel was a child with power that their scientists couldn't explain and their talents couldn't match. A wild variable allied with Batman growing stronger every day. The court didn't tolerate wild variables. The owl on the doorstep wasn't a threat, it was a target marker. Bruce shared all of this with Harry, holding nothing back. He'd made that decision early. Harry was not a child to be protected from information. Harry was a partner, young and still learning, but a partner. Hiding threats from him wouldn't keep him safe. It would keep him unprepared. Harry took the briefing the way he took everything, quietly, attentively, with that focused stillness that meant his mind was running at full speed. So they're coming, Harry said when Bruce finished. Yes, when? That I don't know. The court is patient. They plan carefully, move slowly, and strike when they're certain of success. But the ceramic owl is a ritual element. It's how they've announced hostile intent for centuries. It means they've made the decision. Execution is a matter of timing. What do? We prepare, and we don't wait for them to choose the battlefield. Bruce spent the next week converting Wayne Manor into a fortress, not visibly. The manor still looked like the grand, slightly worn estate it had always been, old stone, tall windows, manicured grounds. But beneath the surface, Bruce layered defenses that would have given a military base pause. Motion sensors recalibrated to detect the thermal signature of an approaching Talon, warmer than ambient but cooler than a normal human, a consequence of their augmentation. Reinforced shutters behind every window, deployable in 2 seconds. Electromagnetic locks on every exterior door. Automated defense systems in the grounds, non-lethal, because Bruce's rules held even against immortal assassins, but incapacitating. Harry helped. His magic offered options that technology couldn't match. He walked the manor's perimeter and laid what Zatanna, during a hastily scheduled consultation, called ward lines, streams of magical energy pushed into the ground, invisible, dormant, designed to react to hostile intrusion. Harry couldn't explain the theory behind them. He just knew instinctively that he could mark a boundary and make it mean something. The magic understood territory. It understood protection. "It's like the dry zone in the subway," Harry told Bruce, kneeling on the wet grass at the manor's eastern wall, hands pressed to the earth, golden light seeping into the soil. "When I was living down there, I pushed the water back. I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to be dry, and the magic made a space that was dry. This is the same thing but bigger. I'm telling the ground that this is mine, and anything that comes in wrong will know it. How will it know? It'll feel it, like hitting a wall, not a physical wall, a wall in the air, in the energy. It won't stop a Talon, probably, but it'll slow them down and it'll tell me they're here." Bruce nodded. Every layer helped. Every second of warning could be the difference. Dick came in from Bloodhaven on Saturday. He arrived with a bag of gear and the particular tense energy of someone who'd been told that assassins were coming for his family. "Court of Owls," he said, dumping his bag in the cave. "Again, I thought you dealt with them 3 years ago." "I dealt with their immediate operation 3 years ago. The court itself is hydra-headed, cut off 1 arm and 2 more emerge from the old families. They've rebuilt. They're stronger than they were. And they're targeting Harry specifically. They're targeting the variable." "Harry is the variable." Dick looked across the cave to where Harry was training with Zatanna. She'd come for an emergency session, drilling him on barrier techniques, pushing the limits of how fast he could raise and sustain a shield. Harry's barriers were strong, devastatingly strong, but speed was the concern. A Talon could close 20 feet in under a second. Harry needed to be faster. He's a kid, Bruce. He's a kid who dissolved a bioweapon at the molecular level 3 weeks ago. He can handle this. Handling it and being okay with it are different things. Dick watched Harry for a moment longer. The golden barriers flashed in the cave, up, down, shifting positions, changing shapes. Zatanna was throwing conjured projectiles at him from random angles, and Harry was blocking them, his face tight with concentration. "I'll stay until this is over," Dick said. "I was counting on it." They trained together that afternoon. Not the usual sessions, this was specific, tactical, focused on a single scenario, defending a fixed position against multiple enhanced attackers. Bruce ran the exercises in the cave's simulation room, using holographic projections calibrated to Talon's speed, strength, and fighting patterns based on his previous encounters. The simulations were brutal. Talons were fast, faster than any normal human, faster than most metahumans. They fought with blades, thrown weapons, and a fluid, vicious martial art that had been refined over centuries. They felt no pain, they didn't tire, and they kept coming, even after injuries that would have killed a normal fighter. Harry learned fast. By the 3rd simulation run, he'd developed a combat style that used his barriers and telekinesis in concert, shields that shifted and redirected in real time, blocking strikes while simultaneously pushing back, creating space, controlling the engagement distance. He couldn't match a Talon in hand-to-hand. He didn't need to. His magic operated at range, and range was his advantage. "Don't let them close," Bruce told him after a simulation where a holographic Talon had gotten inside his barrier range and scored a blade strike across his ribs. The hologram couldn't actually cut him, but the sensors in the cave registered the hit. "Your power diminishes at close range because you need reaction time to shape it. Keep distance. Use barriers as walls, not shields. Push them back, don't just block them. And if they get past the barriers, then use what Dick taught you. Move. Don't plant your feet and fight a Talon in melee, you'll lose. Move, create space, reestablish range. And if I can't create space," Bruce held his gaze, "then you hit them with everything you have." Harry nodded, no hesitation. They ran the simulation again and again. By the 8th iteration, Harry was handling 3 simultaneous Talons for over 2 minutes before being overwhelmed. By the 12th, he was handling 4. Bruce watched the 12th run from the observation gallery with Dick beside him. Below Harry was a blur of gold and shadow, barriers flashing, telekinetic pulses driving holographic Talons back, his body weaving through the chaos with the fluid, magic-augmented movement that had become his signature. He wasn't just blocking and pushing anymore. He was fighting, combining physical evasion with magical offense, using his environment, exploiting the gaps between attacks. He's good, Dick said quietly. He's getting there. Bruce, he just handled 4 talons for 3 minutes. That's better than I did 3 years ago, and I had a decade of training. The talons in this simulation are based on historical data. The court has had 3 years to improve their fighters. Assume the real thing will be faster, stronger, and more unpredictable. You're a ray of sunshine, you know that. Below them, Harry took down the last holographic talon with a spinning telekinetic strike that launched it into the cave wall hard enough to shatter the projection. He landed, breathing hard, golden light flickering around his hands. Looked up at the gallery and raised an eyebrow. Again, he called. Again, Bruce said. The attack came on a Tuesday night, 3 in the morning. The witching hour, not because of any supernatural significance, but because it was the time when human alertness was at its lowest, when reaction times were slowest, when sleep was deepest. The Court of Owls knew this. They'd been launching attacks at 3 a.m. for 200 years. Harry felt them first. He was asleep, or had been, until the ward lines screamed. Not literally, the magic didn't make sound, but the sensation was unmistakable. A violent, electric jolt that raced up from the earth through the manor's foundations and into Harry's awareness like a hand grabbing his spine. He was out of bed before his eyes were fully open, the suit's underlayer on. He slept in it now, had been since the owl arrived, his magic surging to full power in the time it took him to cross the room. Bruce, into the comm. They're here, eastern perimeter, multiple contacts. I see them. Bruce was already in the cave. The motion sensors had triggered 3 seconds after Harry's wards, 3 seconds of additional warning that Harry's magic had bought them. 14 contacts. Moving in 2 groups of 7, approaching from the east and north simultaneously. 14, more than double the 7 confirmed active talons. The court had thawed their reserves. Dick, here. Dick's voice was tight, alert, already in his Nightwing suit. I'm at the north stairwell. Where do you want me? North approach. Intercept and delay. Don't engage more than 2 at a time. Harry, east approach. I've got it. Harry, there are 7 of them. I know, I've got it. Harry moved through the manor at speed, magic carrying him, not quite flying, not quite running, but something in between. A gliding, accelerated movement that ate distance. He hit the East Wing's main hallway and felt them through the walls. Cold presences fast, already past the outer grounds and approaching the house itself. His wards hadn't stopped them. He'd known they wouldn't, but the wards had done their job, they'd bought time, and they'd told him exactly where the enemy was. He reached the East Wing's main entrance hall, a grand space, vaulted ceiling, wide staircase, tall windows that looked out over the gardens. The reinforced shutters were deployed, steel barriers covering the glass. For about 3 seconds, Harry considered waiting for them to breach. Then he tore the front doors off their hinges and walked outside. The night was cold. Clear sky half-moon, the manor's exterior lights casting long shadows across the lawn. The ward lines were visible to Harry's magic-attuned sight, faint golden threads in the earth, vibrating, agitated. And beyond them, coming fast across the eastern grounds, 7 figures in dark armor. They moved like nothing Harry had ever seen. Not running, flowing, liquid motion, each step covering ground that should have required 3, their bodies low and angular, blades glinting in the moonlight. Owl masks covered their faces, amber eyes catching the light. Harry planted his feet on the manor's front steps, his hands blazed. Golden light erupted from his palms, from his chest, from the emblem on his suit that Alfred had designed to glow with his power. The night turned daybright in a circle around him. Stop, he said, not a shout, not a command, a statement. The lead talon reached the ward line and hit it at full speed. The golden thread in the earth detonated, a wall of force erupting from the ground, vertical, shimmering. The talon smashed into it, bounced back 3 feet, and landed in a crouch. The ward line crackled and died. One use, that was all it had in it. But the other talons had paused, regrouped, fanning out into a wider formation. 7 of them spread across a 40-foot frontage. Blades drawn, short swords, throwing knives, weapons that gleamed with an oily darkness that Harry's magic recoiled from. The court sends you to leave, one of them said, female voice cold as the steel in her hands. Leave the detective, leave this city, your presence is not permitted. No, Harry said. The talon tilted her head. The owl mask's amber eyes caught the light. Then the court sends us to end you. They came, all 7 simultaneously from 7 angles. Faster than the simulations. Bruce had been right about that. They crossed the 40 feet of lawn in heartbeats, blades leading, silent as falling shadows. Harry's barrier went up, not a wall this time, a sphere. A complete enclosure of golden energy surrounding him in every direction, blazing with power. The first 3 talons hit it and bounced hard, the barrier's surface crackling with discharged force. The 4th went high, leaping, driving a blade down toward the top of the sphere with both hands. The blade struck and the barrier held, but Harry felt the impact deep in his chest, a resonance that shook his concentration. The fifth and sixth talons hit the barrier simultaneously from opposite sides, a coordinated strike designed to split his attention. Harry gritted his teeth and pushed outward. The barrier expanded in a pulse, shoving all 6 attackers back. But the seventh talon was already behind him, inside the expansion radius, and the blade came in low and fast. Harry spun, not fast enough. The blade caught his side, a glancing cut, the suit absorbing most of the impact, but the edge bit through. Pain, sharp and hot, a line of fire across his ribs. His magic reacted, not the controlled, precise magic of training. The deep magic, the survival magic, the feral power that had collapsed a tunnel on traffickers and blown out every window in a subway station. It erupted from Harry in a shockwave of golden force that picked up all 7 talons and hurled them across the lawn like leaves in a hurricane. 3 of them crashed through the garden wall, 2 slammed into trees, 1 went through the greenhouse in an explosion of glass. The 7th, the one who'd cut him, hit the ground, rolled, and was on her feet in a second. Enhanced recovery, talon physiology. She came again, alone this time, the others still recovering. Fast, so fast, a blur of dark armor and steel. Harry tracked her with his magic, felt her coming the way he felt the ward lines, and made a choice. He didn't raise a barrier. He reached out with his telekinesis and grabbed her. The talon stopped mid-stride, frozen, held in a grip of invisible force, her feet 6 inches off the ground, her blade arm locked at full extension. She struggled. Harry could feel the strength of her, the augmented muscles pushing against his hold, tremendous physical power straining against magical power. The magic held, it wasn't even hard. Harry looked at her, she looked at him. Behind the owl mask, her eyes were dark, ancient, empty in a way that reminded him of something he couldn't quite place. I said stop, Harry said. He threw her, not at the wall, not at the ground, up, straight up, 60 feet into the cold night air. She arced, spinning, and then gravity took over and she fell. Harry caught her with his telekinesis 10 feet above the lawn and set her down. Hard, but not fatally. She didn't get up. Not because she couldn't, talons could take far worse, but because she'd felt the power and recognized the futility. The other 6 were back, converging again, slower this time, more cautious. They'd felt the shockwave. They'd seen their leader plucked from the air and tossed like a doll. The calculus had changed. Harry raised both hands. The golden light intensified, brighter than the moon, brighter than the manor's lights, casting sharp shadows across the ruined lawn. Energy crackled between his fingers and the temperature around him spiked. The grass at his feet was steaming. I have had a really long month, Harry said. His voice was steady, calm, even. The cut on his side burned, but the pain was distant, secondary to the power surging through him. I've been hit with fear toxin, nearly died stopping a bioweapon, and spent 3 weeks running combat simulations against holographic versions of you. The simulations were slower, so let me be clear about what happens next. He pointed at the nearest talon. A beam of golden light shot from his finger and hit the ground at the talon's feet, cratering the earth. The talon flinched. You can keep coming and I will put you down, every single one of you, not gently. Or you can leave and tell the Court of Owls that Sentinel is not leaving Gotham, Batman is not leaving Gotham, and anyone they send to this house will be returned in pieces. Metaphorical pieces, he added, because Bruce's rules mattered even now. But the kind that don't forget. Silence. 7 talons spread across the moonlit lawn. 7 owl masks, amber eyes, dark blades. Behind Harry, the manor stood tall and lit, its windows blazing defiance. The female talon rose to her feet. She looked at Harry for a long, measuring moment. Then she sheathed her blades and stepped back. One by one the others followed, blades sheathed, steps backward. Retreating, not fleeing, not panicking, but withdrawing with the controlled precision of soldiers who had reassessed the tactical situation and concluded that the cost of victory exceeded the benefit. They vanished into the darkness, not gradually the way normal people fade into night, all at once as if the shadows had swallowed them. One moment 7 figures on the lawn, the next empty grounds, cold moonlight, silence. Harry stood on the steps until his magic confirmed they were gone, off the grounds, beyond the property line, their cold presences receding into Gotham's vast darkness. Then his knees buckled. He caught himself on the door frame. Cut on his side was bleeding, not badly, but enough to make his head swim. The power expenditure hadn't been as catastrophic as the heating plant, but he'd burned through a significant chunk of his reserves in those 90 seconds. Harry, Bruce in the comm, status. 7 talons, engaged and repelled, they withdrew. A pause. You repelled 7 talons. I was motivated. Another pause, longer. I'm coming up, Dick, status. 7 on my end too, Dick said, breathing hard, not repelled. Engaged, Bruce, I need medical. How bad? 2 cuts, 1 deep, left forearm, right thigh. I got 3 of them down, but the other 4 were pushing me back before they disengaged. They pulled out all at once like someone gave a signal. Harry hobbled inside. Alfred met him in the entrance hall, fully dressed, immaculate, as if he'd been up for hours rather than roused from sleep by an assault on his home. He took one look at the blood on Harry's side and steered him to the nearest sofa without a word. "Sit, don't move, I'm fine. You are bleeding on a $7,000 settee, and I have decided to forgive that, which should indicate the gravity with which I am taking this situation. Sit, don't move." Harry sat. Alfred produced a medical kit from somewhere. The man had caches of supplies distributed throughout the manor like a paramilitary squirrel, and began cleaning the wound. The cut was shallow, the blade having been deflected by the suit's ballistic layer, but it was clean-edged and bled freely. "Talon blade," Alfred said, examining the wound. "Treated with an anticoagulant compound, most likely. That's why it's bleeding more than it should. I'll need to apply a coagulant dressing and monitor for toxicity." They coat their weapons. The Court of Owls has had centuries to refine their method. Their blades carry a chemical agent that prevents clotting, ensures that even a minor wound becomes debilitating over time. Against a normal human, it would be devastating. Against you, Alfred applied the dressing with practiced efficiency. "It's an inconvenience. Your magic is already counteracting the compound. I can see the wound closing." Harry looked down. He could see it too, the edges of the cut pulling together, golden light flickering faintly along the wound line, his body repairing itself at a rate that was visibly accelerating. Within minutes, the bleeding had stopped. Within 10, the wound was a pink line. Within 20, it was a faint scar. "That's new," Harry said. "Accelerated healing has been theorized based on your recovery patterns," Alfred said, packing up the medical kit. "This is the first direct confirmation. I would still prefer you avoid being cut open by centuries-old assassins. I'll add it to the list." Bruce arrived from the cave, still in the batsuit, carrying Dick, who was bleeding from 2 wounds and swearing creatively. Alfred redirected immediately, taking Dick into the study where a more comprehensive medical setup was waiting. Bruce followed, stripping off his gauntlets. Harry stayed on the settee. He was tired, but not crushingly so. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a buzzing clarity, the aftermath of combat, the hyper-aware state where everything seemed too sharp and too bright. He looked at the front doors. He'd torn them off their hinges. They lay in the entrance hall, massive oak panels with iron fittings, ripped from their frame by a burst of telekinetic force he'd barely thought about. He'd walked out those doors into 7 talons and hadn't hesitated. He probed the memory for fear and found none. Not bravado, not suppression, genuine absence. The fear that Crane had identified, the fear of his own power, was still there. It would always be there. But the fear of the fight itself, the fear of the enemy, the fear of being hurt, that was gone. Burned away somewhere between the sewer and the suit, replaced by something harder and brighter. He wasn't afraid of the Court of Owls. He wasn't afraid of their talons or their blades or their centuries of accumulated power. He was a boy who'd survived a cupboard and a sewer and a bioweapon and fear itself, and he was done being afraid of people who hid behind masks. Dick was patched up within the hour. The wounds were serious but clean. Alfred's field surgery was impeccable, and Dick's own resilience, honed by years of operating at the peak of human capability, would handle the rest. Sat in the study with his left arm bandaged and his right leg elevated, eating reheated French toast that Alfred had produced from somewhere, and looking remarkably cheerful for a man who'd just fought 7 undead assassins. 14 talons, Dick said, chewing. "That's a statement. 3 years ago they sent 5 and considered it excessive." "They weren't trying to kill us 3 years ago," Bruce said. He'd changed out of the suit and was standing at the study window, looking out at the ruined lawn. "They were testing boundaries. Tonight was an elimination attempt. They didn't try very hard. 7 on the east side pulled out clean after Harry repelled them. The 7 on the north, my 7, fought harder but disengaged simultaneously on what seemed like a remote command. They could have pressed the attack. They were gathering data." Bruce turned from the window. "The owl on the doorstep was the declaration. Tonight was the assessment. They wanted to know what we could do, specifically what Harry could do. Now they know. So tonight was a probe," Harry said, "not the real attack. Tonight was the first move in a longer game. The court doesn't do anything once. They test, adapt, and escalate. So they'll come again. Yes, with more talons, better tactics, and countermeasures designed specifically for your abilities." Harry digested this. His side twinged, the scar was almost gone, but the memory of the blade was fresh. "Then we don't wait for them," Harry said. "You said it yourself 3 weeks ago, don't let the enemy choose the battlefield. We know who they are, we know where they operate, we know their methods. Let's go to them." Bruce looked at him. That evaluating gaze, the one that weighed 100 factors in a second. "Taking the fight to the court means going underground," Bruce said. Their primary operations center is beneath the city, a network of chambers and tunnels built into Gotham's foundations centuries ago. It's fortified, it's booby-trapped, and it's full of talons in cold storage that they can activate at will. So we disable the cold storage first. Bruce blinked. It was a small reaction, barely perceptible, but Harry had been trained by the world's greatest detective to notice small reactions. Explain, Bruce said. You said the talons are stored in cryochambers and reactivated when needed. That's their force multiplier. If we take out the storage facility, we take away their reserves. They're left with whatever talons are currently active, which based on tonight is 14. 14 is a lot, but it's manageable. It's not an army. Dick whistled from the sofa. The kid's thinking like you. The kid's right. Bruce pulled up a schematic on the study's wall display, a three-dimensional map of the court's known underground network. The cryo-storage facility is here. He highlighted a section deep beneath the old Gotham foundations, approximately 200 feet below street level, accessed through the old reservoir system. I've mapped the approaches but never attempted a breach. The defenses are significant. What kind of defenses? Mechanical traps, structural deadfalls, and a rotating guard of active talons. The court doesn't trust electronic security, too vulnerable to my system. Everything in their network is analog, physical, centuries old and centuries tested. Mechanical traps I can deal with, Harry said. My magic can sense physical mechanisms, pressure plates, trip wires, that sort of thing. I've been doing it since the sewers. And structural deadfalls, what, collapsing tunnels? He smiled thinly. I've survived one of those. Harry, Bruce said, this isn't the sewer. This is a fortified position defended by the most dangerous non-meta combatants in Gotham. If we go in prepared, and we go in together. That's what I'm suggesting. And we do it my way, surgical, quiet. We disable the cryo storage and we get out. We don't engage the court's leadership. We don't destroy their infrastructure. We don't escalate. We remove their teeth and then we negotiate from strength. Negotiate. The court has survived for centuries because they're pragmatic. If we demonstrate that their military option is gone, they'll adapt, they'll recalculate, and a court that's recalculating is a court that's not attacking. Harry studied the schematic. Deep underground, narrow tunnels, fortified chambers. His domain, in a way. The boy who'd lived beneath Gotham returning to the dark to dismantle the power that lurked there. When, he asked, tomorrow night. I need 24 hours to plan the approach and prepare equipment. I'll be ready. They planned through the day. Bruce was meticulous, every approach route mapped, every potential choke point identified, every contingency scenario wargamed. Dick contributed tactical analysis despite Alfred's protests about bed rest. I fought with worse, Alfred. Remember the Blockbuster incident? I remember telling you not to fight with worse during the Blockbuster incident and being ignored as always. Harry studied the schematics with the focused intensity that had become his hallmark, memorizing layouts, identifying strategic points, and mapping the places where his magic would be most effective. Zatanna called at noon. She'd heard about the attack through her own channels. The magical community had felt Harry's ward lines trigger, and the energy release from his battle with the Talons had left residual traces that sensitive practitioners across the eastern seaboard had detected. You fought 14 Talons and repelled them, she said, her voice carrying a mix of impressions Harry couldn't fully parse. You used ward lines that you created instinctively, without any formal training in protective magic, and they function at a level that most ward specialists spend decades trying to achieve. They only worked once. They worked at all, Harry. You pushed raw magical intent into the ground and it became a functional defensive perimeter. Do you understand how significant that is? My wards require inscribed sigils, spoken incantations, and hours of focused ritual. Yours required you to put your hands in the dirt and want it badly enough. Is that good? It's unprecedented. It's also the reason the Court of Owls is terrified of you. You are an evolving variable. Every time you encounter a new challenge, your magic adapts and expands. You're not just getting stronger with training, you're getting stronger with experience. Every fight teaches your power something new. Harry was quiet for a moment. Through the cave's speakers, Zatanna's breathing was soft and steady. Zatanna, we're going after the court's cryo-storage tomorrow night. Their Talon reserves. Bruce is letting you go. Bruce is bringing me. God, a long exhale. Listen to me, Harry. The court's underground network is old, supernaturally old. Some of those chambers predate the city itself. There are things down there that don't follow normal rules, architecture that shouldn't be possible, mechanisms that seem to defy physics. The court has been dabbling in the edges of the arcane for centuries. They're not magicians, but they've accumulated artifacts, they've made deals, and they've built things that are more than merely mechanical. What should I watch for? Disruptions. If your magic feels wrong, heavy, sluggish, or like it's being dampened, pull back immediately. Some of their older defenses are specifically designed to interfere with non-physical abilities. They've been dealing with mystics longer than you've been alive. I'll be careful. You'll be more than careful. You'll be smart. You've got Batman's brain in there now. Use it. Harry smiled despite himself. Thanks, Zatanna. Come back in one piece, kid. I've got a lesson planned for Thursday and I refuse to waste it. The line went off. Harry sat in the cave's quiet, surrounded by schematics and plans and the ghost light of the Bat computer. Tomorrow night he was going underground, back into the dark, back into the tunnels, not as a starving child this time, as something else. He spent the rest of the afternoon in the training room, drilling barrier techniques, practicing split-focus exercises, running through movement patterns until his body could execute them without conscious thought. Then he showered, ate an enormous dinner that Alfred placed in front of him with pointed significance, and went to bed. He slept without nightmares. For the first time in weeks, the dreams were silent. Wednesday, midnight, the reservoir entrance. The old Gotham reservoir had been drained in the 1960s, its massive underground chamber converted to a municipal storage facility that nobody used and everyone forgot. Bruce had identified it as the primary access point to the court's tunnel network based on architectural analysis and decades of accumulated intelligence. 3 of them went in: Batman, Nightwing, and Sentinel. Harry wore the suit, the full suit, hood up, emblem glowing softly. His magic was at full power, rested, fed, coiled and ready. He could feel it in his chest like a second heartbeat, steady and strong, answering the tension in his body with warmth. They entered the reservoir through a maintenance hatch that Bruce had pre-rigged. The chamber was vast, a cathedral of concrete and steel, pillars rising into darkness, the floor dry but stained with the ghost of water that had been gone for 60 years. Their footsteps echoed. Bruce led. He moved through the darkness with the absolute confidence of a man who had mapped every inch of this space from surveillance data. Harry followed, his magic extending outward in a web of awareness, feeling the walls, the floor, the air, searching for the anomalies Zatanna had warned him about. He found the first trap 60 feet in. A pressure plate, beautifully concealed in the concrete floor, connected to a mechanism in the wall that his magic read as a spring-loaded battery of crossbow bolts. He flagged it silently, a pulse of golden light that illuminated the plate's outline. Bruce nodded, stepped over it. Dick followed. They moved deeper, down a staircase that shouldn't have existed in the reservoir's original plans, cut into the rock beneath the concrete, old stone steps worn smooth by centuries of use. The air changed as they descended, warmer, drier, smelling of dust and old stone and something faintly chemical. Harry found more traps, a deadfall ceiling section rigged to collapse on a trigger wire, a stretch of floor that his magic flagged as unstable, not a trap, but a deliberate weakness designed to give way under weight, dropping intruders into a pit, a door that was wired to flood the corridor behind it with some kind of gas. He disabled each one. Not with physical contact, with magic, reaching into the mechanisms and jamming them, freezing gears, fusing springs, neutralizing chemical compounds with the molecular transmutation he'd learned against Crane's toxin. Quick, clean, silent. "You're better at this than my tools," Dick murmured as Harry neutralized the 4th trap, a complex mechanical device hidden in the wall that would have launched a weighted net. "I can feel them, the mechanisms, the moving parts. It's like hearing a clock tick. I can sense where the energy wants to go." They descended another 100 feet. The stone around them was old, pre-colonial, Harry guessed, though he wasn't sure how he knew. His magic was responding to the age of the place, resonating with it. The rock had been here for millennia. The chambers carved into it had been here for centuries. And something about the carving itself felt deliberate, intentional, as if the architecture had been designed to channel forces that weren't purely structural. Zatanna's warning, the arcane edges. "Bruce," Harry said quietly, "the walls down here, they're shaped to do something. I can feel it like grooves in a record. The corridors aren't just passages, they're channels. Channels for what? I'm not sure. Energy, sound, something. The court built this place to move something through it that isn't just people." Bruce absorbed this without breaking stride, filed it, kept moving. They reached the cryo-storage chamber after 40 minutes of descent and navigation. The final approach was a long corridor, straight, wide, clearly the main access route. 2 Talons stood guard at the far end, flanking a heavy door. Batman signaled. He and Nightwing would take the guards. Harry would stand ready. It happened in seconds. Bruce and Dick moved with the synchronized precision of 2 people who had fought together for over a decade, shadows converging from both sides of the corridor, silent, fast. The Talons reacted, but reaction time means nothing when the attack comes from a blind spot. 2 strikes simultaneously, and both guards went down. Not dead, Bruce didn't kill, but incapacitated, their augmented bodies overwhelmed by targeted nerve strikes that even Talon physiology couldn't shrug off instantly. Harry moved to the door. It was steel, set into stone, with a locking mechanism that was entirely mechanical. No electronics, no digital access, just a complex arrangement of physical locks that would have taken a master locksmith hours to defeat. Harry placed his palm on the door, felt the locks. Felt the pins, the tumblers, the springs. He turned them all at once. The door swung open. Cold air rushed out, deep cold, the kind that burns exposed skin, the cold of industrial cryogenics. Beyond the door was a chamber the size of a warehouse, lit by a pale blue glow from overhead panels. And filling the chamber, row upon row upon row, were cryopods. Harry counted, stopped counting at 50. Dozens, he breathed. Bruce, there are dozens. Batman stepped into the chamber. His cowl's lenses adjusted to the light, and Harry saw his jaw tighten, the only visible reaction. 63 pods, Bruce said, scanning, all occupied, all in active cryosuspension. 63 talons, an army. Stored beneath Gotham for decades, centuries, waiting to be thawed and unleashed. We can't just shut off the cooling, Dick said. They'd thaw and activate. 63 talons waking up at once. No, Bruce agreed. We need to disable the revival mechanism, not the storage. Keep them frozen, but make it impossible to bring them back. Harry walked between the rows. The pods were coffin-shaped, frost-covered, each one containing a dark figure visible through the frosted glass. Faces behind owl masks, bodies in armor, blades clasped in frozen hands. He could feel them. Not alive, not dead, suspended. Their bodies were there, but whatever made them functional was dormant, held in check by the cold and by the chemical compounds circulating through the pod systems. The revival mechanism, Harry said, kneeling beside a pod. It's chemical. There's a compound in the pod's circulatory system, a reactivation agent. When the court wants to wake a Talon, they introduce the agent, raise the temperature, and the Talon revives. Can you neutralize it? Harry placed his hands on the pod, reached inside with his magic. The reactivation compound was there, a complex chemical stored in a reservoir at the base of each pod. He could feel its structure, its bonds, its molecular architecture. I can transmute it, Harry said. Convert the reactivation compound to something inert. Without the agent, raising the temperature would just thaw a body that can't revive. But it'll take time, each pod separately. How long per pod? Harry tested it, reached into the nearest pod's chemical reservoir and pulled the compound apart, rearranging its molecular structure into harmless saline. 3 seconds, 3 seconds each, so about 3 minutes for all 63. Do it, Dick, watch the door. Harry worked, pod by pod, row by row, his hands moving across the frosted surfaces while his magic dismantled the revival chemistry inside. It was precise work, the kind of controlled transmutation that Zatanna had been drilling him on, applied at scale. He felt each compound dissolve under his touch, felt the lethal potential drain away, replaced by salt water. He was on pod 47 when the alarm sounded. Not an electronic alarm, a physical one, a massive bell, somewhere deep in the court's network, ringing with a sound that reverberated through stone and bone. The chamber vibrated with it. They know we're here, Dick said from the door. I'm hearing movement, a lot of movement. Harry, how many left? Bruce asked. 16 pods. You have 90 seconds. Harry accelerated. Pushing his focus harder, reaching into multiple pods simultaneously, 2 at a time, then 3, splitting his attention the way Zatanna had taught him. The strain was enormous. His vision tunneled. His hands shook. 12 pods left. 8, 4. Harry now, Batman's voice sharp. They're coming. 2 pods. 1. Done. Harry pulled his hands from the last pod and nearly fell. His magic was depleted, not empty, not the terrifying hollowness of the heating plant, but low. Low enough that the barrier he instinctively maintained around himself flickered and thinned. All 63 neutralized, he said. Then we leave, move. They moved, back through the door into the corridor, the alarm bell deafening in the enclosed space. Dick took point, Bruce took rear, Harry between them, the formation they'd drilled, protecting the temporarily depleted asset. The Talons came from ahead, 4 of them rounding a corner at full speed, blades drawn. Dick engaged, Nightwing at full extension, eskrima sticks crackling with electricity, moving with an acrobat's grace and a veteran's precision. He dropped the first Talon in 2 strikes, redirected the second into the wall and created an opening. Through, Dick shouted. Harry dove through the gap, Bruce behind him. More Talons behind them, Harry could feel them, cold presences converging from multiple tunnels, the court's active forces mobilizing in response to the incursion. 6 behind us, Bruce said, running. 3 ahead, Dick status, holding, get the kid out, I'll catch up. Like hell, Harry said. He stopped running, turned around. The corridor behind them was filling with Talons, 6 of them armored, bladed, moving fast. Harry's magic was low, but low for him was still more than most people would ever have. He raised his hands. The golden light was dimmer than usual, more amber than gold, the color of banked coals, but it was there. He reached out with his telekinesis and grabbed the corridor itself. The stone walls groaned, dust cascaded from the ceiling. Harry pulled, not the talons, but the architecture around them. The corridor walls shifted, contracted, the ancient stone responding to his magic with the grudging obedience of something that had been shaped before and remembered. The passage narrowed. The ceiling dropped, the talons stumbled as the floor buckled beneath their feet. Harry didn't collapse the tunnel. He reshaped it, compressed the corridor from a 10-foot wide passage to a 3-foot gap, too narrow for an armored talon to pass while leaving the ceiling intact. A bottleneck, a door made of stone. Go, Harry gasped. The effort had taken most of what he had left. They ran, up through the ascending tunnels, past the disabled traps, through the old staircase, and into the reservoir chamber. Dick caught up at the staircase, bleeding from a new cut on his cheek, but grinning the wild grin of a man who lived for this. They burst out of the maintenance hatch into the Gotham night. Cold air, city sounds, the distant wail of a siren. Above them the sky was cloudy and orange, lit by the city's eternal glow. Batman sealed the hatch behind them with a thermite charge that fused the metal shut. It wouldn't hold forever, the court would find another way out, but it would slow them down. They stood in the shadow of the old reservoir building. 3 figures, breathing hard, bleeding from small wounds but alive. And beneath them, 63 talons slept in pods that would never wake them. "That was fun," Dick said. "Let's never do it again." Harry leaned against the building's wall. His legs were shaky, his magic guttering. But the cut on his side from the previous night's battle was gone, fully healed, not even a scar. And the new exertions, the new expenditures were already regenerating. He could feel his power rebuilding slowly like a tide coming back in. "It's done," he said. 63 talons neutralized, they can't revive them. "The court still has their active talons," Bruce said. 14 minus whatever casualties they sustained tonight, but their reserves are gone, their force multiplier is eliminated. "So now we negotiate," Harry said. "Now we negotiate." They didn't have to wait long. The negotiation came to them. 3 days later at Wayne Manor in broad daylight. A man arrived at the front gate in a black town car, old, silver-haired, impeccably dressed. He gave his name as Lincoln March, and Alfred recognized it, an old Gotham name, one of the founding families, a name that appeared in the same historical records as the Waynes. Bruce met him in the study. Harry was there at Bruce's insistence. Dick was on standby in the cave, monitoring through concealed cameras. March sat in the chair across from Bruce's desk, with the comfortable ease of a man who owned the chair and the desk and the room and the house, and probably considered the city a personal possession as well. His smile was warm, his manner gracious, and his eyes were the coldest things Harry had ever seen. "Mr. Wayne," March said, "and the young man, of course. Sentinel, I believe the papers are calling you." Harry didn't speak. He sat in the window seat, legs crossed, watching. Bruce had told him to observe and let Bruce lead the conversation. "You've made your point," March said, addressing Bruce. Rather emphatically, 63 irreplaceable assets neutralized in a single evening. Centuries of investment gone. He said this without visible emotion, the way a businessman might discuss a write-off. "The court recognizes the new reality." "The court should have recognized it when I put their previous leadership in prison 3 years ago," Bruce said. His voice was pleasant, social, the voice of Bruce Wayne the billionaire, but Harry could feel the steel underneath. "Prisons are temporary, the court is not." March leaned back. "Let me be direct. The court has no interest in an extended conflict with Batman. You are a known quantity and accommodation has been reached before." But the boy, his cold eyes flicked to Harry. "The boy is something else. The boy is an unknown, and the court does not tolerate unknowns." "The boy has a name," Harry said. "Harry," Bruce's voice calm, a reminder, not a reprimand. March smiled. "Indeed, Harry, Mr. Potter, if our research is accurate, a fascinating background, British, orphaned, a history that is remarkably difficult to trace beyond a certain point, almost as if someone went to great lengths to erase it." Harry's expression didn't change, but his magic stirred a low pulse of warmth in his chest. "The court's proposal is simple," March continued, returning his attention to Bruce. "The boy leaves Gotham. We don't care where he goes. Metropolis, Star City, another planet, it's irrelevant. But his presence in this city destabilizes arrangements that have existed for longer than your family has been relevant, Wayne, and the court will not accept that destabilization." Bruce said nothing for a moment, then he stood, walked to the window and looked out at the grounds. The lawn was still being repaired from the Talon assault. The garden wall had a hole in it. The greenhouse was gone. "No," Bruce said without turning around. March's smile didn't waver. "I'd encourage you to consider carefully." "I have considered. The answer is number Harry stays in Gotham. Your Talon reserves are gone. Your active forces took casualties they'll have difficulty replacing. The court's military capability has been reduced to a fraction of what it was, and any further hostile action against this house or anyone in it will be met with a response that makes last week look gentle. Threats wane, facts march. Bruce turned from the window. The court has survived for centuries by being pragmatic. Be pragmatic now. Accept the new reality. Gotham has a new protector and he's not leaving. March looked at Harry again, longer this time, measuring. Harry met his gaze and held it. He didn't glow, didn't spark, didn't make any display. He just sat in the window seat and looked at the man who wanted him gone and let the silence speak. March saw something in that silence. Harry didn't know what: resolve, perhaps, or power, or the particular stubbornness of a child who had survived everything the world had thrown at him and was done being moved. The court will take this under advisement, March said, standing. But I would caution you, Wayne, the court has weathered storms before. We are patient, we adapt, and we have resources that extend far beyond this city. He left. Alfred showed him out with the exquisite courtesy reserved for guests one would prefer to see fall down a flight of stairs. When the town car was gone, Harry let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. That went well, he said. That went as expected, Bruce corrected. March will report back to the court. They'll debate, they'll posture, and ultimately they'll back down. Not permanently, the court never gives up permanently. But for now they'll retreat, recalculate, adapt. And we watch them. Harry nodded. He looked out the window at the damaged lawn, the broken wall, the space where the greenhouse had been. We need a new greenhouse, he said. Alfred has already ordered one. Bruce paused in the doorway. Harry, yeah, the way you handled the cryo facility, the corridor, the transmutation under pressure, it was exceptional work. Thanks, Bruce nodded and left. Harry sat in the window and watched the clouds move over Gotham's skyline and felt for the first time that the city wasn't just a place he'd ended up. It was a place he was choosing, a place he was keeping, his now as much as it was Bruce's. That night Harry stood on the manor's roof. It was something he did sometimes, climbed up through a skylight and sat on the slate tiles looking out at the city. Gotham's skyline was a jagged silhouette against the orange sky, and from up here, with the wind and the dark and the distant sounds of the city, it felt like the edge of the world. He felt them before he arrived, a presence, not talon-cold, not hostile. Something else, old, warm, vast, controlled. A presence that felt like standing at the foot of a mountain and realizing the mountain was looking back. You are difficult to find, said a voice behind him. Or rather, you have become considerably easier, which I suspect is deliberate. Harry turned. A man stood on the roof of Wayne Manor, 10 feet away, having appeared without sound, without warning, without triggering any of the manor's defenses or Harry's wards. He was tall, lean, dark-skinned, with a close-trimmed beard going silver at the edges. He wore clothing that was simple but precise, dark, high-collared, functional. His eyes were green. Not Harry's green, a deeper shade older with a quality that Harry's instincts read as ancient. Harry's magic surged to readiness, hands glowing, barrier forming. Peace, the man said, raising one hand. I am not here to fight you, child. I am not from the court nor from any of Gotham's factions. My name is Ra's al Ghul, and I have been looking for you for quite some time. I know who you are. Harry's voice was flat. Bruce had briefed him. Ra's al Ghul, leader of the League of Assassins, eco-terrorist, immortal through the use of the Lazarus Pit, one of the most dangerous men on the planet. Batman has a file on you. I'm sure he does. It is likely quite thick. The detective and I have a long and complicated history. Ra's stepped forward, not aggressively, casually, the way someone might approach a view they wanted to admire. He looked out at Gotham's skyline, an ugly city, beautiful in its ugliness, like a wound that refuses to heal. Wayne has spent decades trying to save it, a noble effort, futile but noble. Get off this roof. Ra's smiled, not March's cold smile. Something warmer, more genuine, and infinitely more dangerous for its genuineness. I have not come to threaten you, Harry Potter. I know your name, your history, your nature. I know what you are, a wizard born of a bloodline that was once part of a hidden civilization now shattered. I know about the Dursleys, I know about the sewer, I know about the tunnel and the men beneath the rocks. His voice was soft, almost gentle. I know the guilt you carry, and I know it is undeserved. Harry's barrier flickered, not from weakness, from surprise. From the shock of hearing his whole history spoken aloud by a stranger on a rooftop. What do you want? Harry asked. Ra's turned to face him. Those ancient green eyes held something that Harry couldn't immediately identify. It took him a moment. Then he had it, recognition. I want to offer you a choice, Ra's said. Wayne is teaching you to protect this city, one city. A city that is, forgive me, a cesspool of corruption and suffering that has resisted redemption for centuries. He is teaching you to be a guardian, a watchman on a crumbling wall. He stepped closer. Harry's barrier held between them, golden and solid. I can teach you to be so much more, Roz said. You are not merely powerful, Harry, you are singular. The last of a bloodline that carried real magic, not the borrowed scraps that practitioners like Zatanna Zatara cobble together from old rituals and inherited tricks. True magic, the magic of creation and destruction, of life and death, of the fundamental forces that shape reality. You could be the most significant being on this planet, not a vigilante, not a protector of one failing city, a force for genuine change, global change, permanent change. His voice was quiet, sincere, utterly compelling, and Harry understood in that moment why Ra's al Ghul had survived for centuries, not because of the Lazarus Pit, because of this, the ability to speak to the thing you wanted most and make it sound reasonable. Harry lowered his barrier. Ra's blinked. A micro-expression of surprise, quickly controlled. Harry stepped forward, close enough that he could see the individual lines in Ra's al Ghul's ancient face, the flecks of gold in those green eyes, the faint scars on the hands that had killed thousands. You're good, Harry said, really good. The voice, the pitch, the way you found exactly the right words. Wayne teaches you to be a guardian, diminish what Bruce does. I can teach you to be more, appeal to my ego and my loneliness. The stuff about my bloodline, give me an identity, a heritage, something bigger than a kid in a sewer. You've done this before many times. Raz said nothing. His expression was still watchful. Here's the thing, Harry said. I've been manipulated by experts. Not you, you're in a different class, but the Dursleys spent 10 years trying to make me believe I was nothing, and they were persistent if not sophisticated. So I've got a pretty good ear for it, and what I hear from you is a man who wants a weapon and is willing to wrap it in a gift box. You misjudge me, maybe, but I don't think so. Bruce told me about you, the League of Assassins, the Cullings, your vision for the world, a world purified through destruction, thinned, reshaped according to your design. That's not change, that's genocide with a philosophy degree. Raz was quiet for a long moment. The wind moved across the rooftop. Gotham glittered below, indifferent to the conversation taking place above it. You are more than I expected, Raz said at last. Wayne's influence, no doubt. He has always had a talent for shaping young minds. He has a talent for telling the truth. You should try it sometime. Raz smiled again, that warm, paternal smile that was worse than any threat. I will leave you now, he said, but I will not leave your life. This is not the last time we will speak, Harry Potter. The world is changing and the forces at work are larger than Gotham, larger than Wayne, larger than either of us. When the time comes, and it will, you will need what I can offer, and I will be there. He turned, walked to the edge of the roof, and stepped off. Harry lunged forward, instinct, reflex, the impulse to catch someone falling, but there was no one to catch. Ra's al Ghul was gone. No sound, no trace, no residual energy, as if he'd never been there. Harry stood on the edge of the roof, heart pounding, staring down at the empty grounds below. His magic swept the area, wide, thorough, searching. Nothing. The most dangerous man he'd ever met had appeared and disappeared on one of the most secure rooftops on the planet, as if the laws of physics were a suggestion he'd politely declined. Bruce, Harry said into his calm, we need to talk. 20 minutes later in the cave. Bruce, Harry, Alfred, Dick on video link from the guest room where he was resting. He was on the roof, Harry said. Inside the wards, inside the security perimeter, 10 feet away from me before I felt him. I don't know how he got in or how he got out. Bruce's expression was carved from something harder than stone. Raz has methods that bypass conventional and unconventional security. He's done it before. The fact that he chose to reveal himself rather than observe covertly means he wanted you to know he can reach you. He wanted to recruit me. What did he offer? Harry recounted the conversation. Every word, every inflection, every calculated appeal. Bruce listened without interrupting. He mentioned your bloodline, Bruce said when Harry finished. Specifically, a hidden civilization of magic users now shattered. He said I was the last of a bloodline that carried real magic, whatever that means. It means he knows things about your heritage that we don't. Things that Zatanna's research has only hinted at. Bruce turned to the back computer. I've been pursuing the thread since you arrived. The gaps in your parents' records, the institution that doesn't appear in any database, the officials who signed off on the investigation and then vanished. There was a hidden world, Harry. A community of people like you, magic users, living in secret alongside the normal population. And something happened to it, something catastrophic. Voldemort, the name came from somewhere deep. Harry didn't know where. It surfaced in his mind like a bubble rising through dark water, a word he'd heard once maybe, in a dream or a fragment of memory so old it predated conscious thought. That name, I don't know why I know it, but it's connected to what happened to my parents. Bruce's fingers were already moving on the keyboard. I'll find it, whatever it is, wherever it leads, I'll find it. Raz said he'd be back. He will be. Ra's al Ghul is the most patient predator on Earth. He'll wait, he'll watch, and he'll return when he thinks you're ready to listen. I won't be. I know. Bruce looked at him. Something in his expression shifted, the mask of the detective slipping just for a moment, revealing the man underneath. Harry, what he said about your potential, about what you could become, he wasn't wrong about that part. You are singular, your power is extraordinary and it's growing, but power doesn't determine what you become, choice does, and you've already made yours. Harry nodded. He thought about the roof and Ra's al Ghul's green eyes and the seductive warmth of a voice that offered the world. He thought about Bruce's voice in a tunnel saying you matter. He thought about Alfred's soup and Dick's laughter and the weight of a ceramic owl on a doorstep and the 63 Talons sleeping forever in their frozen tombs. Yeah, Harry said, I have. He went to bed, slept deeply, dreamed of nothing. In the morning, Gotham was waiting and he was ready for it. Chapter 5, Gotham's Light, the city had 3 days of peace. Harry spent them the way he'd learned to spend downtime, training in the mornings, studying in the afternoons, patrolling at night. The rhythm of it had become natural, a heartbeat pattern that structured his days the way the cupboard's darkness had once structured them, except this rhythm was chosen, and the cupboard never was. He ran 5 miles before breakfast. He sparred with Bruce in the cave until his muscles burned and his magic hummed. He sat with Alfred in the library and read about thermodynamics and medieval history and the chemical properties of rare earth elements, because the more he understood about the physical world, the more precisely he could reshape it. And at night he flew. Gotham from the air had become his favorite thing in the world, though he'd never said that aloud and probably never would. The city was ugly from the ground, cramped, dirty, aggressive in its decay. But from above, at speed, with the wind tearing at his hood and the lights blurring into rivers of gold and white beneath him, it was something else. A living map, a breathing puzzle. Every block had a story, every street had a current, and Harry could feel it all from up here. The city's pulse, its mood, its thousand simultaneous crises and kindnesses playing out in apartments and alleys and all-night diners. He was getting to know its people, too. Not just the criminals and the victims, the ordinary citizens who made up the vast majority of Gotham's population and who existed in the space between those two categories. The woman who ran the bodega on 8th and Miller, who left a thermos of coffee on her fire escape every night because she'd figured out that the golden figure who kept her block safe liked coffee. The old man in the Narrows who sat on his stoop until midnight regardless of weather and waved whenever Harry streaked overhead. The group of teenagers in the East End who'd started a social media account called Sentinel Watch that tracked his appearances with obsessive precision and had, to Harry's deep embarrassment, commissioned fan art. He was becoming part of the city, woven into it the way Batman was woven into it, except different. Batman was Gotham's shadow, its dark reflection, its nightmare-turned protector. Harry was becoming something else, something warmer, a light in the places where the shadows were deepest. The 3 days of peace ended on a Thursday morning when Bruce called him to the cave and showed him what Ra's al Ghul had done. The Batcomputer's main display showed a satellite image of Gotham's eastern seaboard. Overlaid on the image were data points, dozens of them, clustering around the city's infrastructure like a rash. Bruce walked Harry through them with the controlled, precise delivery that meant the situation was very bad. Ra's has been in Gotham for at least a week, Bruce said. Longer than I thought. He didn't come alone. League of Assassins operatives have been infiltrating the city's infrastructure, the power grid, the water treatment system, the communications network. They're embedded in key positions, disguised as utility workers, municipal employees, maintenance staff. Harry studied the data points. How many? I've confirmed 47. There may be more. 47 League operatives in Gotham. What are they doing? Preparing. Bruce pulled up a secondary display, a schematic of Gotham's power grid with highlighted nodes. They've placed devices at 17 critical points in the electrical network. The devices are dormant, not active, not transmitting. But their placement corresponds to the nodes that, if simultaneously disrupted, would crash Gotham's entire power grid. He switched to the water system. More nodes, more devices. 12 devices in the water treatment and distribution network. If activated, they would introduce a contaminant into the water supply, not lethal, based on the chemical signatures I'm reading, but incapacitating. A sedative compound, probably, enough to reduce the population's ability to respond to a crisis. Communications network, 8 more devices. These would jam emergency frequencies, police, fire, EMS, total communication blackout for first responders. Harry stared at the displays. The scope of it was breathtaking. Not a single attack, a coordinated multi-vector assault on every system that kept Gotham functional. Power, water, communications. Take all 3 down simultaneously, and the city didn't just suffer. It went blind, deaf, and unconscious. He's going to shut down the city, Harry said. He's going to create a window, a period of total chaos, no power, no clean water, no emergency response, during which Gotham is completely vulnerable. The question is, vulnerable to what? To him, to whatever he's actually here to do. Yes, and I don't think this is about Gotham. I think this is about you. Harry looked at him. Me. Everything Roz has done since the Scarecrow incident has been focused on you. The surveillance, the intelligence gathering, the rooftop visit. He wants you, Harry. And if you won't come willingly, he'll create a situation where you have to choose. Choose what? Bruce pulled up a final display, a map of Wayne Manor and the surrounding area with a red overlay marking an approach vector from the northeast. Choose between saving the city and saving your family. The briefing continued for 2 hours. Bruce laid out the intelligence in exhaustive detail, every confirmed operative, every device, every potential timeline. He'd been tracking Ra's al Ghul's preparations for 48 hours, feeding data into predictive models, running scenarios. The models converged on a single conclusion. Ra's would launch within 72 hours, during the optimal window when Gotham's infrastructure was most stressed and the League's preparations were complete. Dick was already on his way from Bloodhaven. Zatanna was on standby. Bruce had considered calling in additional allies. The Justice League had resources that could neutralize the threat in hours, but Ra's had anticipated that. He's positioned a dead man's switch, Bruce explained. If he detects League-level intervention, Superman, Flash, anyone with that kind of power, the devices activate immediately. Automatic trigger, no override. He designed this operation specifically to be Batman scale. Containable by us, but only by us. Because if he calls in the League, the city crashes before they can act, Harry said. And if he doesn't call the League, he has to rely on us. On you. Typically, my capabilities are known to Ra's. He's been fighting me for years. He's designed the operation with countermeasures for everything I can do. You are the variable he can't fully account for, which is why this is also a test. A test. Ra's doesn't waste operations. Every action serves multiple purposes. This is an attack on Gotham, but it's also an evaluation of your capabilities, your limits, and your decision-making under pressure. He wants to see what you choose when the stakes are real. I already told him what I chose. You told him on a rooftop with no pressure. He wants to see if the choice holds when people are dying. Harry was quiet. He looked at the displays, the nodes, the devices, the approach vectors, the scope of the assault, the precision of the planning, the patience of a man who had centuries to learn how to destroy a city. What's the plan? Harry asked. Bruce turned to face him. Behind the calm, behind the analysis, Harry could see something he rarely saw in Bruce Wayne's eyes. Concern, not for Gotham, for him. The plan is that we don't let him make us choose, Bruce said. We do both. The plan was elegant in its simplicity, which meant Bruce had probably spent 48 sleepless hours making it look simple. 3 targets, the power grid devices, the water system devices, and the communication jammers. All had to be neutralized simultaneously. If the League detected a partial takedown, they'd trigger the remaining systems. 3 targets, 3 teams, 1 coordinated strike. Dick would handle the communication jammers, 8 devices across the city, all accessible from rooftop positions. Dick was the fastest, the most mobile, and the communications network was the most geographically dispersed target. He'd use a combination of his own athleticism, a borrowed motorcycle, and carefully timed routes to hit all 8 within a 15-minute window. Bruce would handle the water system. 12 devices in underground facilities, requiring infiltration, technical expertise, and the ability to neutralize chemical countermeasures. Bruce's specialty. Harry would handle the power grid. 17 devices across the most densely populated sections of Gotham, many in secured facilities, some in live electrical infrastructure that would kill a normal person on contact. Harry's magic made him the only member of the team who could safely interface with high-voltage equipment, and his ability to fly meant he could cover the geographic spread faster than any ground-based approach. 17 targets in 15 minutes, Harry said, studying his section of the map. That's less than a minute per device, 53 seconds average, accounting for transit time between locations. You'll need to fly at maximum speed and disable each device in under 10 seconds. I've never pushed my speed that hard over sustained distance. I know, which is why we're going to spend the next 48 hours training specifically for this. They trained. Bruce converted the cave simulation room into a replica of Harry's target route. 17 stations positioned to mirror the geographic layout of the real devices, scaled down but maintaining the relative distances and approach angle. Harry ran the course over and over, flying between stations at increasing speeds, disabling mock devices with his magic. The first run took 22 minutes, too slow by 7 minutes. The second run took 19, still too slow. Harry pushed harder, not just faster, smarter. He analyzed each target, identified the most efficient approach vectors, calculated the optimal altitude and speed for each transit. He refined his disabling technique. Instead of physically reaching each device and transmuting its components, he learned to project his magic at range, sending a focused pulse of transmutative energy into the device while still in flight. It was like throwing darts at supersonic speed, and the precision required was agonizing. By run 15, he'd cut the time to 16 minutes. Still too slow, Bruce said from the observation gallery. I know. Harry landed, breathing hard. Sweat dripped from his face and his magic flickered with fatigue. The transit between stations 9 and 10 is the bottleneck. They're on opposite sides of the East End. I'm losing almost 2 minutes on that leg. Can you cut the distance? Not without going through buildings. Can you go through buildings? Harry stared at him. What? Your telekinesis can create openings in physical structures. If you can breach a wall, fly through a building, and exit the other side without significantly decelerating, you could cut the station 9 to 10 transit from 94 seconds to approximately 30. That's insane. It's geometry. The math works. Can you do it? Harry looked at the simulation course, at the gap between stations 9 and 10. At the buildings that existed in that gap in the real city, offices, apartments, warehouses. I'd have to punch through walls at speed, Harry said slowly. Project a telekinetic burst ahead of me to create the opening, fly through before the debris settles, and punch out the other side, while maintaining course and speed for the next target. Yes, and if I miscalculate, I fly into a concrete wall at 100 miles an hour. Your barriers would protect you, probably. Harry, can you do it? Harry closed his eyes, felt his magic deep, vast, still growing. The power that had once terrified him in a subway tunnel, that had leveled a lab and dissolved a bioweapon and held 7 talons at bay. It wasn't just strength anymore. It was part of him, woven through his body and his mind and his will. An organ, Zatanna had called it, number more than that, it was him. Yeah, he said, I can do it. Run 16. Bruce added wall obstacles to the simulation course, reinforced panels that approximated building walls. Harry hit the first one at full speed, projected a telekinetic burst that shattered a 6-foot circle in the panel half a second before he reached it, flew through the gap in a shower of debris, and emerged on the other side without slowing down. It felt like nothing he'd ever done. Not fighting, not shielding, not the delicate molecular work of transmutation. This was flight as weapon, speed as strategy. His body and his magic fused into a single projectile cutting through the world like a golden blade. Run 16 time, 14 minutes, 41 seconds. Run 20, 13 minutes, 58 seconds. Run 24, 13 flat. That's the target, Bruce said. 13 minutes gives you a 2-minute buffer before the League can detect the partial takedown and trigger the remaining devices. Harry landed. His whole body was vibrating, not with fatigue but with energy, his magic supercharged by the sustained high-intensity output. He felt like he could fly through the actual city right now, punch through every building in Gotham and come out the other side still accelerating. I'm ready, he said. Tomorrow night. He slept for 12 hours. Alfred checked on him twice and reported to Bruce that the boy's vital signs were strong, his magical energy output was stable, and he was smiling in his sleep. I don't believe he's had a nightmare in 4 days, Alfred said, standing in the cave while Bruce ran final checks on his own equipment. Not since the court's visit. Something has shifted. He's found his footing, Bruce said without looking up from his work. The court raws the training, it's given him a sense of his own capability. He's not fighting blind anymore. He knows what he can do. He knows who he is, Alfred corrected gently. That is a different and more significant thing. Bruce stopped working, looked at Alfred. When I brought him here, Bruce said, I thought I was taking in a child who needed help. Someone to protect, train, eventually release into the world with the tools to survive. And now I think the world needed him more than he needed me. Alfred permitted himself a small smile. I would suggest, sir, that the need was mutual, as it always is with family. Bruce held his gaze. Something passed between them, unspoken, understood, the deep communication of 2 people who had shared a life for 3 decades. Family, Bruce repeated, as if testing the weight of the word. Quite so, sir. Friday night, 8 p.m. Gotham's skyline was sharp against a clear sky, the first stars appearing in the gaps between the city's light pollution. The air was cold and clean, a rare gift from the weather that made the city feel scrubbed, alert, ready. 3 figures on 3 rooftops, spread across the city, miles apart, connected by comms. Nightwing in position, Dick said. Communications targets confirmed. 8 devices, 8 locations. Ready on your mark. Batman in position, water system targets confirmed, 12 devices, 12 locations, ready. Harry stood on the roof of the Gotham Power Authority's central building, the highest point in his section of the city. From here, he could see all 17 of his targets, or rather, he could feel them. His magic reached out across the east end like a web, touching each device, sensing its dormant electronic signature, mapping its exact position in three-dimensional space. Sentinel in position, Harry said. 17 targets confirmed. I can feel all of them. Ready. Bruce's voice came through the comm, steady as bedrock. Clock starts on my mark. 15-minute window. Synchronize. A pause. The city breathed below them. Mark. Harry launched. He came off the rooftop like a comet, straight up 30 feet, then leveling out and accelerating east. The city blurred beneath him. Wind screamed past his barrier, parted by the telekinetic wedge he projected ahead of himself to cut air resistance. Speed built, 60 miles an hour, 80, 100. The buildings below became a smear of light and shadow, and Harry navigated by magic rather than sight, his awareness locked onto the 17 points of wrongness scattered across his section of the city. Target 1, a transformer station on East 14th. Harry dove, dropping from cruising altitude to street level in 2 seconds, decelerating just enough to project a focused pulse of transmutative energy at the device clamped to the transformer's housing. The pulse hit, the device's electronic components decomposed into inert silicon and copper, and Harry was climbing again before the debris of the shattered device had finished falling. 11 seconds elapsed, ahead of schedule. Target 2. A substation on Roosevelt inside a fenced compound. Harry didn't bother with the fence, he flew over it, tagged the device with a pulse from 20 feet up, and was past the compound before the security camera finished its rotation. 23 seconds. Target 3 was inside a building, a maintenance room in the basement of an apartment complex, accessible only through a locked service entrance. Harry hit the service entrance at speed, telekinetic burst, door off its hinges, down the stairs in a controlled fall, pulse to the device, back up and out through the hole where the door had been. 39 seconds, he was flying, not just physically, mentally, strategically, the whole operation unfolding in his mind like a chess game played at lightning speed. Each target was a move, each transit was a calculation, each second was a resource to be spent precisely. Targets 4 through 8 fell in rapid succession. A rooftop junction box, a power relay inside a street-level cabinet, a device hidden in the crawl space beneath a diner, which Harry accessed by melting a hole in the sidewalk and projecting his transmutation pulse downward without even landing. 2 more substations hit from the air at speed, 4 minutes 12 seconds, 8 down, 9 to go. Nightwing 4 of 8, on schedule, Dick reported, his voice carrying the particular breathlessness of a man who was sprinting across rooftops. Batman 6 of 12, ahead of schedule, Bruce said, calm, always calm. Sentinel 8 of 17, ahead of schedule, Harry said, and he was climbing again, banking north toward Target 9. Target 9 was the turning point. A major switching station at the Gotham Power Authority's East End distribution hub, a large, secure facility with actual guards and actual fences and actual security systems. The device was inside the building, attached to the main bus bar, a component carrying enough voltage to vaporize a human being. Harry didn't slow down. He hit the facility's outer wall at 110 miles per hour. The telekinetic burst detonated ahead of him, a shaped charge of invisible force that punched a 6-foot hole in the brick wall, showering the interior with debris. Harry flew through the gap into the building, through a corridor, through another wall, into the switching room. The device was there, clamped to the bus bar, surrounded by live electrical equipment carrying 60,000 volts. He didn't land, didn't stop. He projected the transmutation pulse while still moving, hitting the device with pinpoint precision as he passed through the room at 70 miles an hour. The device disintegrated. Harry hit the far wall, punched through it, and exploded out the other side of the building in a shower of brick dust and golden light. The guards outside saw a blur of gold enter one side of their building and exit the other side a second and a half later, leaving 2 perfectly circular holes in opposite walls. Target 9 down, pivot to Target 10. This was the critical transit, the gap that Bruce had identified, the bottleneck that had cost Harry minutes in the simulations. Targets 9 and 10 were on opposite sides of the East End, separated by 1.5 miles of dense urban landscape, buildings, streets, elevated rail lines. Harry accelerated, maximum speed. The city became a tunnel of light and shadow, his barrier straining against the air resistance, his magic pouring into propulsion. He hit the first building in his path without hesitating, burst through the outer wall, through an office space, through the opposite wall, out, across a street, into the next building, through, out. punching holes through Gotham's architecture like a needle through fabric, golden light blazing in his wake, each breach lasting a fraction of a second. He covered the mile and a half in 26 seconds, through 4 buildings over 2 streets under an elevated rail line. He arrived at Target 10's location, a power junction in the basement of a parking garage, and disabled it without landing, projecting the transmutation pulse through 3 floors of concrete from the rooftop. 6 minutes, 9 seconds. 10 down, 7 to go. The remaining targets fell like dominoes. Harry was in the zone now, a state of pure, flowing focus where thought and action and magic were indistinguishable. Each target was a note in a melody he was playing at impossible speed, and the melody was destruction, precise and clean and unstoppable. 11, 12, 13, 3 devices in a cluster around the East End's secondary distribution node, disabled in a single pass, Harry projecting 3 simultaneous transmutation pulses while flying between the buildings that housed them. The triple split focus hit him hard, a spike of pain behind his eyes, a moment of tunnel vision, but the pulses landed true and the devices died. 14, 15, 16 spread across the northern fringe of his section, requiring altitude and speed. Harry climbed to 500 feet, higher than he'd ever flown over the city, and dove at each target from above, a golden streak falling out of the night sky. The people on the streets below saw a flash of light and heard a sound like thunder, and by the time they looked up, he was gone. 17, the last device, mounted on a high-voltage transmission tower at the edge of the East End, 200 feet above street level, surrounded by live power lines carrying enough current to light a small city. Harry flew straight at it. The power lines crackled and arced as his magic disrupted their electromagnetic fields, blue-white sparks leaping from cable to cable, the tower groaning under sudden stress. Harry's barrier absorbed the stray voltage, converting it to harmless heat that radiated from his skin. He reached the device, slapped his palm against it, and poured transmutative energy directly into the mechanism. The device crumbled to dust under his hand. "Sentinel, 17 of 17, Harry said into the comm. All devices neutralized. Elapsed time, he checked his HUD. 11 minutes 42 seconds. Silence on the comm for 2 beats. Then Dick, show off. Nightwing 8 of 8 complete, Dick reported. 13 minutes 8 seconds. Communications network secure. Batman 12 of 12 complete, Bruce said. 12 minutes 21 seconds. Water system secure. Done. All 37 devices neutralized. Gotham's infrastructure intact. Ra's al Ghul's grid-level attack, planned over weeks and executed with the resources of one of the most dangerous organizations on the planet, dismantled in under 15 minutes. Harry hovered above the transmission tower, the city spread below him, and allowed himself 3 seconds of pure satisfaction. Then Bruce's voice came through the comm, and the satisfaction evaporated. Harry. The Manor's alarms just triggered. Multiple contacts approaching from the northeast. Alfred is reporting. A pause. Static. Alfred's comm just went dead. Harry's blood went cold. The choice. The one Ra's had designed the entire operation to force. Save the city or save the family. They dismantled the city-level threat, but that had pulled all 3 of them away from the Manor, away from Alfred. Ra's had never expected the grid attack to succeed. He'd expected them to stop it. He'd wanted them to stop it because stopping it meant leaving home undefended. Harry turned north. Wayne Manor was 12 miles away. At his current speed, at maximum acceleration, he could be there in under 2 minutes. "I'm going," Harry said. "Harry, wait, it could be a trap. Ra's wants you isolated. Alfred is alone." He didn't wait for a response. He poured everything into speed, every ounce of magic, every shred of will, every fiber of his being focused on a single imperative. Get there now. The city vanished beneath him. The suburbs blurred. The dark ribbon of the access road to Wayne Manor appeared, and the manor itself, lit golden, Alfred's lights blazing in every window, grew from a point to a shape to a reality. He hit the grounds at speed and felt it immediately. His wards were down. Not triggered, dismantled, taken apart from the outside with a precision that spoke of intimate knowledge of how they worked. Someone had studied his magic and learned to unpick it. The manor's front doors were open, not broken, open, lights still on. No sounds of combat, no explosions, no screaming. Harry landed on the front steps and walked inside. The entrance hall was intact. The study, the living room, the kitchen, all undamaged. The house was quiet, too quiet. Alfred's presence was missing from the air the way a heartbeat is missing from a stopped chest. Harry reached out with his magic, swept the house. One presence in the library, not Alfred, older, deeper, vast. He walked to the library. Ra's al Ghul sat in Alfred's reading chair, legs crossed, a cup of tea in his hand. The tea was Alfred's. Harry recognized the pot, the cup, the particular amber color of Alfred's preferred blend. Roz was drinking it with every appearance of appreciation. Alfred stood beside the window, unharmed, straight-backed, composed, with the particular rigid dignity of a man who was being held at gunpoint by someone too polite to actually point the gun. 2 League operatives flanked him, armed, silent. "Ah," Roz said, looking up as Harry entered. 11 minutes and 42 seconds for 17 targets. I confess I expected 13. "You are faster than my projections." Harry's hands blazed. The library lit up gold, shadows fleeing to the corners, the spines of 1,000 books glowing in the warm light. "Let him go," Harry said. "Mr. Pennyworth is unharmed and will remain so. I am not in the habit of harming civilians, despite what the detective may have told you. Please sit, we have matters to discuss." "I'm not sitting, I'm not discussing. Let Alfred go and get out of this house." Roz sipped his tea. "The grid attack was a mechanism, Harry, a tool designed to create this conversation. I needed you here without the detective, without Nightwing, without the layers of protection and preparation that Wayne wraps around you like armor. I needed you to hear what I have to say and to make your choice freely. I already made my choice. You made a choice on a rooftop in a moment of defiance. Defiance is not decision. I am offering you a decision." Roz set down the tea, stood. He was tall, taller than Harry had registered on the roof, his presence filling the room with the quiet authority of centuries. "I have spent the last week demonstrating what I can do. 47 operatives in your city's infrastructure, undetected until the detective found them by the narrowest of margins. 37 devices that could have crippled Gotham in an instant. Access to the most secure private residence in the Western Hemisphere, bypassing defenses that stop metahumans and gods." He stepped forward. Harry's barrier was up, golden and solid between them. Roz stopped at its edge and looked at it, looked through it, at Harry's face. "I am not showing you this to frighten you," Roz said. "I am showing you what the world is. The world is a place where power determines outcome, where those with the will to act shape the future, and where good intentions without sufficient force are merely a prelude to failure. Wayne fights for Gotham, a single city, and every year the city slides further into decay despite his efforts because the problems he fights are symptoms of a disease he refuses to cure. And your cure is killing millions of people. My cure is removing the structures that perpetuate suffering. Corrupt governments, predatory economic systems, the machinery of oppression that grinds billions of lives into dust. These structures cannot be reformed, Harry. They can only be replaced. And replacement requires the willingness to destroy what exists and build something better. You're insane. I am the sanest man you will ever meet. I have lived long enough to see the patterns, and I am telling you, the path Wayne has you on leads to a life of noble futility. You will fight for Gotham until you are old, and when you are gone, the city will return to exactly what it was before you arrived. Your magic, your extraordinary gift, spent on a single, unsalvageable city." Roz reached into his coat and produced something, a book. Old leather-bound, with a symbol on the cover that Harry's magic recognized before his eyes did, a jolt of resonance, of connection, as if something inside him had been waiting his whole life to see that symbol. "This belonged to your mother," Roz said. "Lily Potter, a woman of remarkable ability, a witch born of a non-magical family who became one of the most gifted practitioners of her generation. She died protecting you from a man named Tom Riddle, who called himself Voldemort, who tore the magical world apart in his pursuit of immortality and dominion." Harry couldn't breathe. His mother's name in Ra's al Ghul's mouth, his mother's book in Ra's al Ghul's hands. "Your parents were part of a hidden world," Raz continued. "A civilization of magic users existing alongside the mundane world for centuries. That civilization collapsed, destroyed by Riddle's war, driven underground, scattered. The survivors went into hiding. Many died. The institutions that sustained them, their schools, their government, their communities, were dismantled or destroyed." He held out the book. "This is a journal. Your mother's personal record of her magical research, her theories, her understanding of the nature of magic itself. It was recovered by my agents from the ruins of her home. I have kept it safe for over a decade, waiting for the day when the person it belonged to would be ready to receive it." Harry stared at the book, his mother's journal, his mother's handwriting, her thoughts, her magic, a piece of the life that had been taken from him before he could remember it. His barrier flickered. "Take it," Roz said. "It is yours by right. I ask nothing in return. I am not so crude as to trade a mother's legacy for a child's allegiance." Harry's hand moved. Not a conscious decision, a pull deep in his core, magnetic and irresistible. His fingers closed around the book's spine, and when he touched it, his magic detonated, not outward, inward. A cascade of energy that rolled through him like a wave, warm, familiar, achingly tender. He could feel her, not a ghost, not a voice, a residue, a magical fingerprint left in the leather and the pages and the ink by a woman who had poured her power into her work the same way Harry poured his into his shields and his flight and his fire. She was there in the book, the way a song is in an instrument even when no one is playing. His eyes burned, his throat closed. The golden light around him shifted, softer, warmer, the color of sunlight through a window on a summer afternoon. "Mum," he whispered, so quiet that no one heard. Roz watched him with those ancient green eyes, and Harry understood in that moment the true nature of the man's strategy. Not the grid attack, not the operatives, not the demonstration of power. This, the book, the connection to his mother, to his heritage, to the gaping wound of a life stolen before it began. Ra's al Ghul fought with the most dangerous weapon in the world, the truth. "I can give you more," Raz said softly. "The history of your people, the knowledge of your bloodline. The magical traditions that were lost when the wizarding world fell. I have archives, Harry. Centuries of collected knowledge about magic users, their abilities, their culture, their power. Everything that was taken from you can be restored, and with it the ability to do what Wayne cannot, change the world, not one city, the world." Harry held the book against his chest, his mother's book. He could feel the words inside it without reading them, echoes of thought and theory and love pressed into every page. He looked at Ra's al Ghul, at the offer in those green eyes. Knowledge, heritage, identity. Everything he'd been starving for since before he could remember. He looked at Alfred, standing by the window, flanked by assassins, watching Harry with an expression of absolute trust. Not fear, not concern, trust. The trust of a man who had seen a starving child eat soup and cry, who had sat by a bedside through nightmares, who had built a suit with a glowing emblem and called it a promise. Harry looked at the book in his hands. "My mother died protecting me," he said. "That's what you said. She gave her life so I could live." "Yes, she didn't give her life so I could burn the world down and rebuild it according to someone else's design. She gave her life so I could choose." Raz said nothing. "You want to know what I choose?" Harry's voice was steady, not defiant, certain. The certainty of bedrock, of foundations, of a boy who had found the ground beneath his feet and was not going to be moved. "I choose this house. I choose Alfred and Bruce and Dick. I choose Gotham, ugly, broken, unsalvageable Gotham that keeps fighting to survive even when everything in it should have given up. I choose to stand on a wall and keep watch, not because it's the smart play or the powerful play, but because it's right. Because my mother chose to protect one person, me, instead of reshaping the world, and that choice is worth more than everything in your archives." He held up the book. "I'm keeping this because it's mine." "And you're leaving this house now?" Ra's al Ghul looked at him. For a long, still moment, those ancient eyes searched Harry's face, looking for the crack, the doubt, the opening. They didn't find one. Something shifted in Ra's expression. Not defeat, he was too old and too proud for defeat. Recognition. The same recognition Harry had seen on the rooftop, but deeper now, more complete. "You are her son," Raz said softly. She would have said exactly the same thing, in exactly the same way. He raised a hand. The two operatives flanking Alfred stepped back. Alfred straightened his cuffs with the deliberate calm of a man who had been waiting for exactly this outcome. "I will leave your house," Raz said, "but I will not leave your future. The world is changing, Harry Potter. The forces that destroyed the wizarding world are stirring again." Riddle's legacy did not die with him. His followers, his ideology, his corruption spread further than you know. The mundane world and the magical world are not as separate as they were, and the collision that is coming will require more than one boy on a wall. He walked toward the library door, paused beside Harry. "When that day comes," Raz said, "you will have to decide whether your wall is wide enough, and if it is not, I will be waiting." He left. The League operatives followed, shadows dissolving into shadows. Harry heard them exit the manor, felt them cross his broken wards, felt their cold presences recede into the night. Then they were gone. Harry stood in the library holding his mother's book, surrounded by Alfred's silence and the smell of cooling tea. "Sir," Alfred said from the window. "Are you all right?" Harry looked at him. At the old man who had fed him soup on his first night in this house, who had sat by his bed through nightmares, who had built him a suit and called him Sentinel, and never once looked at him with anything less than the fierce, unwavering regard of someone who had decided that this child mattered. "Yeah," Harry said, "I'm all right." He crossed the room and hugged Alfred. Not carefully, not tentatively, hard, sudden, the full-body impact of a 12-year-old who had spent his entire life being denied this and had finally stopped denying himself. Alfred's arms came around him, strong, steady, gentle in the way of hands that could field-strip a rifle and make perfect French toast and hold a shaking child in the dark. "I'm all right," Harry said again into Alfred's shoulder. "I'm home." Alfred held him tighter. "Yes," Alfred said, "you are." Bruce arrived 14 minutes later. He came through the front door at speed, still in the suit, cowl back, face tight with the controlled fury of a man who had been 12 miles away while someone he loved was in danger. He saw Harry and Alfred in the library, saw the book in Harry's hands, saw the teapot and the cup in the empty chairs where Ra's al Ghul had been. "He's gone," Harry said. "He came for me, not Alfred. He held up the book. It was my mother's, a journal. He's had it for years." Bruce crossed the room. Looked at the book, looked at Harry. "Are you hurt?" "Number, he didn't come to hurt anyone. He came to convince me. And," Harry met his eyes, "and I told him to get out of our house." Bruce's expression did something complicated. The fury was still there, banked but present, and it would find an outlet. It would drive him back to the cave, to the computer, to the relentless pursuit of Ra's al Ghul's network that would consume the next weeks and months. But underneath the fury, surfacing for just a moment, was something else. Pride. "Good," Bruce said, just that, one word, carrying the weight of everything he couldn't say directly. Dick arrived 20 minutes later, winded and bleeding from a scrape on his forehead. "I broke the sound barrier on the motorcycle getting here, which is technically impossible, but I did it anyway, and everything's fine. Everyone's fine." "Everyone's fine," Harry said. "The world's most dangerous man broke into the house and you handled it alone, and everyone's fine. He brought me my mum's book and I told him to leave. He left." Dick stared at him, then at Bruce, then at Alfred, who was calmly making a fresh pot of tea. "I'm going to need the long version of this story," Dick said, "and probably a drink." "Tea is available," Alfred said. "Alcohol is not. It is 9:30. "Alfred, I just broke the sound barrier." "On a motorcycle, which as you correctly noted is technically impossible, and therefore does not require celebratory spirits." Dick sat down, Harry sat down. Bruce stood for a moment longer, looking at the room, at his family, gathered in the library of his parents' house, alive and whole and arguing about tea. He sat down. Alfred poured 4 cups. The rest of the night was quiet. Ra's al Ghul's operatives melted out of Gotham like snow in sunlight. By the time Bruce ran a citywide scan, every confirmed League position was empty, every device gone, every trace scrubbed. They'd left cleanly, professionally, the way an army withdraws when the general calls retreat. Bruce spent 2 hours in the cave confirming the withdrawal, checking and rechecking, running scenarios and countermeasures. Dick patrolled the manor's perimeter twice before Alfred physically took his eskrima sticks and told him to go to bed. Harry sat in the library with his mother's journal. He opened it at midnight when the house was quiet and the only light was the reading lamp that Alfred had left on. The pages were filled with handwriting, small, precise, elegant, his mother's hand. The ink was faded but legible, and the words were magic, not spells, not incantations, something deeper. Lily Potter had been a theoretical magical researcher. She'd studied the fundamental nature of magic itself, trying to understand what it was, where it came from, why some people had it and others didn't. Her notes were dense, brilliant, leaping between insights with a restless intelligence that Harry recognized because he felt it in himself. Magic is not a force, she'd written on the 3rd page, not in the way physics defines force. It is closer to a language, a means by which consciousness communicates with reality at the most fundamental level. The wand is a translator, the incantation is a grammar, but the magic itself is the conversation. And some conversations don't need translators or grammar. Some conversations are so fluent, so natural, so deeply embedded in the speaker's nature, that they bypass every intermediary and speak directly to the world. "Harry has this," she'd written further down the same page. "My son. 3 months old, and already the magic speaks through him like a river through a canyon. No wand will ever contain what he is. No school will ever teach him what he already knows. He will need something different. Someone who understands that the rules are suggestions written for lesser fluencies and that his magic is a conversation the world has been waiting to have." Harry read this passage 3 times, his vision blurred, cleared, blurred again. His mother had known, before he could speak, before he could walk, she'd known what he was. She'd seen it, studied it, written about it with the precision of a scientist and the tenderness of a parent. She'd understood that her son was different, and she'd loved him for it, and she'd been trying to prepare the world to understand him. And then she died, and the world had put him in a cupboard. Harry closed the journal, held it against his chest. The magic in him, the magic that was him, responded to the touch, warm and steady, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. His mother's magic inherited and transformed and grown into something she'd predicted, and he was only beginning to understand. He sat in the library until dawn. When the first gray light touched the windows, he stood up. Stretched, felt his magic settle into its familiar configuration, the warm core, the ready defenses, the vast untapped potential that grew a little deeper every day. He walked upstairs, showered, put on the suit not because he needed to, but because it felt right. The dark material, the glowing emblem, the hood, Alfred's craftsmanship, Bruce's technology, his own magic woven through every fiber. Sentinel's suit. He walked through the manor, past the study where Bruce had told him he mattered, past the kitchen where Alfred had fed him his first meal, past the guest room where he'd broken a window and a mirror and a dresser, and Alfred had forgiven all of it, past the library where his mother's journal sat on the reading table, waiting for him to return. He climbed to the roof, dawn over Gotham. The city emerged from darkness in layers, the tallest buildings catching the first light, then the mid-rises, then the streets, then the alleys, then the hidden places where the shadows held on longest. The sky went from black to purple to pink to gold, and the city transformed beneath it, shedding its nighttime skin and becoming something almost hopeful. Harry stood on the roof of Wayne Manor and watched his city wake up. His city. He'd earned that, he thought, not with power. Power didn't earn you anything. With presence, with choice. With the daily, unglamorous, essential decision to stand between the dark and the people it wanted to swallow. Gotham would never be perfect. It would never be saved, not in the way Ra's al Ghul used the word, not in any permanent or complete sense. It would always be broken, always be struggling, always be one bad night away from the edge, but it would never be alone, not while he was here. Not while Bruce was in the cave and Alfred was in the kitchen and Dick was on the road and Zatanna was a phone call away. Not while Sentinel watched from the rooftops and dropped from the sky when someone screamed. A sound, below, distant, carried on the morning air. A siren not unusual in Gotham. Sirens were the city's birdsong. But underneath the siren something else, a crash, glass breaking, and a voice, small and high and terrified, calling for help. Harry's magic surged. The emblem on his chest blazed gold. The hood settled into place, shadowing his face, and for a moment he was just a silhouette against the dawn, dark and bright, human and impossible, a boy who had lived in a cupboard and a sewer and had become a light that Gotham could see from every corner of its broken streets. He stepped off the roof. The fall lasted one perfect second, the world suspended, the wind silent, the city holding its breath. Then the magic caught him and Sentinel flew, golden light blazing in his wake, and dropped into the Narrows like a star coming home. Somewhere below, a woman saw the light and stopped running. A child stopped crying. A man with a gun looked up and his hand began to shake. Gotham had a new protector, and he wasn't going anywhere.